Meet Wu Ling, who died of pure embarrassment after accidentally emailing his browser history to his entire office, and woke up in a different world. He trained for 20,000 years but still thinks he's a useless F-rank weakling. He treats SS-rank apocalyptic monsters like free groceries for dinner. He joins the elite academy thinking he's immortal. The invincible instructor tells him to punch with full force. He taps him lightly and launches the teacher into orbit. Now the S-rank Ice Queen is obsessed with him, but he's too shy to notice she's simping. If you want to know why a regular guy is this strong, we have to go back 20,000 years. His name is Wu Ling. Back in school, he was picked on because of his weight. His peers treated him like a target for practice, but that actually gave him the motivation to study harder. He always thought that if he showed everyone his true intelligence, they would finally respect him. He worked day and night like crazy, but in the end, he ended up with a score of 0. After graduating, he didn't have many options, so he used his physical size to get a job as a trainer at a gym. He ended up signing a contract after only looking at the cover because the deal seemed too good to be true. It turned out to be a 15-year long-term agreement where he was constantly mistreated. If things didn't change, he had another 951 months of this hardship ahead of him. On top of the physical strain, he was forced to finish paperwork for a department he didn't even work for. During all this, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. He suffered a health crisis from overworking and staying up too late. The young man tried to call for help, but his luck was terrible. His phone, which worked fine the day before, was disconnected because of unpaid bills. He figured his time was up. He decided that before he passed away, he wanted to clear his search history. He was determined not to be the same person in his next life. After making sure he deleted everything, he felt he could go peacefully, but his bad luck followed him to the very end. Instead of hitting the delete button, he accidentally hit send to all. On the other hand, his boss received the message. Surprised by how fast the work was finished, the boss shared the files with all the shareholders during an important meeting. Let's just say the meeting turned into something very inappropriate for the office. As for Ling, he was reborn as the son of a leader in a struggling sect. Fast forward 20,000 years later in the 9 continents. The mountains were covered in clouds, looking like a dream. In this beautiful place, a man and a woman were walking together. The woman, Xiaoyu of the Fox clan, spoke to him in a sweet voice. She had long golden hair and braids, and asked why he was still hanging out in the back mountains when they had agreed to travel the world. The young man, with muscles rippling, lifted a giant boulder with one hand. He noted that without realizing it, he had been training there for 20,000 years. He told Xiaoyu that the rock was actually much larger than it looked compared to them. He calmly said that he was still just a regular person with a little bit of strength, and leaving the mountain would only lead to trouble. Xiaoyu couldn't believe what she was seeing. She asked what kind of ordinary person could lift a mountain. Ling tossed the mountain behind him like it was nothing. He realized he really had been reborn. When the mountain hit the ground, it caused a massive tremor that sent Xiaoyu flying into the air. He stood there calmly and mentioned that even though he was a young master of a sect, he didn't feel safe. To avoid being chased by rival groups, he stayed hidden in the mountains. He gently patted Xiaoyu's head and said it was time to go back, which made her blush. He thought to himself that if he hadn't saved this little fox to keep him company, he would have gone crazy from boredom. He told Xiaoyu she was beautiful and could catch anyone's eye, making her blush even more. Because of the trauma from his past life and being hunted in this one, he spent every single day for 20,000 years training hard. He remembered being chased by wild animals and enduring intense workouts. It took him a long time to realize he had been transported into a fantasy world. He was confused by his new name, Vulcan, but he kept focusing on his physical training since everything else felt difficult. Suddenly, a giant green serpent with red eyes lunged at them. Ling stayed still for a moment, then jumped and delivered a powerful kick to the creature's head. He followed up by breaking a boulder and letting the pieces fall on the serpent. He sighed as the dust settled. He looked at Xiaoyu, who was looking at him with total admiration. He pointed at the serpent and said they were having meat for dinner. Xiaoyu was a bit scared of his strength, but mostly impressed. She nodded happily. By midday, the sun was shining through the trees. Xiaoyu leaned against the creature's remains, her heart fluttering. She was amazed that he took down such a powerful creature with just one punch. While they were eating, a loud, angry voice came from the sky. A man on a flying sword looked down at them and called Ling a thief. He claimed Ling stole the creature he had almost finished off. This was Chunhuo from a rival sect. Ling got flustered and told the man he didn't do it on purpose. He wasn't a good liar and ended up apologizing while ducking his head. Chunhuo looked at them and thought Ling was just a regular guy with no special powers. He attacked with his sword, but Ling caught it with his bare hands. Chunhuo fell to the ground in shock. Ling bowed and apologized again, saying he was sorry for blocking the attack even though the man was trying to finish him. Xiaoyu was confused by how polite he was being to someone trying to hurt them. Chunhuo didn't believe a mortal could block his sword. He accused Xiaoyu of helping him secretly. She told him that if she had actually stepped in, he wouldn't be standing there anymore. Chunhuo got angry and used a special technique to send 3 swords at them. Ling caught all 3 easily. Once again, Ling bowed and asked the man to leave Xiaoyu out of it, even if he wanted to finish him. Xiaoyu felt touched that he was protecting her. Chunhuo, losing his mind, launched dozens of swords at once. Ling stayed calm and caught every single one in a split second. He apologized again for blocking them. Xiaoyu thought he was being silly but cute. Chunhuo realized he was totally outclassed. He suddenly changed his tone, acting very respectful and calling Ling a senior. He asked for his swords back so he could leave. Ling, who can't say no to anyone, threw the swords back. However, he used way too much power and accidentally destroyed a huge section of the forest. Chunhuo stood there in total shock, his clothes torn and looking pathetic. Ling didn't stay to chat. He put the meat on his shoulder and told Xiaoyu they had to go make dinner for his father. Before leaving, Xiaoyu looked back at Chunhuo with a cold stare. She warned him not to tell anyone about what happened. Terrified, Chunhuo nodded quickly. Once they were gone, Chunhuo collapsed in fear, wondering who they really were. But then a mean look crossed his face. He planned to tell a powerful elder from his group about them to get his revenge. On the way back, Xiaoyu praised Ling for defeating a high-level cultivator. He insisted he was just a regular guy and that the man must have been going easy on him. Xiaoyu disagreed, saying the guy definitely wanted to finish him off. Ling just said that since he has no special powers, he has to train his body even harder. They eventually reached a dark cave filled with old remains. Some scary-looking figures appeared and told them to leave. But when Ling said he brought meat, they immediately became friendly and excited. Ling realized that even though these guys looked intimidating, they were actually like kind uncles to him. Even so, the group leader just turned his face away, looking unhappy with the situation. Right then, Woody, the sect leader, asked if the boy still saw him as a father, pointing out that he hadn't seen him in 3 hours. The son explained himself, saying that he got held up while hunting and preparing the food. However, his father shot back that he already knew what was happening outside. Then, the older man accused the girl of trying to convince Ling to go down the mountain again, but the young man denied that was true. The leader yelled in anger, completely shutting down the request. This sudden outburst left both the son and Xiaoyu shocked. Even though he had been sealed away for 20,000 years, Woody claimed he still remembered how tricky the righteous sect could be. With that, he asked if the boy wanted to see his own father have to lay him to rest, which made the young man say sorry. However, Ling hesitated for a moment before he kept talking. Pretty soon, he lost his cool, saying he had been hearing the same excuses for 20,000 years. The son's attitude left the man totally speechless. Still, Ling stated that he didn't want to stay in the forest anymore, even if it meant being hunted or taken down. The other members called him naive, reminding him that he was the last of the family and that leaving would be like throwing his life away. Just then, Xiaoyu cut in to reveal that they had run into a righteous cultivator, and she mentioned that her partner had defeated him with just one punch. Ling tried to claim it was only a misunderstanding though. Hearing that, Woody wondered silently if the boy had really gotten that strong, but he still shouted that Ling was just a regular person with no spiritual roots. Next, he asked how his son would handle stronger opponents, which made the girl worry. So the father warned him not to think he was unbeatable just because he had taken down a few enemies. But the young man replied that he never said he was unbeatable and that he wasn't interested in stuff like that. He revealed that his real goal was to break the seal and rescue them, which was something he could never do while staying in the forest. Then Woody turned to the others and asked if they had told his son about that, but they all said they hadn't. At that moment, the boy remembered how his father had always tried to protect him, even while he was sealed away. Now that they were grown, he declared it was his turn to protect the older man. Right then, Xiaoyu interrupted to remind them of something they had forgotten. She explained that since her friend had no dark aura, his identity wouldn't be discovered, and the others agreed with her. Even so, Woody refused to take the risk because getting stronger might release his aura and destroy him. Then the son turned to leave, asking them not to blame him for a choice he had already made. As soon as he turned his back, he heard his father shout for him to stop. Right after that, an object was thrown toward him. He caught it in midair while Xiaoyu also took a look at the item. Confused, the young man asked what the object in his hands was. The older man explained that it was the pass for the Swantian Academy exam and suggested he go there first. Immediately, the group got excited at the news, since the academy was famous for training high-level cultivators. Xiaoyu questioned the decision, but Woody argued that the most dangerous place was actually the safest one. With that, the young man realized he would find tons of training paths there and might even discover one for himself. Next, he started packing his stuff into a big bundle. Soon, he showed up ready to leave with a huge load, announcing he was heading to Swantian Academy. Curious, the girl asked how his father had gotten the item, but Woody refused to answer. Then Woody admitted that he couldn't protect his son anymore, so sending him to the academy was the best way to keep him safe. While the young man secretly checked a map, the patriarch spoke to the girl about the mystery surrounding Ling's body. He then asked her, a nine-tailed fox who was nearly at the emperor level, to protect him. Xiaoyu raised her hand, confirming that she understood how serious it was. She then asked who would bring them food after she and the boy left. In the background, the whole group froze as they realized the situation. Finally, Woody shouted for everyone to eat since that would be their last good meal. Xiaoyu then said her goodbyes and told him to enjoy the moment. As soon as she turned around, he shouted for her to wait, but the girl immediately warned that she wouldn't be bringing food anymore. Then, with a serious look, the father reminded her that the world was on the verge of falling apart. Right after that, he warned her that the hidden power inside Ling needed to wake up because time was running out. The scene shifts to the massive entrance of Shuantian Academy, where an instructor is busy keeping the line in order and making sure no one cuts ahead. The students are told to get their entrance tokens ready for inspection. Carrying his bags, Ling watches the crowd, hoping to stay under the radar. The instructor explains that everyone must place their token into the mouth of a stone lion statue, which is designed to sniff out any bad actors or spies. Soon, the first person in line is called up. The candidate puts his token into the statue, which glows to confirm he is cleared to enter. He thanks the staff and heads inside. As the next person is called, they start to panic, worrying that their token might be a fake and that the statue will catch them. Suddenly, a scream rings out, grabbing everyone's attention. The examiner announces that they've caught a dark cultivator because the statue has clamped down on the person's hand. A bystander explains that the stone lion won't let go once it detects something wrong, which absolutely terrifies everyone watching. The captured man begs for a second chance, but the instructor ignores him and tells the guards to take him away. Next, the examiner and another student point toward Ling, telling him it is his turn. The instructor mentions that he looks suspicious because of his huge backpack and demands he hand over his token. Ling repeats the instructions to himself so he won't mess up, but his hands are shaking as he approaches the statue. Just then, a strange tremor ripples through the courtyard floor. Ling finally reaches out and places his hand inside the lion's mouth. At first, the instructor confirms that the ticket is valid as the statue begins to glow. Ling lets out a sigh of relief, but then the statue's eyes flash bright red. In an instant, the stone lion bites down hard on his arm. The lion's head actually snaps off its base while still locked onto his arm, and the rest of the statue crumbles into a pile of rocks. The examiner is completely stunned and stands there frozen, unable to figure out why the head head is still attached to the boy. Feeling awkward, Ling apologizes and tries to clean up the mess by picking up the broken stone pieces. The instructor immediately accuses him of being a dark cultivator and orders the guards to arrest him. As they grab him, Ling tries to argue that his ticket is legitimate. The examiner explains that the lion only attacks when it senses dark energy. It's only then that Ling realizes he must have been contaminated by dark energy just from living around other people. Suddenly, Xiaoyu's voice booms across the courtyard, telling everyone to stop what they are doing. As she walks up, she questions why the cultivators are acting so recklessly. The crowd is confused about who she is, and the instructor asks why someone from a monster clan is sticking their nose into academy business. Xiaoyu simply grabs Ling's arm and introduces herself as his guardian. This revelation shocks the other students, who begin whispering that the boy must come from a very powerful family. Xiaoyu then suggests that the examiner take a closer look at where the admission ticket actually came from. Looking at the object on the ground, the man realizes it belongs to the legendary #1 sect in the world. Xiaoyu explains that although the sect was wiped out 20,000 years ago, Ling is its only remaining successor. One of the students asks how the most powerful sect in the world could have been taken down, noting that the name of the group was quite literal. Xiaoyu argues that given the sect's history, it makes perfect sense that the ticket would be covered in some dark energy. The instructor realizes this is a sensitive situation that needs to be handled with care. Even so, he warns the two of them to stay out of trouble and be on their best behavior. Xiaoyu tells Ling to relax so they don't look suspicious. She advises him to just act natural, and he repeats her advice to himself as they walk away. At the gates of the Xuantian Academy, a massive crowd had gathered. An instructor named Yanli watched the newcomers from a high tower with a bored expression. Another leader, Lu Hong, joined him and asked about the quality of the students. Yanli said there were some promising candidates this year. He pointed out a few talented students, including a cold, white-haired girl named Baidi and a flashy young man named Duan Zhang. Duan Zhang tried to flirt with Baidi, but she told him to get lost without even looking at him. People whispered about how she was a genius who had reached a high level of skill at only 11 years old. As the instructors watched, Yanli noticed something odd. He saw Ling in the middle of the crowd, casually juggling heavy stones and hammers. Lu Hong laughed it off, thinking the kid was just trying to show off his basic strength. Yanli wasn't impressed and doubted the show-off would even pass the first test. Yanli decided to make a dramatic entrance. He leaped out of the tower window and floated in midair to address the crowd. He introduced himself as the head instructor for the exam. While he was talking, Ling kept staring at him. Feeling uncomfortable, Yanli pointed at him and asked why he was staring. Ling nervously pointed out that the wire Yanli was hanging from looked a bit tight. The crowd went silent as they noticed the shiny wire holding the instructor up. Yanli was mortified that his trick had been exposed. He was lowered to the ground to face Ling. Trying to keep his cool, he gripped Ling's shoulders and said he looked forward to his results. Before he could say more, the wire suddenly jerked him back up into the air. Yanli flailed around like a fool, yelling at his assistants for messing up the timing. Beatty watched the scene in disbelief, wondering how an instructor could be so incompetent. Meanwhile, Lu Hong thought Ling was in trouble for offending such a petty man. Suddenly, Yanli flexed so hard his shirt ripped to shreds, showing off his muscles. He claimed his previous blunder was just to lighten the mood. The crowd was amazed, and one student claimed Yanli had a legendary physical build that could absorb any attack and turn it into energy. Yanli soaked up the praise, feeling powerful and ready to start the first round of the test. Ling just watched, wondering if ripping his shirt was a mandatory part of the exam. Ling started to worry as he imagined a strange scenario. His face darkened as he wondered if getting hurt was actually a requirement for cultivators. He thought to himself, does this mean only people who enjoy pain can do this? Meanwhile, Instructor Yanli was feeling extremely confident. He pointed at himself and announced the next test. Every student had to use their energy to punch him. He claimed he would judge their potential based on how hard they hit. He glanced at Ling, still feeling bitter about being corrected earlier. He decided he was going to humiliate the young man and eliminate him from the exam, no matter how much talent he had. Yanli pointed directly at Ling and told him to go first. Ling walked up, looking sincere, and warned the instructor to brace himself because his strength was a bit much. Yanli laughed so hard he cried. He joked that even a legendary master couldn't hurt him, so a new student certainly wouldn't stand a chance. Just as he finished talking, something moved too fast to see. Before Yanli could react, a fist slammed into his face. His expression twisted in pain, and he was sent flying backward like a meteor. He crashed through several walls, leaving the other students frozen in shock. Some of them turned pale, and the leader in the tower, Lu Hong, was so surprised he nearly fell over. Ling stayed in his follow-through stance, looking at the massive hole in the wall where the instructor used to be. Yanli was out cold on the ground. Ling turned to the crowd, patted his chest, and innocently asked if that meant he passed. The other students looked at him with pure fear. Xiaoyu flew down from a nearby roof, looking at him with pride. She was happy that Ling was already the center of attention. The crowd started whispering, confused because they thought the instructor was supposed to be invincible against students. One student, Tianji, sweated nervously, saying the books never mentioned a situation like this. In the distance, Baidi watched Ling closely. She realized he was hiding a massive amount of power and wondered how he did it. Lu Hong walked over to the unconscious instructor and then looked up at Ling. He noted that the power of that punch was at a level far beyond what a student should have. Ling just looked at the old man, thinking his colorful outfit made him look like a traffic light. Suddenly, Yanli woke up. He rushed back to Ling, furious. He yelled that Ling had taken advantage of him by attacking before he was ready, and that he was supposed to hit his stomach, not his face. Ling gave a sheepish grin and apologized. The students felt relieved, thinking the instructor only lost because he wasn't prepared. Yanli puffed out his chest and activated his strongest defensive move, calling it the immovable sandbag. He claimed that even a master using a lifetime of strength wouldn't be able to budge him now. Ling didn't wait. He stepped in and delivered a palm strike directly to the instructor's stomach. At first, it looked like nothing happened. The crowd cheered, impressed that the instructor hadn't moved an inch. But then Yanli's face crumpled. It turned out he hadn't moved because he had passed out while standing up. Ling realized the instructor wasn't doing well and dragged him away. He told the crowd that since the instructor was was feeling sick, everyone should consider the first round cleared. The students erupted in cheers, happy to move on. Zhang approached Ling, introducing himself as Zhang from the Harmonious Union sect. He was impressed by the punch and offered to become sworn brothers with Ling. Then Tianji from the Heavenly Secrets sect joined them, offering to provide secret information in exchange for protection. Tianji admitted he didn't have any info on Ling and asked which sect he was from. Ling panicked, his face turning red as he tried to think of a cover story. Finally, he stammered that he was just a Han cultivator. Suddenly, the crowd parted for Beatty. She walked up to Ling and called him a show-off. She told him she would show him the true difference between a real genius and someone like him before walking away. Then Lu Hong appeared again, telling everyone not to celebrate too early. He pressed a button, and the ground began to shake. A puppet army marched into the plaza. Lu Hong explained that these mechanical constructs would fire weapons at the students for the duration of a timed test. He warned them that the weapons were real and dangerous. The puppets began firing blue beams, and the plaza turned into a chaotic scene. Students ran for their lives. Zhang tried to use his special techniques to defend himself, while Baidi showed off her impressive skills. Ling decided on a simpler approach. He started punching the puppets' core circuits, causing them to explode. He figured if they were broken, they couldn't attack him anymore. Lu Hong turned pale with rage, screaming that Ling was ruining the exam. He yelled that the test was about speed, not destruction, and threatened to disqualify him. Beatty watched him, thinking that men just loved to show off. Lu Hong, now truly angry, decided to teach the brat a lesson. He took the controls and slammed a red button, causing the puppets to combine into one massive mechanical giant. Tianji panicked, recognizing the fusion as a high-level construct far stronger than any student. To make things worse, the weapons were now coated in a powerful numbing agent. Lu Hong's partner smirked, wanting to see the arrogant kid fail. The giant puppet attacked, but Ling dodged every move with ease. However, the other students weren't as lucky and got caught in the crossfire. Ling felt bad for involving them. Lu Hong, seeing that one puppet wasn't enough, frantically pressed the buttons to send every single puppet after Ling at once. Ling raised his hand to protect himself, not feeling afraid at all. From above, Lu Hong sneered, warning Ling that if he broke one more puppet, he would be kicked out of the exam immediately. The other students watched, relieved that the puppets were focusing all their energy on Ling instead of them. Tianji stood frozen, fearing for Ling's life since he wasn't allowed to fight back. Even Beatty smirked, thinking this was just the price he had to pay for showing off. Ling was genuinely confused. He didn't know how to handle the situation without breaking anything. Finally, he decided to leap into the air, aiming to separate the combined puppets by knocking into them and forcing them apart. Lu Hong was terrified, wondering how a student could fly. The others were stunned, assuming he had reached a high level of mastery to move like that. Tianji pointed out that Ling wasn't actually flying or using a special tool. He was using pure leg strength to jump and was stepping on the air to stay up. Lu Hong insisted that there had to be a limit to his stamina and used the controller to fire arrows at Ling's landing spot. Ling was stuck. He couldn't destroy the puppets, but he'd lose points if he got hit. Suddenly, he had an idea. He jumped onto the incoming arrows to stay airborne and then landed safely. Ling smiled and started approaching Beatty. She trembled, wondering why he was coming toward her and if he was some kind of weirdo. Instead, Ling ducked behind her, using her as a shield to dodge the puppets. Furious, she swung her sword at him, telling him to stop using her to hide. Ling apologized, sweating as he explained it was the only way he could think of to stay safe. Beatty decided to deal with Ling herself and attacked him. Ling took off running, ignoring her shouts to stop. The other students watched in confusion, feeling like the test had become a private battle between those two. Tianji, however, was full of admiration, amazed that Ling could slip through such a dangerous situation. Seeing the chaos, Lu Hong laughed, thinking Ling was finally trapped. Ling noticed the incense stick used by the time the test was almost gone. He took a deep breath and let out a massive gust of air. The force was so strong it sent everything flying. Lu Hong was surprised, but he mocked Ling, saying that having a long breath wouldn't help him pass. Ling calmly interrupted and pointed out that the incense had already burned out. It turned out the gust of air he blew made the incense burn much faster. Tianji cheered, claiming Ling did it on purpose to help everyone finish the test early. Beatty, red-faced and frustrated, walked away, promising she wasn't done with him yet. Suddenly, applause filled the air. An older man with bright red hair approached, praising the energy of this year's students. The crowd whispered, wondering if this was the dean of the academy. Some people noticed his hair looked like a wig that was about to fall off. Tianji warned them to be quiet, identifying the man as the legendary Tianxing, a powerful figure from 20,000 years ago. Xiao Yu, watching from a roof, realized Ling's breath had actually blown the dean's wig out of place. She whispered to Ling, telling him to fix it before the dean noticed. Ling rushed forward with incredible speed, so fast that almost no one saw him move, and put the wig back on. Ling gave a big smile and told the dean he had just dropped something and was happy to help. The dean was frozen in shock at the young man's speed. However, in his rush, Ling had accidentally poked the dean with a small hidden weapon. When Ling pointed out that the dean was bleeding, the dean tried to act tough, saying a small scratch couldn't hurt him. But a moment later, the dean collapsed from the injury. The students were underwhelmed, thinking the legendary dean was just an old man who talked too much. Another instructor shouted that everyone left in the courtyard had passed the second round and that class assignments would happen the next day. They scrambled to take the dean to the medical hall. As the tension eased, the students realized they had forgotten something important. The puppets were still attacking. Everyone panicked and ran for cover because the instructors forgot to turn them off. Meanwhile, Chunhuo watched from the shadows with a mean smile, happy that Ling was right where he wanted him. Later that night, Ling was training hard in his room, determined to pass the next day's test. Xiao Yu came in and told him to rest, offering to use some special oil to help him relax. Ling was a bit worried by the look in her eyes. As she stepped forward, she tripped and fell onto him. Outside, Baidi was walking by, still angry about the afternoon. She heard a noise from Ling's room and got curious. She peeked inside and saw a confusing scene. Because of the spilled red oil and the way they were positioned, she completely misunderstood what was happening. She kicked the door open, calling Ling a murderous maniac and telling him to surrender. Ling, who was just helping Xiaoyu with her coat, looked totally confused. Baidi was even angrier, thinking he was standing over a victim. Xiaoyu looked up, completely baffled as to why Baidi thought she was a body. Ling was caught off guard. Murderous maniac? He started sweating, wondering if she had somehow discovered his secret identity. Xiaoyu was also panicked and tried to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, but Baidi was too angry to listen. She drew her sword and attacked, using her special technique. Ling watched her movements closely. As she lunged at him, he realized he had no choice but to defend himself, even if it meant defending her. He dodged her blade with incredible speed, leaving Baidi stunned. She didn't give up, though, and launched an even faster attack. Ling didn't back down. He used his bare hand to punch right through her spiritual energy, shattering her attack. Baidi looked like she had seen a ghost. She couldn't believe a mortal had broken her technique with a punch. Ling quickly moved behind her and used a pressure point strike to knock her out. He felt guilty, thinking to himself that he only did it because he couldn't risk his identity being revealed. Xiaoyu realized he had used a special memory erasure move that uses physical force to temporarily scramble someone's thoughts. They decided to get her back to her room before anyone saw them. Ling carried her over the rooftops using his agility. He found what he thought was her room and placed her on the bed. Just then, her eyes started to flutter open. Panicking, Ling hit her with another memory erasure strike. She jolted, then fainted again. He felt terrible, worrying that using the move 3 times in a row might actually damage her memory. But he felt he had to protect his secret to keep his people safe. Looking around the messy room, he was surprised that a famous genius like Baidi lived in such a disaster. He noticed black footprints on the floor and realized he had to clean them up so there was no trace of his visit. He grabbed a mop and went to work, scrubbing the entire room until it was spotless. Meanwhile, in a garden nearby, a young man named Xiao Huo was sitting peacefully. He sensed someone approaching and told him to come out. It was just a cat, but then a man named Chunhuo emerged from a nearby lake using a breathing tube. Chunhuo was excited to find Xiao Huo and asked for his help to deal with the arrogant newcomer, Ling. Chunhuo offered to support Xiao Huo's future leadership in his family if he helped. Xiao Huo, remembering Ling's punch from earlier that day, agreed. Chunhuo planned to rig the upcoming exam so that Xiao Huo could find a reason to finish Ling off. Just as they finished talking, a giant python grabbed Chunhuo's legs. Xiao Huo sighed at how pathetic Chunhuo was, despite being an instructor. He quickly drew his sword and sliced the python to pieces. As Chunhuo fell into his arms, Xiao Huo shoved him into the water, feeling annoyed. Suddenly, a spirit named Dan Lao appeared from a ring on Xiao Huo's finger. Dan Lao warned him that Ling was much stronger than he looked, but Xiao Huo wasn't afraid. He revealed that he was actually a transmigrator from another world. He remembered his past life as a student who was hit by a truck and reborn as a useless young master. After finding the magic ring in a pile of junk, he began his journey to the top. He believed that as the main character of his story, Ling was just another obstacle for him to overcome. Back in his own room, Ling suddenly sneezed. He finished cleaning the messy room he thought belonged to Baidi, activated a hiding spell, and hurried back home. A moment later, Xiao Huo returned to that very same room. It was actually his room, not Baidi's. He was shocked to find it perfectly clean and even more surprised to see Baidi sleeping in his bed. He blushed, wondering why the dream goddess of the academy was in his room. He noticed the room was spotless and convinced himself that she must have cleaned it because she had a crush on him. He crouched by the bed, watching her sleep. Dan Lao appeared and noted that her mind seemed a bit dazed, which is why she wasn't waking up. Xiao Huo decided to use emergency rescue methods from his past life to help her. He leaned in close just as Baidi finally opened her eyes. A loud slap echoed through the night. Baidi chased him out of the room, calling him a pervert and slamming the door. Xiao Huo sat on the floor with a swollen face, totally confused. He told Dan Lao that she must have hit him because she was conservative and his rescue breath was just too intense for her. Dan Lao asked Xiao Huo, "Why are you so sure she likes you? Couldn't she have just walked into the wrong room by mistake?" Xiao Huo turned around, looking completely full of himself despite the blood streaming from his nose and mouth. He smirked and told Dan Lao that it wasn't even a question. He was the natural-born protagonist of this world. Dan Lao just yelled at him to wipe his face and stop acting cool. Meanwhile, Baidi was walking unsteadily, still holding her sword. She was confused about how she ended up in someone else's bed. She remembered going to Ling's room to argue with him, and suddenly, her memories came rushing back. She realized Ling was a demonic cultivator who used forbidden methods. She decided that the guy she just saw in the room must be his accomplice. A determined smile spread across her face as she shouted into the night, promising to find proof and expose Ling once and for all. Her shouting woke up everyone nearby, making them wonder what on earth was going on between those two in the middle of the night. The next day, a large crowd gathered for the final phase of the entrance exam. Everyone was getting impatient because no instructors had shown up yet. In a corner of the field, Ling was busy lifting heavy weights, telling himself he had to train even harder to pass. Xiaoyu tried to get him to relax, telling him that with his strength, he was a shoo-in for the advanced class. Baidi approached, glaring at Ling and thinking he was just putting on a show. People started gossip about why she was so agitated, especially after she was heard calling his name the night before. Tianji acted like he knew a secret, telling others that their relationship was deeper than anyone imagined. Suddenly, a sword landed right in front of him, nearly grazing his throat. It was Xiao Huo, looking ready to finish anyone who talked bad about Baidi. He claimed she was his chosen one and couldn't possibly be involved with someone like Ling. Dan Lao told him he was being way too overconfident. Finally, Instructor Yanli called for silence as the 3 head instructors appeared from the sky to oversee the match. He explained that this round was a combat arena test to see who could handle a real fight. The students would be assigned to classes based on how they performed. Headmaster Tian Xing was there to judge, and Ling couldn't help but notice he was wearing a brand new wig. Xiao Yu quickly told him to be quiet before he offended the headmaster again. The draw for the matches began. Lu Hong released a wooden log filled with numbers for the students to pick. As Ling reached in, Chunhuo, hiding behind a tree, shot a small small dart with a piece of paper attached to it. The paper had the number 38 on it and stuck to Ling's hand. Chunho laughed to himself, proud that he had successfully rigged the match. Xiaohuo was a bit worried because his own number didn't match Ling's group. Chunho, who was literally coughing up blood from his previous injuries, told him not to worry. He explained that he wanted someone else to test Ling's limits first before Xiaohuo stepped in to finish the job. A huge shadow suddenly fell over Ling. It was a massive guy named Wang, holding number 37. He looked down at Ling with total contempt, calling him a weakling and telling him to surrender now. Tianji recognized the guy as a notorious fighter who never left an opponent standing. Wang patted Ling's cheek condescendingly, bragging that he was at the peak of his power and could crush Ling with a single blow. Xiao Yu was furious and tried to jump in, but she was held back. Everyone waited for Ling to explode with rage and fight back. Instead, Ling just scratched his head and apologized, saying his power was far too weak. The entire crowd was left speechless by his humble response. Xiao Yu was frustrated, telling Ling that there was no reason to be so polite to his opponent. Ling hesitated, looking down, and admitted that the big guy was right. There was a huge gap between them. Wang sneered, telling Ling to kneel if he wanted to live. But Ling looked up with a serious expression and said that even if he was weak, he still had a reason to fight. Wang just scoffed and walked away, telling Ling he'd finish him in the arena. Xiao Yu thought Ling sounded incredibly cool, but he just acted modest about it. Wang then met up with Xiaohuo and Chunhuo, reminding them that if he finished the kid, they had to make sure he got into the elite class. They promised him they still had plenty of influence at the academy, and Wang left feeling confident. Chunhuo couldn't wait for the match, hoping Ling wouldn't get knocked out too early. Finally, the instructor announced the first fight. Baidi stepped onto the platform to the sound of cheering fans. Her opponent was Zhang, who immediately started acting inappropriately, suggesting they cultivate together to improve their strength. The crowd went wild, screaming at him and throwing fruit and vegetables. Zhang dodged everything, bragging that attacks from behind never worked on him. However, he didn't notice the instructor standing right behind him. The instructor gave him a hard chop on the back, annoyed that all the thrown vegetables had hit him instead. Xiaohuo watched from the sidelines, furious that Zhang was flirting with his woman. Chunho found the whole thing embarrassing, but Xiaohuo just claimed it was part of his protagonist aura. The headmaster eventually told everyone to stop the nonsense and start the match. Zhang bragged that Baidi didn't understand the true power of his sect. He used a technique that created two clones of himself by moving incredibly fast. The crowd was impressed, but Baidi just looked at his feet. She could clearly see where he was actually standing and kicked him right in the groin. Zhang doubled over in pain, yelling about her cheating, but then he pulled out a mirror and a glowing sphere of energy, saying he was done being nice. Ling was confused, wondering why Zhang didn't just throw the energy ball. A student nearby explained that low-level cultivators can barely keep energy outside their bodies, let alone throw it far. Ling finally realized just how strong Xiao Yu and her father really were. Baidi toyed with Zhang for a while, dodging every attack. Eventually, Zhang used a secret technique to control the energy sphere with invisible threads, making it follow his movements. The instructors were impressed by his control. The sphere shot toward Baidi with incredible speed. Inwardly annoyed that a guy like this was forcing her to actually draw her sword, she made a swift move. With one quick slash, she shattered the energy sphere. At the exact same moment, the front of Zhang's pants ripped open. He froze in shock, realizing his best attack had failed so easily. He collapsed to the ground, still mumbling about how impressive she was before passing out. The instructor announced Baidi as the winner, and she walked off the stage as the crowd cheered for her sect. Ling watched, finally getting an idea of how cultivators actually fight. Suddenly, a girl named Morong came pushing through the crowd, struggling to carry a giant chicken leg that was even bigger than her head. Ling's eyes were glued to the sight, but it wasn't what most people thought. Morong's eyes sparkled as she admired Baidi from afar, wishing she could be just as strong. Meanwhile, Ling was actually staring longingly at the massive drumstick she was holding. It was huge. Xiao Yu, however, completely misunderstood. She noticed Ling's intense gaze and looked at her own chest, wondering if he preferred girls with more ample features. Morong noticed his stare too, but being kind-hearted, she asked if he was hungry. Ling was actually drooling a bit, and though he tried to deny it, his hands were already reaching for the meat. After training all night, he was starving. Xiao Yu was heartbroken and suspicious, watching Ling happily share a meal with this strange woman. While they ate, Ling realized he hadn't even asked her name. She smiled shyly and introduced herself as Morong. Xiao Yu was surprised to learn she had been at the academy since last year. Morong admitted she was a repeater because her grades were so poor. If she didn't pass this placement exam, she'd be expelled. Tianji chimed in with some background info. Morong came from a famous family of alchemists. She had pioneered a unique way to turn medicine into delicious food without losing its healing power. Ling was shocked to realize he had just eaten high-grade spiritual medicine, but she generously told him it was fine because she hated seeing people go hungry. Ling called her an angel, which only made Xiao Yu more annoyed. Suddenly, the crowd surged as people tried to get Baidi's attention with flowers and confessions. She ignored them all with her usual coldness. Morong politely approached her, eyes sparkling, and asked for an autograph. Baidi glanced at her and gave some cryptic advice. Be more careful about the friends you make. Then, Baidi pointed right at Ling and declared that she would find out the truth about what happened last night. That one sentence sent the crowd into a frenzy of gossip. People started wondering if Ling and the ice-cold Baidi were actually a couple. Morong got excited and begged Ling to introduce her to Baidi so she could learn to be strong. Before he could answer, the instructor, Yanli, started shouting for Morong to get on stage. She realized she'd been distracted and ran off, telling Ling he must remember to help her. Xiao Yu warned Ling to stay away from her, calling her a weird repeating student, but Ling felt she was a good person at heart. Yanli warned Morong that this was her final chance. She was terrified but determined. She couldn't bear the thought of being sent home in disgrace. Her opponent, number 36, stepped forward. It was Xiaohuo. He pulled back his hood and smirked, looking ready for a fight. In the stands, the headmaster and Lu Hong discussed her situation. Lu Hong explained that she had failed almost everything, including her alchemy exam because she kept making dinner instead of pills. If she lost this match, she was definitely out. Even Tianji was worried, noting that while she was great at cooking medicine, she had zero combat skills. This match was looking very one-sided as the instructor gave the signal to start. Xiao Huo started meditating, preparing for his big move. He chuckled to himself, thinking about how lucky he was to face such a cute opponent in the first round. He began daydreaming about winning, and Murong being so impressed that she'd join his harem and give him a hug. He even imagined Beatty getting jealous and calling her a vixen. He was so lost in his own head that he didn't see Murong coming until she punched him square in the face. The blow sent him sprawling. Xiao Yu frowned, wondering why that idiot was just standing there smiling instead of moving. Ling guessed he was probably off in some happy dreamland. Even the spirit Dan Lao flew out of the ring to yell at him, warning him not to get finished in the very first round. Xiao Huo brushed it off, confidently claiming he was the main character. Murong lunged in to keep the pressure on, but this time Xiao Huo caught her wrist. He told her the same trick wouldn't work twice and tossed her over his head. She landed on her feet and charged again, but he kept dodging. He told her she'd never land a hit with normal punches. Ling cheered for her from the sidelines, but after a few more exchanges, Murong was exhausted. Determined not to lose her last chance to stay in school, she pulled out 2 more giant drumsticks and stuffed them into her mouth. Ling was amazed, realizing she wasn't just hungry. She was using the spiritual energy in the food to boost her power. However, Tianji turned pale. He explained that those drumsticks were packed with high-level medicine. Eating that much at once was dangerous. She could literally explode from the energy surge. Suddenly, her body erupted in a brilliant light. When the glow faded, she looked stronger than ever. Though the explosion had shredded parts of her dress, every man in the audience immediately got a nosebleed. Xiao Huo's nose was bleeding too, but he stayed smug. He told her that even a last-minute power-up wouldn't be enough to defeat him. She didn't listen and lunged again. He dodged, and her fist shattered the stone ground where he had been standing. Dan Lao panicked, telling Xiao Huo to stop playing around because her strength was now far beyond a normal student's level. Xiao Huo realized he had to get serious and summoned his sword. When their strikes collided, the power was so intense that Xiao Huo was sent flying again. Ling was mesmerized by her strength, but Xiao Yu noted that she was only forcing her cultivation level higher and wouldn't be able to maintain it for long. Yanli worried the boy might actually get finished off, but the headmaster told him to keep watching. Xiao Huo stood up and wiped the blood from his face, annoyed that a native girl had pushed a transmigrator like him this far. He vanished in a flash of speed, running in circles so fast that Murong couldn't track him. Ling and Xiao Yu tried to warn her as a dark figure appeared in the air behind her. She looked up just in time to dodge a massive downward strike that would have finished the fight. Xiao Huo, now fully focused, created a fiery orb shaped like a lotus flower in his hand. He threw the pure heart fire lotus directly at her. The orb hit, engulfing Yurong in flames. She screamed from the heat, and as the fire died down, the audience gasped. Her clothes had been almost completely burned away, leaving her trying to cover herself in embarrassment. The crowd went wild, some calling Xiao Huo a pervert while others were just stunned by the technique. Xiao Yu quickly covered Ling's eyes, telling him not to look at the blackness, even though he was just being blocked. Up in the stands, the instructors recognized the strange fire lotus technique. They agreed the match was basically over. Xiao Huo watched her, delighted and waiting for her to finally give up. Murong looked at her opponent, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. She suddenly pulled out a large bottle and drank the entire thing in one gulp. As she slammed the empty bottle onto the ground, shattering it, her body surged with a new wave of energy. Her eyes blazed with determination, leaving Xiao Huo completely stunned. She immediately rushed forward, unleashing a flurry of hits that forced Xiao Huo to use his weapon just to block. The crowd was shocked by her sudden burst of power. The head of the Martial Institute watched from the stands inside, wondering if the girl had lost her mind. Ling was also amazed, asking if she had reached a new level of strength. However, Xiao Yu realized something darker was happening. She explained that Murong wasn't just using medicine anymore. She was burning her own life force to keep fighting. In the arena, Murong had gone into a frenzy. Her mind was focused on one single thought: I can't lose. Xiao Huo, feeling the weight of her attacks, let out a grunt and smirked. He decided that if she wouldn't back down, he'd have to force her. He used his pure Heartfire Lotus technique again, causing explosions all around them that sent her flying. Before she could recover, he channeled energy into his blade and threw it straight at her. The instructors in the stands panicked, realizing this was about to turn into a tragedy. They screamed for the match to be stopped. Yanli, the referee, tried to fly in to help, but he realized he was too far away. The blade was moving like a guillotine, and it looked like it was going to be too late. As the blade neared her face, Murong's life flashed before her eyes. She remembered her father throwing a plate of her food to the ground, calling her cooking a shameful and unorthodox path that ruined their family's reputation as alchemists. He had even slapped her for defending her recipes. Her own siblings had mocked her, suggesting they send her away to the academy just to get rid of her and marry her off to someone else. They had yelled at her to leave and never come back. Tears had streamed down her face back then, as she promised to prove that her food was just as valuable as any medicine. But now, facing the blade, she felt just as useless as she did that day. She closed her eyes and smiled faintly, ready to accept her fate. Suddenly, a figure dropped from the sky. With just one finger, he stopped the flying blade in its tracks. Xiao Huo's eyes widened in disbelief, and Murong was completely taken aback. It was Ling. He stood firmly in front of her, shielding her with his body. He looked at Xiao Huo and said that Murong was a good person and he wouldn't let anyone hurt her. Xiao Huo scoffed, trying to act tough, and told Ling to get out of the way. But when he tried to pull his blade back, it wouldn't move an inch. Ling's grip was like iron. Xiao Huo was internally shaken, realizing this kid's strength was absolutely incredible. Just as things were about to escalate, Yanli finally landed between them and ended the fight. He officially announced Xiao Huo as the winner. Xiao Huo snorted, grabbed his blade, and walked away, acting like he hadn't just been outmatched. As he walked away, Xiao Huo looked back with a provocative smirk. You better win this round, otherwise I won't get the chance to deal with you myself. Ling just scratched his head, looking totally indifferent. Yeah, I'll try my best to pass the first round, he replied. His calm attitude attitude really annoyed Xiaoyu. That guy was clearly threatening you. How can you be so relaxed? She huffed. The oblivious Ling didn't get it at all. Huh? What do you mean? Before they could say more, a loud coughing fit caught their attention. Murong was hacking and struggling to catch her breath. Ling quickly helped her up, asking if she was okay. She gave a shy smile and took his hand. Thank you for saving me, she whispered, looking away with a self-conscious expression. It's a pity I risked everything and still couldn't win even one game. Suddenly, she started coughing again and actually vomited, which sent Ling and Xiaoyu into a total panic. Ling yelled for Xiaoyu to get some healing medicine, but Murong waved them off. She wiped her mouth and even managed a little chuckle. Don't worry, I'm fine now. I just ate way too much and threw it all up, that's all. Ling tried to help her to a place where she could rest, but Yanli stopped him. Where do you think you're going? He asked, crossing his arms. It's your turn for the next match. Ling realized he had almost forgotten his own fight. In the distance, a man with a fierce aura was approaching. It was his opponent, Wang. Ling asked Xiaoyu to take Murong down to rest. Xiaoyu agreed, but she was definitely gritting her teeth. Why do I have to take care of this girl? She muttered to herself as they walked away. Murong waved at Ling, telling him to do his best. In the center of the arena, Ling and Wang stood face to face. Yanli shouted for them to get ready. Wang sneered, telling Ling that standing there was his last mistake. Ling just stood silently, carefully watching his opponent's movements. Yanli leaped into the air and gave the signal to begin. Wang slammed his massive iron pillar against the stone floor, the sound echoing through the entire arena. He laughed triumphantly. If you won't surrender, I'll have to finish you. From the stands, everyone was terrified by the power coming from Wang's weapon. They worried that one hit would be enough to end the match instantly. Murong asked if Ling would be okay, but Xiaoyu just sighed. You really don't understand how strong he is. No attack is going to make Ling fall today. After the initial bang, there was a moment of silence. Ling stayed focused, wondering what kind of technique his opponent would use next. Wang took a deep breath and let out a roar so powerful it tore his clothes to shreds. When the dust settled, the entire crowd was left speechless and horrified. Instead of some cool armor, Wang was now standing there wearing bright pink and purple women's lingerie and stockings. He even struck a pose to match his new look. The sight was so disturbing that one student almost threw up on the spot. Two girls in the stands actually fainted. People were clutching their stomachs and shielding their eyes, unable to handle the visual shock. One person trembled, realizing that making your opponent so nauseous they can't stand was actually a legitimate and disgusting strategy. Even the instructors were offended. One yelled that such an eye-searing display was an insult to the academy's reputation. Another noted that while it was superficial, it was clearly working. Everyone in the arena was doubled over in distress. Ignoring the chaos, Wang roared "Die!" and slammed his heavy iron pillar down toward Ling, sending debris flying everywhere from the massive impact. Fortunately, Ling managed to dodge the hit. Otherwise, that kind of weight would have been impossible to handle. Seeing his attack miss, Wang's face darkened. He told Ling not to even dream of escaping and began attacking with lightning speed, combining his techniques and spiritual power. Ling dodged every single blow, but Wang's whirlwind assault was hard to watch, mostly because of that unbearable outfit. The crowd was reaching its limit, with people complaining that they couldn't take the blinding sight anymore. Suddenly, Murong realized something. While everyone else was just disgusted, she pinched her nose and analyzed the situation. She explained that Wang's behavior was just a smokescreen. His real tactic was that his iron pillar was secretly releasing toxic smoke. Wang laughed, realizing his plan had worked. He bragged that it was too late because everyone around the arena had already inhaled the gas, securing his victory. Ling and Xiaoyu quickly covered their noses, furious that he would use such a despicable trick. In the stands, the person who had hired Wang was grinning with pride. Even though he was also feeling a bit pale from the gas, he was thrilled that his assassin was winning. Ling was struggling now, coughing repeatedly as the poison began to take effect. He felt his strength fading and his body started to ache. Everything began to blur for Ling. Wang mocked him, asking if he still wanted to struggle when he couldn't even use his strength. Seeing Ling lose focus, Wang lunged forward to end the fight. He swung the iron pillar against Ling's head, causing a spray of red. With the upper hand, Wang rained down a flurry of blows. It was a brutal assault that made it difficult for Ling to even stay on his feet. The audience was terrified, thinking Ling wouldn't survive this. Murong screamed for him to stop fighting, and Xiaoyu begged the judges to end the match. However, Yanli maintained that Ling still had the ability to fight back. One woman in the stands watched with disappointment, thinking Ling was far weaker than she had hoped. Wang raised his weapon high for one final fatal strike. A loud crash echoed through the arena as the pillar hit home. But to everyone's shock, Ling was still standing. He gripped the iron pillar, stopping it in its tracks while gasping for air. Wang was surprised, but stayed smug, asking how Ling could still resist with so little strength left. Ling, with his face covered in red, raised a clenched fist. He calmly explained that because he couldn't use his normal strength, he had to put everything he had into this one attack. Wang scoffed, thinking a weak fist couldn't possibly hurt him. But as soon as Ling's fist lightly touched his stomach, Wang's eyes went wide. That light touch felt like a dam bursting. All the energy Ling had been holding back was released at once. The pressure was so intense it felt like a massive earthquake. Everyone was left speechless. Wang, foaming at the mouth, couldn't understand how this was possible before he collapsed at Ling's feet. Ling slowly caught his breath and wiped his face. Wang, looking pale on the ground, asked how he could win while being poisoned. Ling looked down at him and mentioned that he has a certain ability that kicks in specifically when he's been weakened. Terrified, Wang called him a monster. The announcer reluctantly declared Ling the winner. The headmaster, watching from above, ordered the toxic smoke to be cleared. An object was thrown into the arena that created a small rain shower. The crowd rejoiced, realizing the rain was the antidote. As the poison was neutralized, Ling felt his full strength finally returning. Just then, Murong came running over, absolutely overjoyed. She immediately gave Ling a huge hug, pulling him close and making him blush like crazy. Ling was too embarrassed to even focus on her praise, stammering for her to wait a second. Xiaoyu, watching this from behind, flew into a total rage, and the people nearby scrambled out of her way. Xiaoyu marched over and pulled them apart, yelling at Murong to stay away from him. Murong Luhong tried to explain that she was just expressing how much she admired him, but Xiao Yu wasn't having it. "You're just taking advantage of him," she shouted. Watching from a distance, Xiao Huo scowled, his teeth clenched in jealousy. He muttered to himself that he should be the one surrounded by beautiful women. Chun Huo, hearing this, asked him darkly how he really compared to Ling. Xiao Huo quickly recovered his cool and grinned, focusing energy in his hand. He told Chun Huo that the word lose didn't exist in his vocabulary, but just as he was feeling confident, a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. It was the academy's discipline head, Tiandu, holding a penalty slip. "Setting a fire in the courtyard, that's a fine of 500 spirit stones," he said coldly. Xiao Huo was furious and demanded to know who Tiandu thought he was. Chun Huo quickly jumped in to calm him down, whispering that Tiandu was the dean's right-hand man and not someone to mess with. Xiao Huo realized the dean was watching them with a sharp gaze, so he backed down and agreed to pay the 500 stones. However, Tiandu wasn't finished. He handed over even more slips, showing malice toward academy staff, an additional fine of 1,000 spirit stones. Xiao Huo trembled with rage, and Chun Huo had to hold him back. Heartbroken over the loss of his money, Xiao Huo sat on the ground and cried silently, vowing to get back at the dean and that old man later. He then glared toward Ling, blaming him for everything. Ling suddenly felt a chill down his spine and told Xiao Yu he felt really cold. Just then, Tianji approached, looking excited. "Boss Ling, you're incredible! You beat that 5-star assassin so easily!" Ling smiled and told him it wasn't as easy as it looked. Tianji proudly showed off a notebook, explaining that he had spent a lot of money at the black market to get all the info on Wang. Ling thanked him, but before they could talk more, Instructor Yanli started yelling for Tianji to get moving. "Hey fatty, you're the first fighter for this round," Yanli shouted. Tianji realized it was his turn and stepped into the arena to face his opponent, Jiaxu. Jiaxu had a cold, intense stare. Luhong was surprised to see him, realizing Jiaxu was actually the dean's grandson. The dean confirmed it, grumbling that his grandson refused to learn the family secrets, so he sent him to the academy instead. The crowd was buzzing, wanting to get on the good side of Dean's grandson. Ling yelled a reminder to Tianji not to finish him off. Tianji just chuckled, looking at his notebook full of intel. He was confident that even though his fighting skills were average, his information on Jiaxu would give him the win. Yanli gave the signal to start, immediately activated his divine eye technique. Ling noted that the move looked powerful, and Xiao Yu added that it was a rare secret technique of the heavenly secret sect that was very hard to master. She was actually impressed, seeing that Tianji really did have some skills as he took his fighting stance. Jiaxu looked at Tianji with a sneer and charged forward. "Not bad," he said. "Let's see how effective your divine eye really is." Tianji narrowed his eyes and calmly called out his technique, Heavenly Secrets Divination. Instantly, a full profile of Jiaxu appeared before him. As he scanned the data, he thought to himself that if Jiaxu used kicks, he only had a 10% chance of hitting, while earth-based moves had a massive 85% success rate. Jiaxu didn't waste any time and threw a heavy punch. "Earth Tremor," he shouted. The strike created a solid stone wall that surged toward Tianji. However, when the dust cleared, Jiaxu was surprised to see Tianji still standing. The fatty laughed smugly, bragging that he had predicted the attack long ago and couldn't be touched. Ling was a bit surprised by how agile Tianji was moving. Xiao Yu noted that it was the power of the divine eye which allowed Tianji to channel the strength of his sect's ancestors. Back on stage, Tianji turned serious, focusing his eyes to analyze the next move. He predicted there was a 90% chance Jiaxu would try close quarters combat after using an earth move to close the distance. Meanwhile, Jiaxu stomped the ground, releasing a burst of crimson energy. Using a move called Earth God's Breath, he vanished and reappeared right in front of Tianji, facing a fist glowing with heat. Tianji stayed calm, raising his hand to the exact spot his prediction suggested. He smiled, thinking he was about to block the hit perfectly, but his joy vanished instantly. Jiaxu's fist landed squarely on Tianji's cheek, catching him completely off guard. A second blow sent Tianji flying across the arena. Jiaxu was actually surprised by how easily the hit landed. Tianji lay flat on the ground, motionless. Ling shouted out in worry, but even while injured, Tianji struggled to pull out his notebook. He carefully wrote, "Next time, remember to calculate the difference in actual strength." Ling looked at him with exasperation, telling him he didn't need to be taking notes right now. Tianji passed out completely shortly after. Jiaxu looked at the instructor, Yanli, with a worried expression, asking if the boy was okay. Yanli didn't seem to care and simply congratulated Jiaxu on his victory. Up in the stands, Luhong was impressed by how much Jiaxu had improved. The headmaster, however, was frustrated that his grandson still refused to use their family-specific techniques. Jiaxu caught the headmaster's gaze but said nothing, turning away coldly and leaving the stage. Tianji eventually woke up to find himself being carried on Ling's shoulder. He was surprised, but Ling just smiled and told him he actually looked pretty impressive out there. Diankin thought he was being teased, but Ling insisted he was serious, even wishing he had the talent to learn such a move. Tianji laughed, telling Ling that he was already plenty strong without needing extra tricks. Instructor Yanli then made a loud announcement. For the next round, opponents would be assigned randomly. This took the headmaster by surprise, while Luhong guessed that Yanli was just making up rules as he went. Below the stage, Xiao Huo was gritting his teeth in frustration, wondering when he'd finally get his chance to fight Ling. Chun Huo told him not to worry, glancing at the instructor with a smirk. He noted that Ling had offended far more people than just the two of them, implying the random draw might be anything but fair. Up in the stands, Yanli quickly drew 2 slips and announced loudly, "The first match has been selected." Everyone fell silent, watching his hands with bated breath. He stared seriously at the names. "This match will be Ling." Hearing his name, Ling focused intently on the stage. His opponent's name was announced immediately after, versus Xiao Huo. This result made Xiao Huo let out a satisfied, cold laugh. To the crowd, the outcome seemed like a done deal, but Xiao Yu was immediately suspicious. She looked at Yanli and called it absurd. She couldn't believe that out of everyone, Ling randomly had to fight Xiao Huo. Morong also voiced her doubts, noting she had never heard of the second round being random before. Yanli ignored them at first, but when Xiao Yu raised her voice face to ask if the arrangement was rigged, he frowned. He told her not to joke around, claiming the academy would never rig things against new students. Xiao Huo stepped onto the stage, agreeing with the instructor. He bragged that he believed Instructor Yanli wouldn't show favoritism to anyone. Then, he looked at Ling with a challenge. "Are you hesitating because you're afraid of my power?" he asked arrogantly. Xiao Yu fumed, calling him a brat, but Ling stayed calm. He said there was no need for more words and stepped into the arena. He knew that if he wanted to get into a better class, he couldn't back down now. Xiao Yu was touched by his determination, and Morong's eyes lit up with admiration, saying Ling looked handsome when he was serious. This, of course, made Xiao Yu uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Tianji saw both girls' reactions and quickly jotted down a note about their interest in Ling. The two opponents stood face to face. Xiao Huo sneered, surprised that Ling actually dared to show up. He mysteriously drew his sword and suddenly lunged forward. The attack caught Ling off guard, forcing him to retreat quickly. Xiao Huo shouted that it was time to settle all their grudges. Seeing this dirty trick, Xiao Yu screamed that the match hadn't even officially started yet and called it a sneak attack. Yanli just whistled and pretended he hadn't seen anything. Xiao Yu was furious, feeling like everyone at the academy was targeting Ling. In the arena, Xiao Huo kept swinging his sword, and Ling struggled to dodge. Suddenly, Ling vanished, which caught Xiao Huo by surprise. Chunhuo shouted a warning from below, telling Xiao Huo that Ling was behind him. Ling was indeed right there, preparing a punch. Xiao Huo turned his head and sneered, admitting Ling was fast but claiming it wouldn't be enough. Suddenly, a blinding green flame erupted, covering the entire arena and forcing even the instructor to step back. Ling retreated, realizing he had to be more forceful. One of his arms had been caught in the green flames. Xiao Huo stood in the middle of the fire, looking smug. He told Ling that he had figured out his fighting style. As long as he didn't let Ling get close, Ling was helpless. Ling blew hard on his hand to put out the fire, cold sweat dripping down his back from the heat, before he could plan his next move. Xiao Huo pushed his power to the limit. The flames formed into a massive dragon as he unleashed the Azure Flame Dragon King technique, attacking Ling with enough power to shake the ground. Ling retreated, thinking to himself that the temperature of those green flames was just too high to handle with his bare skin. Below the stage, Chunhuo watched the spectacle with a smug grin, laughing and shouting for Xiao Huo to corner him. Meanwhile, Baidi was observing closely, wondering if Ling's demonic tricks were finally about to be exposed. On the arena floor, Ling was forced back until he had nowhere left to run. Xiao Huo, satisfied that he had his opponent trapped, shouted "Die!" and unleashed a powerful move called Twin Dragons entering the sea. Watching from below, Morong's eyes shone with excitement. Ling is finally getting serious. He looks so handsome when he's focused, she cheered. Beside her, Tianji was busy taking notes, wondering exactly what kind of technique Ling would use to counter such a massive attack. Ling chuckled and extended his hand, shouting immortal technique. A massive power suddenly enveloped him, and his expression hardened as he activated his defense. He effortlessly caught and controlled Xiao Huo's fire dragon. He looked at his opponent calmly and explained, "This is an immortal technique I developed by combining my own exercise experience." Pretty impressive, right? Xiao Huo's face darkened with rage. "That's not an immortal technique at all," he roared, but he quickly regained his cool, a sinister smile spreading across his face. "So you can catch my Azure Flame barehanded? Not bad, but I have more tricks up my sleeve." Ling looked down at his hands in surprise, as the power he was holding suddenly broke apart into small specks. They transformed into strange floating lotus flowers that surrounded him. Xiao Huo laughed triumphantly, telling Ling that he couldn't possibly defend against such a dense, concentrated attack with just his hands. Ling realized he needed something stronger. He stomped his foot and shouted, "Immortal technique, left and right horizontal leap." Suddenly, multiple copies of Ling appeared, rushing forward to dodge the explosions. Below the stage, Zhang was shocked, shouting, "How did you learn my sex secret movement technique?" Someone nearby told him to be quiet, noting it was just high-speed movement and had nothing to do with his sex tricks. Ling was incredibly tense, doing his best to weave through the attacks. Xiao Huo gritted his teeth in anger, realizing Ling was using the air currents from his high-speed movement to blow the fire lotuses away. "What a troublesome savage," he muttered, not wanting to let the fight drag on. Xiao Huo clasped his hands together as his spiritual energy intensified. He told Ling that he was already trapped. "Take this! Lava prison!" he shouted. The ground shook violently and began to crack, startling Ling and worrying the crowd. Tianji was confused, wondering how Xiao Huo could use an earth-type technique when his powers were supposed to be metal and fire. Morong agreed, noting she couldn't sense any earth energy at all. On the other side, Chunhuo was cheering, calling it Xiao Huo's signature spiritual root switch. Xiao Huo yelled back, telling him to stop giving his moves random names. He thought to himself that these natives had no brains and didn't understand the basic principles of how elements work together. High above, the instructors watched with admiration. The headmaster ordered the match to be recorded, but Lu Hong interrupted him, looking shocked. He pointed out that the lava rock being used was a condensed form of earth essence that cost at least 5,000 spirit stones to create. Ling was now nowhere to be seen, replaced by a massive blue rock, surrounded by swirling energy. In the arena, Xiao Huo looked at his work with a huge grin. He felt like he had finally mastered the rules of this world, believing that even with just 2 elements, he could create endless variations. He knelt down, channeling his energy into the floor. "Take this! Lava bombardment!" he shouted. Suddenly, the rocks around Ling transformed and crashed down, burying him completely. Seeing this, Morong and Tianji screamed in shock, fearing fearing the worst. High above, the headmaster turned pale and staggered back, not out of grief, but because those expensive spirit stones were being destroyed. Lu Hong had to grab him to keep him from falling over. Murong couldn't just stand there. She grabbed a giant drumstick and started charging toward the stage to save him. Xiao Yu caught up and snatched the drumstick away, telling her not to make things harder for Ling. Murong struggled, asking if Xiao Yu was just going to watch him get finished off. Xiao Yu calmly reassured her that a simple move like that wouldn't be enough to hurt him. Xiao Huo was feeling on top of the world, clapping his hands. He mocked the natives of this world, thinking they were no match for him. But his celebration didn't last long. The ground began to shake violently, and a blinding light leaked out from the cracks. The entire arena started to tremble. Tianji stumbled, wondering what was happening, while Murong asked if it was an earthquake. Xiao Yu just smiled confidently, knowing Ling was unbeatable. Suddenly, the ground shattered, and the rocks burying him were sent flying into the air. Ling appeared amidst the debris, moving so fast it was a blur. Xiao Huo was terrified, stuttering and unable to understand how Ling had escaped. Xiao Yu noted that compared to Ling's usual training, those rocks were nothing. Ling landed smoothly and casually brushed off his clothes. "This weight is still a bit light," he remarked. Seeing him totally unharmed, Xiao Huo's face twisted with rage. He refused to admit defeat, shouting that as a child of the heavens, he wouldn't lose to anyone. He summoned a massive fancy blade from thin air, surrounding it with lightning. "Thunder slash!" he roared, swinging the blade down with everything he had. The headmaster watched, noting that Xiao Huo had let his anger cloud his judgment. Ling didn't panic. He moved in to intercept the strike. There was a massive impact that knocked Ling back a few steps, but the result was shocking. Xiao Huo's blade snapped clean in half. Before Xiao Huo could even process that his weapon was broken, Ling was already moving in for a punch. By the time Xiao Huo saw the fist coming, it was too late. Another tremor shook the arena, sending dust everywhere. Xiao Huo stood frozen, finding Ling's fist stopped just inches from his nose. Terrified, Xiao Huo collapsed to his knees, unable to speak. Ling calmly pulled his hand back and said, "You lose!" The crowd erupted in cheers, with Murong and the others celebrating his victory. On the other side, Chunhuo was fuming, calling Xiao Huo useless for losing to someone without special powers. Ling started to walk away, but Xiao Huo couldn't accept it. He struggled to his feet and yelled for him to come back. He turned to the spirit Dan Lao, begging for more power. Dan Lao tried to warn him, but Xiao Huo cut him off. He gritted his teeth, saying that if he couldn't even pass the entrance exam, then his whole journey to this world would be meaningless. Hearing Xiao Huo's words, Dan Lao felt powerless to refuse. He remembered Xiao Huo's past, how he was just an ordinary student who was teased by his classmates for loving manga. They had called him a weirdo, and Xiao Huo had gritted his teeth in anger, wishing he had a cheat or a special power, like the characters in his stories, to make them all envious. While lost in those thoughts crossing the street, he hadn't noticed the danger. A truck driver had yelled for him to get out of the way, but it was too late. When Xiao Huo next opened his eyes, he found himself in a new world, reborn as the young master of the Xiao family. He vowed then that no one would ever look down on him again because he had his own legendary cheat, a ring containing the soul of Dan Lao, a powerful master and alchemist. With Dan Lao's help, he had quickly reached the qi refining stage and dealt with his bullies. He became a family prodigy, admired by everyone. But as he gained power, his ambition grew. He wanted to become the clan leader and prove he wasn't just some weak, ordinary person. Stubbornly, he told the spirit on his finger that he refused to lose to anyone. Dan Lao sighed in resignation. "There's really no helping you," he muttered. He began to circulate his remaining energy, warning Xiao Huo that he only had enough power to last for half a stick of incense. As the power flowed into him, Xiao Huo chuckled confidently, telling Dan Lao not to worry. Up in the stands, Lu Hong was shocked to see Xiao Huo's energy suddenly spike. The headmaster agreed that the power was extraordinary. Dan Lao explained to Xiao Huo that while he was a master in his prime, he could only grant him the strength of the golden core stage for now. Xiao Huo didn't care. All that mattered was that he could finally use the 5 elements harmony. Using the elemental cycle, Xiao Huo declared, "Metal generates water." He launched a move called Four Seas Water Prison, quickly trapping Ling inside a massive sphere of water. Ling was startled and quickly covered his nose as he struggled within the sphere. Murong watched in panic, wondering how Xiao Huo's fighting power had suddenly skyrocketed. Tianji turned pale, noting that Xiao Huo's cultivation had somehow reached the golden core stage. Xiao Yu was furious, shouting that a new student shouldn't have that much power and accusing him of cheating. Xiao Huo frowned and told her not to talk nonsense without proof. He moved the water sphere closer to her, smirking. He told Ling that no matter how strong he was, he would be helpless underwater. Then, he created several sharp, black branches. "Earth generates metal, black profound shattering thorns," he shouted, throwing them into the sphere. Ling realized the danger, took a deep breath, and began to swim as fast as he can using his super swim technique. Seeing him try to escape, Xiao Huo became even more determined. Trying to run? He mocked. He used a binding spell, causing the branches to wrap tightly around Ling, trapping him within the water. Ling struggled against the strong branches, finding it hard to think while submerged. Xiao Huo rushed forward triumphantly, telling Ling he was finally feeling the true effect of a golden core technique. He then roughly bit his finger to prepare his next move. Seeing this, Dan Lao shouted in shock, "You're actually using your lifeblood for this attack! Don't you realize it will damage your very foundation?" But Xiao Huo remained stubborn. He knew he only had enough energy left for one final move, and had to make sure Ling couldn't escape. Without another word, Xiao Huo attacked. Metal generates water, water generates wood, wood. Wood generates fire. Fire generates earth. Earth generates metal. 5 elements cycle. Give me your power, he roared. He concentrated a massive amount of energy into his hand and threw a punch so powerful that the entire ground shook violently. The crowd below the arena panicked and ran for their lives, screaming that this was no longer a fight between students and they didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. The headmaster couldn't just stand by. He rushed down and used his power to suppress the overwhelming shockwave. The students rejoiced, amazed that the headmaster was a legendary master who could stop such an attack with one move. However, as he flew above, some noticed his prosthetic leg showing and wondered if he was actually okay. Xiao Huo didn't care about anything else. He stared resentfully at Ling, clenching his fist. I don't want to be ordinary anymore. I must win, he screamed. As the attack rushed toward him, Ling showed no fear. He calmly gathered energy in his hand and said softly, I'm sorry. Xiao Huo was surprised to see him so composed. Ling thought of the people he cared about and glared back. Compared to you, I have even less reason to lose. He threw a punch that collided head-on with Xiao Huo's attack. In an instant, Ling's physical power completely overwhelmed Xiao Huo's spiritual energy. Xiao Huo couldn't believe his eyes. A massive aftershock rippled out, cracking the ground and sending rocks flying everywhere. The crowd huddled together, thankful the headmaster was protecting them from the blast. Even the academy building seemed to tremble for a moment before the energy finally dissipated. The headmaster stood there, breathing a sigh of relief but feeling totally stunned. He realized that Ling's punch had no spiritual energy at all. It was pure physical force. He wondered what kind of person could possibly be that strong. Ling stood calmly while Xiao Huo, who had been sent flying, sat on the ground panting. Dan Lao gently advised him that they had lost, but Xiao Huo stubbornly refused to believe it. Impossible! A transmigrator like me can't lose, he yelled, trying to force his energy one more time. Dan Lao begged him to stop before he hurt himself further. Ling approached, startling him. I'm really sorry, he said. With a simple snap of his fingers, he sent Xiao Huo flying again. Xiao Huo landed far away, unconscious. Ling looked at him seriously and whispered, because I'm a transmigrator too. The crowd erupted in cheers as the announcer officially declared Ling the winner. Xiao Yu and Morong rushed onto the stage. Xiao Yu hugged his arm, telling him how handsome he looked, while Morong asked if he could teach her how to be that strong. Ling laughed at the compliments, but then his stomach let out a loud rumble. Embarrassed, he admitted he had used up a lot of energy. Morong smiled and told him she had something delicious for him. She reached into her dress and pulled out a giant drumstick. Here you go, she said. Xiao Yu turned red with anger and shouted, can you please not pull food out of such a strange place? Morong innocently apologized, but as Ling stared at the drumstick and drooled, she added, but that's where I have the most space. Xiao Yu nearly fainted from frustration at her logic. Morong turned to Ling, who was eating happily, and smiled as she pulled out yet another drumstick. If that's not enough, I've got more, she said. As Ling ate and laughed with delight, Xiao Yu stood to the side, fuming and biting her nails. She grumbled to herself, convinced that this green tea girl was definitely trying to move in on Ling. She vowed to learn how to cook so she wouldn't lose her place by his side. Instructor Yanli looked at them with irritation. The match is over. Why are you still on the stage? Get down so the others can start, he shouted. Ling quickly apologized, but Xiao Yu snapped back, asking why he wasn't telling anyone else to move. Ling, still chewing his meat, suddenly had a thought. He hopped over to Xiao Huo and calmly offered him the half-eaten drumstick. You must be starving after that fight. Here, have some, he said sincerely. Xiao Huo looked wary, and for a second, he actually stared at the juicy meat, but then he quickly swatted Ling's hand away. I don't need your pity, he barked, turning to leave. Xiao Yu was furious at how he treated Ling and wanted to teach him a lesson, but Ling stopped her. Let it go, he said softly. If I had lost, I wouldn't be in a good mood either. Morong was impressed by his generosity, but Ling just noted that since they were from the same hometown, meaning they were both transmigrators, he didn't really want to be enemies. Both girls were confused by the hometown comment. In a corner below the arena, Chunhuo watched Xiao Huo's exit with pure contempt, spitting on the ground. And he calls himself a chosen one, he muttered. He started plotting another way to deal with Ling, but he was immediately interrupted by Tian Du, who handed him a penalty slip. Spitting on academy grounds. That's a fine of 100 spirit stones, the old man said sternly. Chunhuo was stunned and angry, but one look at Tian Du's dark expression made him force a smile and pay up. He glared at Ling, blaming him for the fine. Ling suddenly sneezed, making Xiao Yu worry he had caught a cold. Morong immediately offered him some ginger tea. Ling rubbed his nose, embarrassed, and joked that someone was probably just talking about him. Just then, Beatty's annoyed voice rang out from behind. Ling! He jumped and turned to see her looking furious. Her arrival immediately caught Instructor Yanli's attention, but she completely ignored him and walked straight up to Ling. I admit, you have some skill, she said. Ling felt bad for the ignored instructor and whispered if it was okay to ignore him like that. Beatty didn't care. You defeated Xiao Huo easily, which surprised me. Her words made Xiao Huo, who was still nearby, cough up blood in frustration. The crowd whispered about how she managed to offend 2 people with just one sentence. Beatty pointed her sword at Ling. The others couldn't force you to reveal your true nature as a demonic cultivator, so I'll do it myself. Ling broke into a cold sweat, trying to act like he had no idea what she was talking about. She turned to Yanli and asked to go next. The instructor agreed, but said they needed to find her an opponent. Beatty raised her sword and looked at the crowd with a cold gaze. Except for Ling, the rest of you can all come at me at once. The students were shocked. Some were excited, while others were offended that she thought she could take everyone. Xiao Huo watched her from below, impressed by her arrogance. No wonder she's the woman I've got my eye on, he smirked. Dan Lao looked at him with annoyance. Didn't you hear him? Ling is a transmigrator just like you. Stop with the child of destiny fantasies and focus on reality. Xiao Huo's face darkened, but he stayed stubborn, forcing a smile that was the complete opposite of Dan Lao's worried look. Dan Lao sighed, wondering how he ended up with this kid. Xiao Huo just scoffed and explained that since his enemy was a fellow transmigrator, the title of Child of Destiny was definitely his. He smiled confidently, vowing to cultivate hard and crush everyone beneath his feet. Up in the stands, one of the instructors, Tianxing, asked the headmaster if they should allow the chaos below, since it didn't really follow the rules. The headmaster looked on gravely but noted that young people always have a bit of excess energy to burn. He then spoke up, asking Beatty if she really wanted to challenge everyone at once. She looked up and firmly confirmed that she didn't want to waste any more time. The headmaster gave the signal for the competition to begin. Immediately, the crowd below surged toward Beatty. "We're all geniuses from our own clans. Don't be so arrogant," they yelled. She watched them coldly, muttering that their attacks were mere child's play. She swung her sword, unleashing a flurry of blades. One man stubbornly charged forward, shouting, "Watch my one force breaks all laws." He focused his power into his weapon, calling out his purple thunder fury saber technique. Beatty scoffed at his attempt to compete in pure strength and swung her sword to meet him. Their weapons clashed, creating a massive explosion that sent him and several others flying across the arena. The man landed right near Tianji and Jiaxu. Tianji noted that it was no surprise she was the top genius, seeing as she just sent the young master of the Mad Saber sect flying with one move. He turned to Jiaxu and asked why he didn't go up there, since he was also a high-level fighter. Jiaxu just glanced at him and said he wouldn't bother competing, which left Tianji speechless at his arrogance. One student tried to sneak up on Beatty while she was distracted, but she nimbly dodged and sent him flying with a powerful kick. As more students gripped their weapons to charge, she realized they weren't going to stop. She frowned and decided to use her ultimate move, the Imperial Sword Decree. A tremendous force like a whirlwind pierced the sky. The crowd was stunned to see her flying. Some wondered if she had already reached the Golden Core stage, but Tianji pointed out that she was actually using the wind from her sword to lift herself up. Jiaxu agreed, noting he'd read about that specific technique in the library. Floating in midair, Beatty looked down at the crowd. Zhang glared at her, but she ignored his shouting. She focused her energy and called out, "Myriad swords rise!" Thousands of shining swords appeared around her. With a cold command of all shall perish, the blades shot forward, piercing the crowd below and leaving them sprawled on the ground in fear. Murong's eyes lit up with admiration, seeing how Beatty took everyone down in a single move. Ling noted in a low voice that she was incredibly strong for her level, while Xiaoyu insisted that even with those skills, she was still no match for Ling. Zhang, trembling and red-faced, stammered and asked why she had to injure him. The people around him mocked him, asking what he expected after trying to sneak a peek at her. As Beatty landed back on the ground, approached her with a strange smile, commenting on how much stronger she had become. Yanli loudly announced, "The winner is Beatty!" She sheathed her sword with a serious expression, but then she remembered something. Looking toward Ling from a distance, she drew her blade and pointed it right at him. "It's time to settle the score between us," she declared. Ling stepped closer, looking at her cautiously. "You just finished fighting," he said. "Don't you want to rest for a bit?" Beatty replied coldly that she didn't need to. She glanced at the people lying scattered on the ground and said that dealing with them hadn't taken much effort at all. Up in the stands, the instructors watched with interest. Tianxing chuckled, noting that these two kids were likely the strongest ones there, and he was excited to see their competition play out. Lu Hong agreed and snapped his fingers, commanding a group of mechanical puppets to clear the stage by roughly grabbing the defeated contestants. Ling started to panic as he saw Beatty's sharp blade near his neck. He backed away fearfully, raising his hands in surrender. "There's no need to be so hostile," he pleaded. Beatty snapped at him to be quiet, determined to force him to use his full power and reveal his true identity as a demonic cultivator. Ling forced a laugh and tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding. "I don't even have any special powers, so how could I be a demonic cultivator?" he asked, sweat beading on his forehead. He tried to smile and glanced away, not daring to look her in the eye. "Even if I were, we don't have a reason to make this a life or death struggle, do we?" Beatty's face darkened with anger. "No reason?" she questioned, her voice hardening as she recalled painful memories from her past. Her anger flared, and she shouted that he had no idea what she had been through. Ling anxiously backed away, sensing her aura growing stronger. Beatty didn't want to talk anymore. She attacked with her ascendant sword chi, sending a powerful force from the hilt of her sword striking downward. Ling was startled by the swiftness of the attack. "Such powerful energy! I can't take this head on," he thought. He used a move called Leap of the Origin, jumping high into the air to dodge. The force followed him upward, narrowly missing him. He was relieved to have escaped, but his face remained serious. From the ground, Jiaxu watched in awe. To be able to fly so high with just leg strength, amazing, he said. Tianji added his own praise for boss Ling. Ling breathed a sigh of relief as the attack dissipated, thinking he was safe, but his relief didn't last long. Beatty quickly ascended toward him. "Let's see where you can run in the air," she shouted. A beam of light from the sky infused her sword as she called out her heaven-splitting sword technique. A blinding green energy wave slammed into Ling, creating a shockwave that shook the ground. Dust and debris hung in the air as the area fell silent. Beatty landed gracefully. In the stands, Lu Hong worried if the fight was getting too dangerous for the spectators, but Tianxing calmly noted that testing the newcomers was quite entertaining. As the smoke cleared, Ling appeared. Sensing him, Beatty reacted instantly. Ling used a move called Empty Hand, grasping the white person, catching her blade between his palms. A blue glow emanated from his hands, astonishing the crowd. Murong was surprised he could catch such a large sword, but Xiaoyu just smiled proudly, knowing his strength was beyond imagination. Beatty was furious. "You're still hiding your true face," she screamed. She leaped back into the air and used her 10,000 swords technique, sending thousands of blades hurtling toward him like a deadly rain. The shockwaves shook the ground again. When the smoke cleared, Ling was still standing. Using his empty hand technique repeatedly, he had caught every single sword. Beatty shouted in frustration, unable to believe he had survived that. One observer nearby muttered that the scene felt strangely familiar. Ling slowly stood up and calmly compressed the spectral swords into a sphere. He looked at her indifferently. "You're not my match. Why not admit defeat?" he said, tossing the sphere back toward her. As the swords hit the ground, Beatty's face darkened. Tears welled up in her eyes as she glared at him. "I will never admit defeat to you," she declared. 10 years ago at Imperial Sword Peak, a little girl's voice rang out. "Mother!" 5-year-old Beatty ran toward her mother, clutching a small wooden sword. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "I sensed spiritual energy," she cheered. Her mother, Waifu, Waifu was so overcome with joy that she burst into tears and pulled her daughter into a huge hug. As expected of our baby, only 5 years old and already guiding chi into your body, Waifu gently stroked her head and told her she believed Baidi would grow up to be a powerful master who would make their sect even stronger. The little girl pumped her fist in determination. I'll do it! Baidi is the best! Suddenly a shadow fell over them. It was Bai Jian, the girl's father and the sect leader. He looked at them seriously and told his wife to stop raising their daughter that way. He argued that just sensing chi wasn't the same as actually reaching the chi refining stage, and if they kept praising her like that, she'd grow too arrogant to lead the sect one day. This started a classic argument between the couple. Waifu snapped back, reminding him that when he was 5, he was still wetting the bed. She didn't see anything wrong with their daughter being a little proud of her talent. Fed up with the lecture, she pulled Baidi away, leaving her father behind. Let's go, Baidi. It's your birthday, so I'm going to make you something delicious. Baidi looked at her mother and said she understood what her dad meant. She knew she had to be stronger to be accepted by the sect. To her mother's surprise, the little girl immediately sat down on the ground and crossed her legs to begin meditating. She was determined to reach the chi refining stage as soon as possible. Seeing his daughter's focus, Bai Jian was actually very proud. He hid behind a door and started crying happy tears. Baidi, you're such a good child. Was I too harsh? He sobbed. His wife caught him in the act and teased him for crying so loudly. He tried to save face, claiming he was just trying to maintain his dignity as a father and a leader to keep her from going astray. Waifu mocked his dignity, knowing he was just a big softy. Her husband sighed, noting that the world of cultivation is dangerous and a little hardship now would keep her safe later. He truly believed his daughter was the most talented child in the world. Baidi remained focused on her meditation, oblivious to her parents' bickering. Night fell, and the moon hung high in the sky. Baidi continued to gather spiritual energy, her body glowing softly. Her practiced sword circled her tirelessly as she pushed through her exhaustion. She kept telling herself, just a little more. If I get stronger, mom and dad won't fight anymore. Meanwhile, Waifu headed back toward the courtyard, thinking her daughter should rest. As she arrived, she called out for Baidi, but her voice was cut short. A demonic cultivator dressed in red had appeared on the roof. Waifu gasped, dropping the plate of food she was carrying. Baidi was so focused on her chi that she didn't notice her mother rush past her. Just as the girl felt she was on the verge of a breakthrough, a merciless blabé descended toward her. Baidi opened her eyes and saw her mother embracing her. Mom, I did it! I broke through! She announced happily, but her mother was busy pushing her away, screaming for her to run. Baidi was confused and kept calling out for her mom. In that life or death moment, Waifu used her own body to take a fatal blow intended for her daughter. Run to your father, she cried. Smoke began to billow from the courtyard, catching the attention of Bai Jian. He rushed to the scene with his men and froze in horror. He watched as the demonic blade pierced his wife's chest while she shielded their daughter. He quickly threw out a magic chain to restrain the attacker. After subduing the demonic cultivator, he leaped onto his green sword and took flight, desperate to save what was left of his family. As soon as the words left his mouth, Bai Jian struck down with his one chi demon slayer slash. After finishing the threat, he rushed to his dying wife's side. It's all right, I'm here, he whispered. Little Baidi could only whimper helplessly, Mom. Seeing her mother covered in red, she panicked, calling out to her father over and over. Waifu struggled to speak through the pain. Her last words a heartbreaking apology. I'm sorry, I didn't take good care of Baidi. As her hand fell limp, her voice faded away forever. Baidi was overcome with grief, shaking her mother and begging her to wake up. Looking at his heartbroken daughter, Bai Jian couldn't stop his own tears. Baidi, today is your birthday, isn't it? He asked through the pain. He fumbled inside his robe and tearfully pulled out the sword control seal. From now on, without your mother here, you must use this sword to protect yourself. Snapping back to the present, she pointed her sword mercilessly at Ling, startling him. I will absolutely not lose to a demonic cultivator, she declared. Ling tried again to reason with her. I told you, I'm not a demonic cultivator. But Baidi was fueled by hatred. I must use this sword to finish every demonic cultivator in the world. Why are you suddenly crying? I didn't pick on you, Ling said, completely bewildered by her words. She didn't listen, telling him she knew ordinary moves wouldn't work on him. She brought the sword close to her face and fell silent, thinking to herself that even though her father warned her not to use this move before reaching the golden core stage, she had no choice if she wanted to defeat a powerful enemy like him. She began to operate the ultimate sword control peak technique, her energy flowing through the blade. Up in the stands, Lu Hong and the headmaster were taken aback, recognizing it as a move meant specifically to annihilate demons. Suddenly, Baidi coughed up red, making Ling worry. Why are you vomiting? Should I call a healer? She coldly rejected his kindness and threw out a chain, binding him tightly. I don't need a demonic cultivator to care about me. As soon as he was restrained, she leaped onto her flying sword and brought her blade down with everything she had. Demon-slaying strike! A massive boom echoed across the arena. Murong watched in shock, wondering if Ling would be okay, but Xiaoyu just watched with a bored look, knowing he wouldn't even notice an attack like that. As thick smoke covered the area, Baidi felt smug, believing that one move was enough to finish him. But then, a cough came from inside the smoke. Ling walked out looking a little dusty and scratching his head. Baidi was stunned. Is your move finished? He asked innocently. I don't have a scratch. Baidi pointed her sword at him in a rage, while Ling rubbed his head. Well, there is another possibility, he suggested. Maybe I'm just not a demonic cultivator. Frustrated that her technique had failed, she bit her lip, wondering if the move was incomplete because she hadn't reached a higher level yet. Don't ignore what I'm saying, Ling yelled. But Baidi was lost in her own thoughts, convinced that if she were only stronger, She could have finished him. She was surrounded by flashes of dark light, her aura growing dangerous as she repeated her vow to finish all demonic cultivators. Suddenly, a hand appeared on her shoulder. It was the headmaster. "The match ends here," he said firmly. Beatty's eyes widened in surprise. From a distance, Tianji and the headmaster's grandson watched the intervention. Tianji wondered why the match was stopped, and the grandson suggested the headmaster might actually be worried that Beatty's frightening aura would lead to someone getting finished off for real. In another part of the arena, Mo Yue was brewing a dark plan. He held out his hand, and a sinister red light appeared. "It's too late to stop this now," he whispered. He pointed at Beatty, and the light shot into her body, causing a dark and ominous power to surge within her. Seeing this, the headmaster cried out in alarm. Suddenly, a massive demonic hand erupted from the ground, transforming into a giant monster. A demonic cultivator had managed to sneak in while everyone was distracted. Realizing the danger, the headmaster ordered the instructors to get the students to safety. "I'll handle this myself," he declared. Beatty collapsed to the ground, feeling a strange sensation. "What's happening to me?" she gasped. The monster lunged toward her, and she looked up in terror. She wanted to fight back, but her body was trembling so much she couldn't move. The headmaster stepped in, explaining that she was frozen because of the shock from the demonic attack. In the distance, more demonic cultivators began to swarm the area. Mo Yue laughed, signaling his group to begin their operation. Lu Hong panicked, realizing they were being surrounded. Instructor Yanli stepped forward bravely. "I'll stop them. You get the students out of here," he shouted. When Lu Hong worried about him, Yanli reminded him of his sandbag saint body and activated his diamond body defense. Tianji was impressed by the instructor's bravery, and Jaxu noted that an instructor at the strongest academy in the world had to be capable. However, Zhao Yu noticed something was off. Yanli looked like he was about to faint while standing up. Jaxu was baffled, wondering how the man ever passed the instructor selection process in the first place. The headmaster jumped into the fray, knocking back the monster with a powerful strike. He followed up with his burning blood divine art, sending flames toward the attackers. Tianji cheered for the formidable old man, though Jaxu had joked that his grandfather only knew how to play with fire. Despite the small victory, the headmaster was still worried about Beatty. A demonic cultivator was approaching her from behind, and it looked like it was too late. But suddenly, a figure appeared. It was Ling. "Don't pick on her," he yelled, throwing a punch that sent the attacker flying. Beatty felt a mix of gratitude and confusion. "Ling, why did you save me?" he asked. Ling looked at her blankly. "Why wouldn't I? Were they your pets or something?" Beatty snapped back. "Why do you see pets everywhere, you idiot?" Then she softened her voice. "I mean, I've been targeting you this whole time, thinking you were the enemy. Why keep saving me?" Ling scratched his head sheepishly. "Whether someone is a demonic cultivator or not isn't the point. What matters is what's in their heart and if they are a good person. My father told me that, and I think he's right. I think you're a good person, so you shouldn't be finished off like this." Beatty blushed at his words. Suddenly, another group of attackers advanced from behind him. Beatty screamed for him to look out. Ling turned around and called out, "Immortal technique! Reincarnation of love!" With one powerful move, he blasted the demonic cultivators away. The headmaster watched with interest, finding Ling to be an incredibly interesting young man, before diving back in to deal with the rest of the group. Suddenly, the enemies got back up. Ling stood his ground, but one of them charged straight at Beatty with even more power than before. Startled, Ling immediately used a transformation move. "Immortal technique! White blade grip!" he shouted, lifting the monster with just one hand. Beatty realized she couldn't just stand there. "This can't go on. I have to join the fight too," she cried. She struck the monster down and felt a surge of relief. "I did it!" Ling praised her from the side. "I knew it. You really are a good person." But just then, the monster released a thick spreading gas. Beatty didn't recognize the vapor, but Ling immediately realized the danger. "It's poison! That monster is toxic!" he yelled. Beatty quickly covered her nose, but the fog grew thicker. Ling worried that this poison was even stronger than the smoke used by Wang. He struggled to launch a counterattack, and Beatty screamed for him to be careful. Unfortunately, the poison had already entered her system, and she found she couldn't move. Ling rushed to her side and carried her away. He was confused, asking why he could still move while the poison didn't seem to affect him much. He wondered aloud if he had antibodies. Beatty was puzzled by the word, but Ling asked if she had encountered this kind of monster before. Annoyed by his questions during a crisis, she snapped, "Now's not the time for that." She turned back to the demonic cultivator, worried that even if she were immune to the gas, she might not be strong enough to win. Ling was surprised that a demonic cultivator could grow to such a massive size, reminding Beatty to use her powerful demon-slaying slash. She stammered, her hands trembling as she realized her body wasn't obeying her. Suddenly, Xiao Huo appeared with a sinister smile. "Times like these, it seems I'm needed to play the hero," he smirked. He told them his previous loss was just a warm-up, and that they needed him to finish the job. Elder Dan shouted a warning for him to be careful since he couldn't help this time, but Xiao Huo ignored him. "Beatty, watch me now," he bragged. Beatty found his arrogance irritating. Xiao Huo charged forward, unleashing a series of elemental techniques. "Wood begets fire, flame dragon's embrace," he shouted, followed by a massive explosion. He went for his final move, a heaven-opening chain, but as his blade neared the monster, it wouldn't cut through. Xiao Huo was shocked as he was flung back, crashing into the ground. Elder Dan told him to rest, but he stubbornly refused, yelling that he was the chosen one and had to fight to the end. The monster launched another attack at him, and Beatty watched in disbelief. "This is impossible," she thought. She realized the monster was using a technique from her own sect, the Sword Control Peak. She wondered if there was a traitor within her family. Before she could finish the thought, the monster charged at her. Ling yelled for her not to lose focus and ran to intercept the attack. Beatty couldn't believe it. "Ling, you're so weak," she cried. He simply replied that he was repaying her for saving him before. Seeing the chaos, the headmaster roared in fury and leaped into the air with a giant fireball, launching his fire god descent on the group of demonic cultivators. From a distance, Sima Yue observed the scene, refusing to let the headmaster interfere with his game. Meanwhile, Beatty asked Ling how he was feeling. He weakly replied that he couldn't use his energy anymore because of the poison. Baidi asked how to cure it, and Ling mentioned that antibodies could help. Without hesitation, she said, "My blood has antibodies. Let me give you some." Ling was taken aback by how reckless she was being, but the monster was approaching again. "There's no time! Here!" she cried. Xiaowo watched from the ground and screamed in shock as Baidi leaned in. The entire crowd erupted. "Is that a kiss from the young miss? Why would she do that?" Tianji was frantically scribbling in his notebook, claiming he had predicted her crush on Ling all along. Murong and Xiaoyu were devastated, clutching their chests and yelling for Baidi to get off of him. As the monster roared again, a massive surge of immortal energy appeared around Ling. He embraced Baidi and unleashed his most powerful attack yet. He let out a sigh and smiled. "My strength is back." After the kiss, Baidi became incredibly shy. She glanced bashfully at Ling's face from such a close distance and thought to herself, "This jerk? He's actually kind of handsome." Meanwhile, Ling, who doesn't have a romantic bone in his body, was just confused. "Why is my face suddenly so hot? Am I seriously injured?" he wondered. To hide her embarrassment, Baidi just let out a stiff cough. The awkward silence was broken by the headmaster, who sighed in relief that everyone was safe. He immediately launched an attack to push back the remaining demonic cultivators, shouting for them to pay for what they had done. However, a figure stood below with a sinister smile and a malicious gleam in his eyes. The headmaster angrily recognized him as the mastermind. He lunged at Sima Yue, but his punch went right through him. A body double, the headmaster realized in a rage. What are these demonic cultivators planning? While the headmaster was distracted, the real Sima Yue had snuck into the archives. He sneered at the foolish righteous cultivators, knowing they would never expect him to avoid a head-on fight. A red aura began to glow around him. He sent out thousands of venomous spiders to search the room, chuckling that the academy's treasures weren't very well hidden. Soon, the spiders chirped, finding what he was looking for, an ancient scroll. "Finally!" Sima Yue laughed, but his victory was interrupted by Tian Du, the janitor, who was holding a broom and looking very annoyed. "The archives are forbidden," the old man stated. "Entering and causing damage carries a fine of 1,000 spirit stones." Sima Yue put on a mask and mocked him, asking how the once famous Tian Du had been reduced to a mere janitor. The old man snapped that it was none of his business. His job was simply to uphold the rules. He warned Sima Yue to put everything back or face a more severe penalty. Sima Yue provoked him further, asking what he would do about it. Without a word, the old man gripped his broom and charged with incredible speed. "So fast!" Sima Yue gasped. A loud bang echoed through the building, catching the headmaster's attention. "The archives! I need to check it out!" he shouted, ordering the other instructors to stay and protect the students. Xiaoyu watched him go, sensing that things were about to get chaotic again. Inside the archives, Sima Yue had been injured by the old man. He grumbled that for someone protecting the library, the janitor was causing more destruction than he was. Tian Du ignored him, adding a 10,000 spirit stone fine to cover the repairs. Sima Yue used a technique to reconnect his own arm and told the old man he still didn't understand the reason. "With demonic cultivators, there is no point in reason," Tian Du replied. He blocked Sima Yue's next attack with one hand. Sima Yue noticed a change in the old man's eyes and launched a series of strikes, but Tian Du blocked them all with his broom. The old man boasted that his power had grown far beyond Sima Yue's imagination. His eyes changed color, full of malice as he remembered how the old man had almost finished him years ago. Sima Yue revealed the dark cost of his power. He had sacrificed his own family to reach this level. He explained that although Tian Du had repelled him once before, he had managed to seize half of a secret manual, and today, he had finally taken the other half back. He mocked the old man, asking if he finally understood the gap between them. Tian Du's only response was to increase the fine to 20,000 spirit stones. Infuriated, Sima Yue lunged at him. The two exchanged blows until Sima Yue called for the old man to get serious. Tian Du gripped the hilt of his blade, residual fire, and focused his power until an aura erupted from the sheath. Sima Yue looked at the weapon with disdain. "I remember breaking that blade in half. I can't believe you kept a broken shard." Tian Du stared at him down coldly. "Is it really just a shard? Try it and see." He charged forward, slicing through Sima Yue's face. Sima Yue remained eerily calm, not making a sound as his body began to distort and dissolve. Thinking it was over, Tian Du looked at the lifeless remains, but suddenly Sima Yue's face began a bizarre revival, and his body dissipated into smoke. Tian Du was horrified by the demonic trickery. An eerie laugh came from behind him as Sima Yue reappeared, now looking grotesque. He sneered at the old man, admitting he wasn't easy to deal with. Tian Du gripped his blade tight and charged again, demanding to know what kind of dark magic he had been practicing all these years. Mo Yue didn't seem interested in dragging out the fight. He turned to leave, dropping a cryptic parting shot. "My goal for today has already been achieved." Tian Du was shocked and refused to let him escape so easily. He focused his power, creating a blinding golden light as his face darkened with rage. "I won't let you get away this time," he vowed. Seeing the old man's stubbornness, Mo Yue gave him a cold, warning look. "Are you sure you want to keep chasing me? The library you love so much will be destroyed if you do." Tian Du froze, looking back at the library in its precarious state. He was filled with frustration and anger, but he didn't give up. In a final, desperate move, he slashed his own wrist with his blade, staining the metal crimson. Blood forges the blade, residual fire reforged. "I will not spare you," he roared. Mo Yue just let out a disdainful laugh. "Then let's see how many lives you have left." Their two forces collided in an explosion of power. Just then, the headmaster, Tian, rushed into the room. He looked anxiously at the destruction and called out for the grandmaster. He eventually found Tian Du kneeling on the ground, coughing and covered in wounds. "At your age, you're still so reckless," Tian said, rushing to support him. Tian Du gripped his broken blade tightly, his voice serious. "If it weren't for protecting the academy, I would have finished that bastard." Tian was shocked by the extent of the old man's injuries and asked who could have done this. Tian Du struggled to answer, identifying the attacker as the great demonic cultivator who had invaded thousands of years ago. Tian turned pale with shock. He remembered the legends of Sima Yue, a man man who had finished 100,000 people to fuel his dark arts. It had taken the entire Righteous Alliance and the lives of over 20 top-tier experts just to stop him back then. Tiandu warned him that Sima Yu wasn't just using normal demonic magic anymore. He was now using a technique to control heart demons. Tian grew even more worried, realizing the attackers outside showed those exact symptoms. He wanted to chase Sima Yu down immediately, but Tiandu stopped him. He told the headmaster not to waste his energy, as even catching him wouldn't be enough to stop him now. We need to inform the Righteous Alliance, Tiandu urged. Sima Yue is going to start a war. We need their help. As he looked at his trembling, blood-stained hand, his blade began to dissipate. He spoke with deep regret, realizing he could no longer protect the library. He suddenly worried if the heart demons had affected the students at the arena. Tian reassured him that he had suppressed them, but then his face went pale as he remembered something. Wait, the headmaster muttered before dashing off. There's still one person I haven't dealt with. Tiandu, left alone and bleeding, shouted after him in a rage. Damn it, at least get me a doctor before you leave. Back at the arena, the students were shouting indignantly. They looked at the mountain of fallen enemies and cursed the demonic cultivators, saying they all deserved to die. Ling, standing beside Beatty, listened to their angry words and began to wonder to himself, does everyone really hate them this much? Suddenly, Beatty glanced at him and said softly, Hey Ling. He looked over, feeling a bit shy, and blushed as he replied with a quiet thank you. Embarrassed by the moment, she suddenly got irritated and pointed a finger at him. I admit you saved me just now, she raised her voice, but I'm still going to investigate you. I need to know if you're really a demonic cultivator or not. Ling just felt helpless, wondering to himself, is this what they call a tsundere? Suddenly, he froze as he noticed something behind her. A blinding light erupted from behind Beatty, startling her. The headmaster, Tian, swooped down from the sky, yelling for her to get out of the way. Without a second thought, Ling rushed toward Beatty, grabbed her in a tight embrace, and fell backward to shield her. She was stunned. Why did you do that? You could have just stayed safe, she whispered. He had used his own body as a shield against the residual blast. Ling gritted his teeth and checked his back, realizing he felt fine. I think I'm okay, he said. Xiaoyu was shocked, but then she angrily punched him for making her worry so much. He gave her a gentle smile and told her not to cry. As they talked, they didn't notice two figures approaching with a dark aura. Xiaoyu, still worked up, hugged him tightly from behind, telling him not to lean in like that if he was truly fine. Murong took the chance to run to Baidi's side, offering her a piece of meat to help her recover. As the group started to leave, the headmaster rushed forward to stop them. Wait a moment, he said seriously, placing a hand on Ling's shoulder. Let me examine you. Xiaoyu was annoyed by the old man's meddling and yelled at him, but Tian ignored her, staring intently at Ling with his divine eye. Suddenly, he froze in shock. It's just as I feared. The seed of a heart demon has been planted in your body. Meanwhile, a voice echoed from the academy's first peak. The leaders were in a panic. Sima Yue attacked the library? I can't believe that the devil is still alive. They realized he had injured Elder Wu and stolen half of a high-level secret manual. They vowed that the Alliance would have to step up to protect the library from such a dangerous threat. The headmaster raised his hand and suggested that they could combine their strength to solve the demonic cultivator problem. However, he noted with a grave expression that a more important issue had come up, which was that heart demons had appeared among the students. Thinking of the cultivator, filled with evil energy, he explained that heart demons were a collection of negative energy created when cultivators tried to push past their limits and clear out internal impurities. He added that the higher a cultivator's level, the more of these demons they would produce, and he insisted that they had to keep this a secret to keep the world stable. Duong raised his hand calmly and asked how much longer they could actually keep a secret like that hidden, especially with someone like Sima Yue appearing. A man with a long beard broke the silence and stated that the job of stopping the news from spreading would be given to Du Wang and Tian. He said the rest of them would go look for Sima Yue and the other troublemakers. Once everyone agreed, they all vanished. Elsewhere, a shadowy figure holding a communication orb whispered that the academy had been infiltrated much too easily. He questioned how it could be called the best library in the world if it was that simple to get inside. Du Wang hugged a large rock excitedly and told himself that this was the time for his own library to seize the top spot. The scene shifted back to dormitory number 8. Xiaoyu looked serious as she realized that was how heart demons were born and why they were considered the biggest taboo in their world. She doubtfully called out to Ling, only to realize he had already fallen asleep. She yelled at him in a fit of anger, telling him not to fall asleep while she was in the middle of talking. She eventually lay back down in frustration but kept a close eye on him. She told herself that it probably wasn't a good thing for Ling to know too much anyway, and slowly closed her eyes. Suddenly, Beatty sat bolt upright, her eyes filled with a dark intent. The next morning, the dormitory was peaceful as sunlight filled the room. Ling blinked his eyes open and wondered if it was morning already. He and Beatty both stretched, and he mentioned that he had slept quite well. Suddenly, they looked at each other in confusion. Beatty turned red and yelled at him, calling him a creep and asking why he was in her bed. Ling was totally surprised and apologized profusely, saying he had no idea how that had happened. People walking past the room were startled by the noise. Xiaoyu was on the floor, clinging to the bed frame and glowing with anger. She screamed at Beatty, calling her a schemer and accusing her of slandering Ling. Xiaoyu pointed at Beatty and scolded her, claiming that she was the one who crawled into Ling's bed and pushed Xiaoyu onto the floor. Beatty raised her fist and denied it, saying she would never do something like that. Xiaoyu roared back that she was definitely in her own bed in the middle of the night. Students in the hallway started whispering about the drama, with some saying they were jealous and others calling the tournament winner a playboy. Suddenly, Ling pointed at Beatty suspiciously and asked if there was another possibility, like her sleepwalking into his bed. She stammered and waved her hands in denial, her face turning red as she insisted she had never sleepwalked in her life. Xiaoyu fumed and told her not to play dumb. Beatty turned away and coughed, suggesting they just drop it since it was the first day of class and they shouldn't be late. Ling scratched his head and agreed she was right. Beatty grabbed her coat and stood by the door while Xiaoyu glared at Ling, asking if he was really going to let her get away with it. Beatty replied that she was sure the girl wasn't lying and that it wasn't good to be late. When Beatty opened the door, the people eavesdropping outside jumped in surprise. eyes. She asked them what they were doing lurking around, and they nervously chuckled, claiming they were just passing by or overheard by chance. Beatty glared at them until they ran away, shouting that class was starting and they had to go. Beatty sighed as she watched them leave. Xiaoyu walked down the street arm in arm with Ling while Beatty followed behind deep in thought. She mused that since they were in the same class and there wasn't much to learn at the academy anyway, observing him would be much more useful. Xiaoyu bristled and hugged Ling's arm even tighter, telling her not to even dream of clinging to him. Beatty snapped back, asking what right the other had to talk to her that way, since it was obvious who was actually trying to get closer. Xiaoyu argued right back, claiming she was Ling's protector, unlike Beatty, whom he was clearly trying to keep away. Ling finally stepped in and told them both to stop arguing. They soon arrived at a building with a gleaming sign that read, Ding Hao Academy. Ling watched the two girls behind him and realized they had ended up in the same class after all. Beatty and Xiaoyu just sulked, refusing to even look at each other. Tianji entered the room and was shocked to see Ling there, asking if he was really in this class too. Ling was confused and asked if there was a problem with that. Tianji explained the hierarchy. Class A was for the elite, Class B for the good students, Class C for the average, and Class D, their class, was reserved for the weakest ones based on the exam results. Ling put a hand to his forehead in despair, feeling like his lack of talent had finally caught up to him. Xiaoyu was furious, reminding everyone that Ling had actually been the top scorer. Suddenly, a booming voice called for silence. Instructor Yanli entered with a book tucked under his arm, grumbling about noisy brats. Tianji whispered that he never would have guessed Yanli was their homeroom teacher. Yanli glared at the room, declaring that he needed to make an example of someone on the first day. He hurled his book directly at Tianji for talking, but a hand shot out and caught it. It was Ling, who flusteredly apologized, saying it was just a reflex. Yanli was stunned, thinking to himself that this kid was a walking disaster, but he softened and told Ling he understood. Tianji thanked Ling, who insisted it was just a natural reaction. A stack of books suddenly appeared on the floor, and Yanli told everyone to settle down for their first lesson. The books flew into the students' hands. Yanli explained that the book contained the introductory qi cultivation technique of the United Righteous Alliance. He told them they had to use the illustrations to guide qi into their bodies. A student in the back complained, saying they were all already above the qi refining stage, so a basic technique felt beneath them. Ling pointed out that the student was actually below that stage. Suddenly, a book flew into that student's face. Yanli yelled that their previous methods couldn't compare to this one. The student stumbled back, asking Ling why he didn't block it. Ling apologized, saying he didn't react in time. Yanli explained that the righteous path was developed by the Alliance to be the safest and most stable method. He warned them that regardless of what they had learned before, they had to use this method now, or they would be expelled. Beatty smirked, thinking it would only take a minute, while Tianji thought researching the principles shouldn't be a problem. Only Ling and Xiaoyu looked at their books with hesitation. Ling started sweating and trembling, worried he wouldn't be able to do it. Meanwhile, Beatty closed her eyes and began to chant. A powerful aura surrounded her, and a blue flame appeared on her fingertips. She sent the energy flying toward a table behind Yanli, startling him. The students cheered, amazed that she mastered the technique so quickly. Xiaoyu just grumbled that she was a show-off. Yanli praised Beatty, but then told her she had to pay for the damaged desk after class. He looked at Ling and sighed, thinking it was impossible for someone without a spirit root to guide qi in a single lesson. He didn't even notice that Beatty's flame had burned a large hole in his clothes. Other students whispered about whether they should tell him his pants were ruined. Xiaoyu told Ling not to push himself too hard, but he was determined to sense the spiritual qi. He began to circulate his energy, and Beatty watched closely, wanting to see how he became so strong. Ling felt something changing and thought he could sense the qi, but instead of gathering energy, he accidentally released a foul gas. An awkward silence filled the room. Ling was mortified, slamming his hand on the ground and shouting that he still couldn't sense it. Beatty asked if that was how he normally cultivated. He lunged at her, desperately asking her to teach him how she did it. Once she got him to let go, she reluctantly agreed. She told him to imagine himself as a water jug and the qi as water flowing into it. Ling closed his eyes and tried to visualize it. He felt a reaction, but the same bad smell returned, making Beatty back away. She told him she must have taught him wrong and suggested he try another way. Ling felt helpless, wondering why he couldn't even manage a basic task. Beatty began to doubt if he could sense qi at all, wondering how he could be so powerful if he couldn't do this. After the others finished, Yanli told them not to celebrate yet. He pulled out a golden sphere and tossed it to a student named Zhang. Zhang caught it but immediately screamed in pain. Yanli explained that this was a training tool designed by the Alliance. The more qi you put into it, the heavier it becomes. Zhang was furious that the instructor didn't warn him. Tianji explained to Ling that this was a popular sport in the academy, similar to basketball. Yanli created 10 spheres and told the students to pour their absorbed qi into them. Beatty found hers very light, while Tianji struggled with his. Ling, determined not to be expelled, strained every muscle to lift his sphere. Elsewhere, the headmaster was admiring himself in the mirror when a luxurious flying ship appeared in the sky. Dean of the Longtang Library arrived, claiming he was there to help with the trouble at the academy. The headmaster mocked his help, knowing Shen just wanted to learn the academy's secrets. Suddenly, a spiritual qi sphere sent flying by Ling hurtled through the sky and crashed into the front of the academy. The impact shook the flying ship, making everyone panic and think they were under attack. Yanli yelled at Ling for destroying the classroom, while the headmaster suspected Ling was causing trouble again. Dean emerged from the smoke, but the sphere struck him right in the face, causing him to bleed. His people were horrified, accusing a demonic cultivator of attacking them. The headmaster stepped in and claimed it was just an accidental explosion of a training sphere. Shen didn't believe the flimsy excuse and challenged the headmaster to a spiritual qi sphere duel. The headmaster agreed to the inter-academy competition and chose 5 students to participate. Tianji asked why he was chosen, since he felt his strength strength was lacking compared to the top scorers, and he didn't want to disgrace the academy. Ling looked over at Tianji and seemed to remember his own past. He placed a hand on his friend's shoulder and encouraged him not to put himself down. He told him that as long as he tried his best, he would see results. This motivated Tianji, who started calling Ling his boss. However, Xiaohuo watched from a distance with a look of disdain. He remarked that if simply trying were enough, Ling would have developed a spiritual root a long time ago. His words really hurt Ling. The headmaster coughed and stroked his beard, agreeing that Ling had a point. He noted that Tianji's special Sand Heaven's Eye ability could predict the future, which would be a massive advantage in the game. Ling shyly raised his hand because he had another question. When the headmaster told him to go ahead, Ling embarrassedly asked how the competition was actually played. Tianji and Beidi looked at him with total exasperation. Tianji explained that it was a 5-on-5 game where players controlled a spiritual energy sphere and tried to kick it into a large floating gate to score points. Ling realized it sounded like a mix of basketball and soccer. Tianji continued his explanation, noting that while players couldn't directly hurt each other, they had to use their spiritual energy to compete for the ball. After hearing this, Ling suggested that since he didn't have any energy, he probably couldn't help and offered to let the other three go without him. The headmaster was furious, reminding Ling that the entire competition was happening because he had accidentally hit the rival dean in the face with a ball earlier. The headmaster turned to the students and told them the match was scheduled for 2 days away. He urged them to use the time to practice, noting that the honor of the academy was at stake. He then pointed to a medal and promised that if they won, he would award each of them a golden Zuantian medal. Ling was puzzled until Jacksu clarified that it was the highest honor at the academy and would grant them double the cultivation resources. Ling got incredibly excited, realizing that double the resources meant a better chance for him to succeed in his training. He clenched his fists and told the team they needed to start practicing immediately. Xiaohuo frowned, saying he had no interest in practicing with someone who couldn't use spiritual energy. Jacksu also declined, noting that his family owned the academy, so extra resources meant nothing to him. Beidi told them to never mind those two, and suggested that she and Ling practice together. Ling happily agreed. Tianji felt a bit left behind as Beidi began to explain that the sphere could receive energy from multiple people at once, meaning the more energy they put into it, the better their advantage would be. Ling said he understood the principle even without having energy himself. She held out the sphere and challenged him to try and take it from her. Ling's expression turned serious as he lunged for the ball. However, he was a step too slow. Beidi used her magic to make the ball float out of his reach. She teased him, saying that catching a magically controlled sphere with bare hands wouldn't be easy. She secretly hoped to learn more about his unique methods while they practiced. Ling sped up, determined to be faster. Beidi was surprised by his speed and made the ball rise even higher. Just as Ling's hands drew closer, he accidentally ended up clutching Beidi instead of the ball. She dropped the sphere, her face turning bright red. Xiaohuo watched from afar and was furious, calling Ling an animal. Beidi was enraged and accused Ling of doing it on purpose. He quickly bowed and apologized, saying it was an accident. Tianji watched the scene and felt a sense of romance in the air. Ling embarrassedly asked if she was hurt and even offered to rub the sore spot, which made Beidi even more flustered. She waved him off and coughed, admitting to herself that the feeling hadn't actually been that bad. Suddenly, she noticed a dark shadow in the bushes and hoped no one was ruining the mood. Xiaoyu suddenly erupted in flames, yelling at everyone to stay away from Ling. Murong tried to distract her with a chicken leg, telling her to just relax and eat. Beidi firmly stated they should move on to the next exercise. She used her sword to create a circular gate in the air and told Ling to practice his aim. He gripped the sphere, thinking that since it wasn't as heavy as he expected, he just needed to work on his accuracy. He threw the ball with a lot of force, sending it right through the goal. Beidi cheered for his accurate throw, but the sphere flew straight into a nearby room. Instructor Yanli stormed out, fuming that Ling had damaged the equipment again. He shouted that Ling wouldn't be getting any resources this month. Ling apologized quickly, but Beidi paused, wondering if she had heard a scream. The scene changed to show Dean Duwang looking very dark and brooding. The sphere was sitting right beside him. He muttered that the academy certainly had a lot of nerve. His disciple, Tu Feng, rushed in to help the old man, who was covered in blood and furious about being provoked twice in one day. Duwang wondered how a simple training ball could have injured him so badly. Tu Feng advised him to focus on preparing for the match in 3 days. Duwang agreed, noting that they were wagering the entire future of their academies on this game. Tu Feng vowed to lead their library to victory, promising his master he wouldn't let him down. 3 days later, the headmaster stood on a platform under a patched-up banner to welcome the visiting students. He called for a round of applause for Dean. Ling whispered to Beidi, asking why the dean's face looked so beat up. Beidi replied that she didn't know but wondered if he had been in a fight. Instructor Yanli sharply told them to stop whispering. Dean Duwang, whose face was covered in bruises, folded his arms and gave a very long-winded speech. He talked about strength, unity, teamwork, and the importance of a positive attitude. The students started to turn pale and yawn from the boredom. Ling whispered that even the leaders in this world gave exhausting speeches. Duwang continued for a long time, eventually telling the students they were getting worse and worse for not listening. He then pointed out that the academy's arena looked very simple. The headmaster replied that all their money went towards student resources. Duwang decided to construct a proper arena himself. He slammed his hand onto the ground and used a powerful divine art. The ground shook so much that students wondered if it was another earthquake or if he was trying to destroy the school. A massive stone arena emerged from the ground, looking like a giant flying ship. Beidi and Ling were in awe of how quickly such a huge venue was created. They were both amazed and a bit jealous of just how much spiritual energy the dean must have to pull off such a feat. Standing high above with Dean Duwang was the announcer Tian Xing, who called for the players to get ready and for the spectators to take their seats. As the arena was marked out and the crowd gathered, Tian Xing whispered a quick prayer for the home team to stay strong before officially introducing them. He represented the Xuantian library team Ling, Xiaohuo, Beidi, and Tianji. Ling looked determined, telling himself he had to win to secure those cultivation resources, while Xiaohuo warmed up, confidently stating he would be the star of the show. Xiaohuo even gave Ling a competitive glare, reminding him that even though they were both transmigrators, he planned to come out on top. top. Tiansheng then introduced the Longtang library team: Wei Chu, Yingxu, Han Yun, Ling Yu, and Tu Fong. Ling Yu gave Tu Fong an encouraging pat, telling him to show everyone the true strength of their library. Tu Fong assured her they would win and looked up at Dean, silently promising to fulfill his master's long-held wish. Han Yun, seeing Tu Fong's intensity, told him not to worry since they had trained specifically for this day, while their opponents were essentially trash. Tianji roared back in anger, insisting they weren't trash and defending Ling's honor. Han Yun kept provoking him, calling Tianji a weak fat pig. Tianji was furious but held his temper for the sake of the game. Tu Fong eventually told his team to stop talking, saying they could settle things by winning. Beatty watched them, realizing that despite their arrogance, the Longtang team looked very well trained. Apparently, the Longtang players were elite talents who had never lost a single match against their peers. When Tianji asked why he was just now mentioning this, Ling admitted that no one had asked. Xiao Wo jumped in to boost morale, telling everyone not to be afraid because he was there. He drew his sword to intimidate the other team, but instructor Yanli immediately snatched it away, explaining that weapons and magical artifacts were strictly forbidden. The Longtang team laughed at the mistake, questioning how their opponents didn't even know the basic rules. Dean Duwang taunted the headmaster about his choice of students, but the headmaster told him to mind his own business and not to underestimate the kids. Meanwhile, Yanli was busy searching Ling and pulling heavy weights out of his clothes. Ling sheepishly explained it was just a habit to wear them, leaving Yanli exasperated and wondering where they were, even hiding all these iron pieces. The match officially began with a 1-hour clock and a short halftime break. Yanli tossed the spirit orb into the air and shouted for them to start. Ling leaped up with total determination, but Zhao Huo actually used his foot to pin Ling down so he could take the ball for himself. He told Ling that since he didn't have any energy, he should just stay out of the way, because they were fighting each other. Tu Fong easily stole the ball and passed it to Han Yun. Han Yun charged toward the goal, giving Tianji a sinister smile as he dashed past him. He was so fast that Tianji just stood there in a daze as Han Yun scored. Han Yun didn't miss the chance to call him a fat pig again. The score was 0-1. Dean Duwang acted very smug about the early lead while the Longtang team showered Han Yun with praise. Body warned her teammates that the opponents were strong and they needed to stop fighting among themselves. Ling agreed and suggested he take the lead as the main attacker while the others supported him. Body darted past Tu Fong, showing off her impressive speed, but Zhao Huo suddenly charged in and slammed his fist into the ground. The shockwave hit everyone, including his own teammates. Instructor Yanli immediately issued a yellow card to Zhao Huo for his malicious intent to injure others. Zhao Huo was outraged, asking whose side the instructor was on. Yanli stood his ground, saying there were no favorites on the field, only justice. While they argued, Badi ran toward the goal and tried to throw the ball past Wei Chu. Wei Chu was busy eating a drumstick, and Badi thought she had him beat, but he suddenly transformed into a huge beast and blocked her shot. He snatched the ball and passed it to Tu Fong, who ran like a demon toward the goal. Tianji and Jack Sue tried to defend, but Tu Fong's charge sent them both flying. He scored again, making the count 0-2. The Longtang fans went wild, and Tu Fong stood proudly, pointing at Ling and Xiao Huo. He vowed that they wouldn't let the academy score a single point. Xiao Yu was furious in the stands, threatening to go down there herself, but Murong calmed her down so Ling wouldn't get disqualified. Zhao Huo raised his hand to the instructor, asking why Wei Chu was allowed to eat and transform if tools were prohibited. The instructor simply replied that food isn't a tool, so it wasn't a violation. Zhao Huo turned purple with rage, calling it blatant cheating. In the stands, Murong regretted not bringing food for her own team, while Dean Duwang continued to insult the headmaster's students. The headmaster stayed calm, saying the match had just begun. However, the Longtang team continued to dominate. They scored again and again, making it 0-3, then 0-6. Eventually, Wei Chu used his monstrous arm to snatch the ball and score yet again, bringing the total to 0-10 by the end of the first half. Ling's team was left exhausted, their spirits completely crushed as they headed into the break. The headmaster watched with a tense expression, wondering what the students were planning. On the other side, Duwang laughed triumphantly, mocking the headmaster because the match was already at halftime, and the students hadn't shown any real power yet. Inside the waiting room, Beatty's scolding could be heard the moment she walked in. She demanded to know what everyone was doing, pointing out that while Jack Sui's refusal to cooperate was one problem, Zhao Huo was making things even worse by causing trouble for Ling. Zhao Huo just shrugged it off, claiming that since they couldn't score anyway, he might as well have some fun. He added that he didn't want to work hard for the headmaster, and felt his teammates were too weak to be worth his help. He gave Tianji a look of total disdain, which made Tianji feel so guilty that he stammered an apology for dragging everyone down. Beatty wouldn't let Zhao Huo continue putting everyone down, but Tianji was becoming so distressed that he suggested it might be better if they just withdrew from the match entirely. Outside the room, Tu Fong and Zhen Yu Ling overheard the whole argument. She sneered, telling her senior that the losers were fighting among themselves and they would win easily. Tu Fong warned her not to be careless since the match wasn't over, but secretly he looked down on them, thinking the academy was just full of overrated nobodies. He smirked, thinking he wouldn't even need to use his secret weapon. In the middle of all the arguing, Ling suddenly spoke up. When everyone turned to look at him, he scratched his head and suggested that if they couldn't cooperate as a team, they should just treat the game as an individual competition. He explained that they didn't need to coordinate, they just needed to focus on their own one-on-one battles and look for their own chances to score. The room went silent as everyone thought about his idea. Soon the break ended and the announcer called for the second half to begin. win. The crowd's cheers were like a storm as both teams returned to the field. Han Yun immediately started provoking them again, asking why they hadn't surrendered yet. Tianji snapped back, telling him to just wait because Ling had a plan. Ling called out to Murong in the stands, asking her to throw down a big bag of items. As she tossed the food down, Ling moved as fast as lightning, catching every single piece cleanly. Beatty praised his impressive catch, and Tianji cheered him on. Han Yun just cracked his knuckles and told them to prepare for a real fight, promising that they would soon understand what true despair felt like. Instructor Yanli told both sides to get ready, tossed the golden ball into the air, and shouted for the second half to begin. Tu Feng shouted for his team to keep up the pressure and grab the ball. Han Yun rushed forward eagerly, claiming he would handle it. He leaped into the air and snatched the floating golden ball. From high above, he looked down at Wu Ling's team, who weren't moving. He wondered if they were giving up without even trying to make a move. He charged toward the goal, leaving a trail of magic smoke behind him like a shooting star. He told them to watch his performance. Jackshu stood ready at the front, his eyes sharp. He decided to take care of Han Yun himself, so he clasped his hands and began to chant. He let out a shout and activated an earth technique. Suddenly, rocks and earth erupted from the ground, sending dust everywhere and blocking Han Yun's view. Han Yun was startled and stopped mid-air. From the stands, the headmaster of Longtang Library muttered in disbelief, questioning if his grandson was really an earth element user. Tian Xing, struggling to stay calm, scowled and threatened to come down and deal with him personally. In the thick dust, Han Yun frantically searched for his teammates and quickly threw the ball to Ling Yu, explaining that he couldn't break through. She caught the ball, noting that only her senior brother should call her by that name. Before she could counterattack, Baidi blocked her path, radiating an intense aura and sword energy. She was ready, and a circle of magic swords surrounded them. The swords shot forward like rain, striking her. A bright green light erupted, blinding everyone, and the golden ball flew from her hand. Caught off guard, she tumbled to the ground with a soft groan. Suddenly, Yingzhi soared into the air and caught the ball as if he had been waiting for that exact moment. He called for the ball, which momentarily stunned Baidi. Yingzhui celebrated that it was finally his turn, but Xiaohuo was waiting for him. Xiaohuo jumped to block his path and called out to a young master. A surge of power from Xiaohuo overwhelmed Yingzhui, who cried out in surprise before falling to the ground. Tu Feng quickly snatched the ball before anyone else could react. He realized that the other team's strategy was to use one-on-one coverage to restrict them. He scoffed, noting that their weaknesses were too obvious, and charged forward with great momentum. Tianji was guarding the goal and used a special ability from the eye on his forehead. He laughed, claiming he had seen the future, and activated his divine eye. Tu Feng was surprised and asked if it was truly a heavenly eye ability. However, he remained confident in his strength and charged forward like an arrow, telling Tianji that even if he could predict the move, he wouldn't be strong enough to stop him. Tianji stayed still and admitted he was no match, but noted that Wu Ling was different. Wu Ling blocked Tu Feng's path with a thunderous impact. Tu Feng exerted all his strength and commented on how strong Wu Ling was. Wu Ling snatched the ball back and threw Tu Feng backward with a powerful move. Wu Ling told Tianji to hold on tight, and Tianji clung to his back. Tu Feng yelled for his team to form a defensive line and stop him, but it was no use. Wu Ling broke through, weaving and dodging every attack. Tianji used his ability to give Wu Ling constant instructions, telling him when to jump or step aside to avoid shadows and attacks. Tu Feng's face changed as he realized they were using the divine eye to predict every move. He growled that they still wouldn't get past Wei Chu's massive physique. The goal was only a few steps away. Wei Chu stood in front of it, having transformed his body into a giant form while still eating. Wu Ling spoke firmly, offering a quick apology before throwing the ball with incredible force. He hurled it toward the goal, and though Wei Chu tried to block it, he couldn't hold on. The ball bounced off his hands, knocking him down and sailing straight into the net. The announcer shouted that Xuan Tian had scored, bringing the score to 1-10. Wu Ling rejoiced while Tianji remained on his back. Tu Feng returned to his team and told them it was just one goal, urging them to regroup and keep attacking. His teammates agreed and followed him. The commentator noted that Xuan Tian had just scored their first goal and their spirits were reviving. Xiaohuo began provoking Ling Yu, teasing her about who had claimed they wouldn't allow a single goal. Even though he wasn't the one who scored, he was getting very worked up, which annoyed Ling Yu. Tu Feng, looking serious, held the ball and prepared for an offensive breakthrough. He charged toward Wu Ling, but the ball was snatched away almost immediately. Wu Ling dashed away like lightning, weaving through the defense and knocking Wei Chu aside. The crowd cheered as Xuan Tian scored again, making the score 2-10. Tu Feng was frustrated and confused by how quickly things were changing. Wu Ling continued to score repeatedly, and even with Wei Chu's best efforts, he couldn't stop the fast plays. The score quickly moved to 6-10, then 8-10, and finally tied at 10-10. The commentator's voice boomed over the cheering crowd. In the very important person stands, Du Wang was furious. Tu Feng's face darkened as he realized he couldn't let his teacher lose their bet. He gripped a purple pill with a strange pattern and decided he had to use its energy. He swallowed the pill, and a massive surge of purple energy erupted from him. His eyes turned white and his skin began to glow with purple veins. Ling Yu watched anxiously, not understanding what was happening. Tu Feng felt a familiar power and smirked triumphantly. In the stands, Tianxing sensed a strange aura and asked the person beside him if they felt demonic energy. Du Wang brushed it off, mockingly asking if Tianxing was just paranoid from past experiences. He confidently stated that no one would dare cause trouble while they were there. Feeling the power from the pill, Tu Feng smiled wickedly and thought to himself that he only needed a little bit of this energy to win. Ling Yu asked if he was all right, and he replied that he was fine and they should continue. He knew time was running out as he looked at the low hourglass. Tianji told Wu Ling excitedly that they could definitely win with their current momentum. Wu Ling laughed in response, saying the gold medal was waiting for them. Meanwhile, Xiaohuo was feeling left out and complained that the others were getting all the attention. Yanli grabbed the ball and shouted for the match to continue. A second after the ball was thrown up, Xiaohuo jumped and grabbed it. Someone behind him was too slow to react and cursed under their breath. Baidi shouted at Xiaohuo, asking what he was doing. Xiaohuo explained that the opponents were tired and it was better to let him handle the ball while the others supported him. He flew off smugly, humming to himself, narrowed his eyes and laughed, noting that the opponent seemed to have run out of energy. However, Tianji calmly observed that while the other team's cultivation was lower, they were only struggling now because they had used so much spiritual energy earlier. Jiaxu interjected, sharply reminding Tianji that everyone's cultivation was actually higher than the Longtang students, and Baidi told him to stay quiet if he didn't have anything helpful to say. Xiaohuo was very pleased with himself as he approached the scoring area. As the arena watched, he prepared a wood technique. However, he was shocked to find the ball had been snatched away instantly. He cried out in disbelief. Tianxing was confused, asking why Duwang had previously said the student hadn't learned that move yet. Duwang smugly claimed that Tu Feng must have had a breakthrough under pressure, though he secretly had his own suspicions. Xiaohuo fell to the ground, and Tu Feng grabbed the ball, noting that time was almost up. Lingyu watched him with admiration, praising how cool he looked. Wu Ling and Tianji moved to block Tu Feng, who grew quiet as he calculated his next move. Tu Feng's armored arm gripped the ball tightly, and he shouted that they wouldn't stop him. The two sides clashed fiercely. Tu Feng was momentarily confused by how easily he was being blocked. He shifted his stance and used his earth technique to lift himself into the air, catching Wu Ling and Tianji off guard. He yelled again that they couldn't stop him, but as Jiaxu and Baidi ran to intercept, Tu Feng suddenly froze. He looked down in annoyance, wondering why he couldn't move forward. Tianji had realized they didn't need to attack him directly. They could just summon a stone pillar instead. Wu Ling agreed and slammed his hand into the ground to make the earth rise. Someone encouraged Wu Ling to throw Tu Feng back toward his own goal. As Tu Feng was pulled closer to his own net, he grew anxious, fearing he would score an own goal. Suddenly, the energy orb inside him cracked. Feeling he had no other choice, he pushed his power even further. To Tianji and Wu Ling's shock, the earth became incredibly heavy. Tu Feng now stood on the shoulder of a massive giant made of earth. Tianxing asked in disbelief how he could manipulate the technique to such an extent after just learning it. The earth giant then reached out its hand to give Tu Feng a path forward. Tu Feng stood proudly on the giant earthen palm, ready to strike. Baidi and Jiaxu flew toward him to defend their positions. Jiaxu tried to kick the giant figure, but it didn't move at all. Without skipping a beat, Baidi slashed at it with her sword. Tu Feng just smirked. With a quick flick of his wrist, he forced Jiaxu to pull back her leg, and Baidi's sword bounced harmlessly off the armor. Seeing how sturdy the defense was, Wu Ling clenched his fists and prepared to strike. He poured every bit of his strength into a massive punch, causing a golden flash and a loud explosion that rained rocks and debris everywhere. As the dust settled, Tu Feng landed on the ground, glaring at Wu Ling and asking why he kept getting in the way. Wu Ling simply told him that he wanted to win. Tu Feng scoffed but quickly regained his focus, grabbing the ball and advancing while claiming that victory would be his. The two clashed again, creating a chaotic scene of flying debris. Watching the fierce battle from the sidelines, Murong marveled at how powerful they both were. Xiaoyu was equally impressed that Tu Feng could go head-to-head with Wu Ling. During the struggle, the ball soared into the air, and Tu Feng was knocked back, letting out a cry. Lingyu rushed over anxiously, telling her captain not to push himself too hard, and suggesting they try to steal the ball instead. Tu Feng coughed, looking a bit worse for wear, but he used a levitation technique to leap back into the air after the ball. Lingyu watched in awe as he flew. Tu Feng gritted his teeth, determined not to let his master down. At that moment, the internal energy orb within him shattered completely. A purple aura began to envelop him, which Tianxing recognized with surprise as the aura of a heart demon. Duwang's expression shifted as the dark energy intensified. Tu Feng began to act like a ferocious beast, his eyes turning bloodshot. He muttered obsessively that he had to win. Lingyu turned pale and asked what was happening to him, but he just crouched low, preparing to charge while repeating that victory was mandatory. Smoke billowed up as Tu Feng suddenly appeared above Wu Ling, throwing a powerful punch downward. He snarled that anyone stopping him from winning would be finished. Tianji snapped out of his shock and yelled for Wu Ling to look out. The fist slammed down with a terrifying sound. Baidi watched in astonishment as a burst of white gold light exploded. She called out to Wu Ling in worry. Wu Ling lay on the ground, gritting his teeth while staring at the large shadow Tu Feng cast over him. Tu Feng, still clutching the ball, gloomily stated that no one would stop him before lunging forward again. Despite the pain, Wu Ling struggled to stand, telling himself he couldn't lose because he needed the cultivation resources. Suddenly, a dark shadow appeared in front of Tu Feng, taking him by surprise. Wu Ling shielded the area and told Tu Feng not to even think about getting the last point. Tu Feng's eyes glowed red like burning coals as he told Wu Ling he was looking for trouble. He charged forward with the ball, telling Wu Ling to get out of his way. A loud explosion followed. Tianji cried out for Wu Ling, and Baidi anxiously asked what had happened through the thick smoke. Inside the dust cloud, Wu Ling was using his own chest to block the ball. He told Tu Feng that if he couldn't stop him with his hands, he would use his body. Frustrated, Tu Feng pushed Wu Ling away with all his might and roared for the ball to go into the goal. Wu Ling coughed from the impact but refused to give up. Watching from the sidelines, Xiaoyu was furious, claiming that Tu Feng was clearly breaking the rules. Duanzhong trembled, worried that Wu Ling was in real danger. Other spectators began calling Tu Feng's actions shameful. Realizing Xiaoyu wanted to help, Wu Ling shouted for her to stay back. He smiled confidently, saying the match wasn't over yet. A bright light shone from him, and in a sudden move, he snatched the ball away. Tu Feng was stunned, wondering how Wu Ling could have more spiritual energy than him in that condition. Wu Ling jumped up and threw the ball with a beautiful straight shot. The ball hurtled toward the opponent's goal and hit with such force that it created a large crater, sending someone flying. The crowd was amazed, questioning how he could have so much power. Some wondered if he had thrown it with pure physical strength rather than spiritual energy. As the ball cracked the ground, the sand in the hourglass finally ran out. Yanli declared that Xuantian Academy had scored, winning the match. 11-10, Baidi ran over to check on Wu Ling, while Tianji cheered that his boss was the strongest. Tu Feng stood alone, clenching his fists in disbelief that he had lost and embarrassed his master. Baidi put her hand on a sweating Wu Ling's shoulder and asked if winning was really the most important thing right now. Nearby, Tianxing noted that Tu Feng had been consumed by his inner demons. Duwang remained silent and grim until he suddenly coughed up blood. Tianxing rushed to support him, asking if he was okay. Duwang blamed himself for being too strict during training, though Tianxing suggested that his strictness might have been the problem. Tu Feng, still lost in his dark thoughts, stared at his hand and refused to accept accept the outcome. A dark, ominous red aura radiated around him as he used his high-level cultivation to force a breakthrough. Tianxing was shocked that Tu Feng had reached the golden core stage while possessed by a demon, fearing he was beyond saving. Duong, still struggling, ordered Yanli to go and stop Tu Feng while he recovered. Yanli initially froze but then confidently stepped forward, stripping off his shirt to reveal a muscular build. He boasted about his powerful sand technique, but Tu Feng didn't care. Tu Feng punched Yanli directly in the face, sending him slamming into the ground. Tu Feng grabbed the ball and roared that the match wasn't over and they should keep playing. Baidi was worried that a demonic cultivator had been hidden in Duong Academy. Jiaxu wondered if he was going to force them to keep competing. Tianji urged everyone to leave before things got worse, but some felt they had to stay to protect Wu Ling. Xiaoyu braced herself, telling Baidi she could protect Wu Ling on her own. Others tried to help while arguing about names and nicknames, but they were interrupted by the realization that names didn't matter in a crisis. Tu Feng looked at the group blocking him and darkly threatened that anyone in his way would be finished. He used a powerful earth spell, sending chains and weapons forward that pinned everyone to the ground. With the others dealt with, Tu Feng grabbed Wu Ling by the shirt and laughed, telling him they had to keep competing until he won. Ling Yu grabbed his arm and begged him to stop, saying it was just one loss and he shouldn't be so hard on himself. Tu Feng's eyes darkened as he blamed his teammates for the loss, calling them worthless and tossing Ling Yu aside. Another student caught her and asked if she was okay before turning to challenge Tu Feng one-on-one now that the others were out of the way. Tu Feng held Wu Ling in the air, repeating his demand for a one-on-one match. Ling Yu continued to sob and plead for someone to help her brother regain his senses. Anyun tried to reason with him as well, but Tu Feng just told him to shut up. Tu Feng smirked and challenged Wu Ling to continue, but a furious voice boomed that he was going too far. Baidi added that he shouldn't think he could do whatever he wanted just because he defeated Yanli. Yanli also scolded him for stepping on people while he was angry. The team decided to move in and rescue Wu Ling. Tianji asked Xiaohuo why he wasn't helping his fellow countrymen, but Xiaohuo stayed hidden in a corner. He selfishly hoped that if Wu Ling was out of the picture, he would become the chosen one. Baidi bravely launched an attack with 3 sword auras, but this only made Tu Feng angrier, and he immediately retaliated against her. Tianji warned Baidi to be careful, as Tu Feng was using a diversionary tactic. Just as he spoke, sharp spikes erupted from the ground right where she was standing. Thanks to her agility, she narrowly escaped and retreated to a safe distance. She cursed her luck, wishing she still had her spirit sword. Yanli was nearby, struggling to get up, and a frustrated Baidi rushed over to demand he return her weapon. A flustered Yanli stammered that he didn't have it. Annoyed by the noise, Tu Feng unleashed a giant rock python that blasted both Baidi and Yanli away. Xiaoyu stepped in to protect Wu Ling, telling Tu Feng that he shouldn't act so boldly just because he was using dark energy. She began her clan's special technique, using a mesmerizing sound to trap him in a spell. She whispered in his ear, telling him he still had a chance to turn back and push away the darkness before it was too late. Tu Feng's resolve wavered as he admitted he didn't want to be controlled. Xiaoyu cleverly encouraged him to remember the important things in life and not to lose his way. However, these words caused Tu Feng to snap back into his obsession. He roared that winning was the most important thing to him. Xiaoyu was surprised by how deep his fixation went. Tu Feng chanted a powerful technique that caused a massive wall of rock to rise, separating him and Wu Ling from everyone else. Baidi tried to attack the wall, but even her sword spirit couldn't break through. Xiaoyu couldn't find a way over the towering barrier either. Tu Feng arrogantly claimed that all the troublemakers were gone and challenged Wu Ling to finish the match, stating they wouldn't stop until he won. Wu Ling tried to pick up the ball but collapsed in pain. Tu Feng scoffed, thinking he had overestimated his opponent, and reached for the ball to claim victory. However, Wu Ling suddenly became very serious, apologizing and stating that he absolutely had to win. This determination caught Tu Feng off guard, but he quickly used an imprisonment spell to lock Wu Ling in place. Tu Feng taunted him, saying he would have to watch him win. Wu Ling calmly asked if the official school matches were over. A bit confused, Tu Feng replied that while the main event was done, their personal match was what mattered most. Wu Ling noted that if the official event was finished, he could finally go all out. Wu Ling shattered the imprisonment spell with overwhelming strength, leaving Tu Feng stunned. Wu Ling launched a rapid-fire attack he called the Thousand Hand Strike. An explosion shook the arena, and Tu Feng initially mocked him, thinking the fight was over after one move. But Wu Ling's calm voice emerged from the dust, saying he didn't want to waste any more time. With cold eyes, he gathered his power and landed a full-strength punch squarely on Tu Feng's face, sending him flying. The force of the finish devastated the arena floor. Tu Feng lay motionless, wondering how this was possible before Wu Ling landed another hit. The spectators were buzzing with excitement, amazed by the newcomer's strength and the fact that they couldn't sense any typical spiritual energy from his moves. Zhang bragged that he wasn't surprised since they were classmates, though others told him to stop boasting. After using so much energy, Wu Ling began to stagger. Baidi rushed to support him, and he immediately complained about being very hungry. She teased him for losing his cool so quickly, but acknowledged his incredible talent. Murong quickly gave him a large chicken leg to eat. Looking at the defeated Tu Feng, Baidi sighed about the personal disciple of a headmaster being brought down by dark influences. Yanli finally approached, acting as if he had everything under control. He berated Tu Feng, calling him a coward for using a sneak attack and claiming his defenses were too strong for him. Tu Feng suddenly looked ill and accidentally made a mess all over Yanli. Enraged, he delivered a final blow to him. As he collapsed for good, a strange object was expelled from his mouth and tried to crawl away. Xiaoyu caught it and identified it as a dark sprout before burning it to ashes with her foxfire. Ling Yu rushed to Tu Feng's side. Han Yun tried to stop her, but Tu Feng finally woke up and weakly called her name. She sobbed with relief that he was himself again. When Duong appeared, Ling Yu frantically begged him to heal her brother. However, Duong just stared sternly at Tu Feng and asked why he had taken such a dark path. Tu Feng explained that he just didn't want to lose or disappoint his master. Duong's expression darkened as he asked if Tu Feng knew there was no turning back. Tu Feng admitted he knew, but didn't want his master to lose the bet. Duong sighed, noting that this mindset was why their academy was always behind Xuantian. He He ordered his other disciples to take Lingyu away. Despite her protests, they restrained her and let her off while she cried out, asking what would happen to her brother. Duong summoned a lava sword and told Tufang that their relationship was over. He demanded to know who had given him the dark pill, promising a swift end if he confessed. Tufang revealed a masked man had given it to him, promising instant strength. Tianxing guessed the culprit was likely Sima Yue. Duong blamed himself for his disciples' fall and prepared to end Tufang's life. Just as Duong brought the sword down, Wu Ling appeared and blocked the attack with his bare hands. Duong was astonished that a student could withstand his full power and asked what kind of person Xuantian Academy had trained. Wu Ling politely apologized for intervening so suddenly. Duong asked why he would protect someone who had tried to finish him. Wu Ling shared his perspective, noting that even when Tufang was under a dark influence, he only cared about the competition and his master, not hurting others. He added that he didn't think fighting just to win was the right way to live. Duong destroyed his lava sword and sighed, admitting that he had lost completely. He turned to Tianxing and conceded the bet, declaring that Duong Academy would now become a branch of Xuantian Academy. This announcement shocked the crowd, who were excited about their school's new status. As Duong walked away, he said he would leave the matter of the student to Xuantian. Lingyu cried out, asking if he really didn't care, but Hanyan explained that the master was actually protecting him by letting the other school handle it. Tears welled in Duong's eyes as he tried to act tough, saying he could always find another disciple. Tianxing told him to stop pretending and reminded him that since the academies had merged, Duong now had to follow his orders. A cautious Duong asked what he had in mind. Tianxing continued sternly, announcing that his first order was to move the entire Duong Academy to Xuantian Academy. This decision left the audience completely stunned. One morning at Xuantian Academy, the campus was bustling as students arrived with their belongings. Duong watched from above with his arms crossed, questioning why Tianxing was making their entire school move in. Behind him, a shadowy figure was fidgeting. Duong turned and yelled at the headmaster to stop fiddling with his hair while he was talking. Tianxing stammered that his hair was real as he stroked his beard. He explained that the reason he wanted everyone to move was to monitor anyone who might have been affected by dark influences. Duong noticed a bald spot through the headmaster's hair and muttered to himself that it was definitely a wig. Tianxing recalled past incidents of students being manipulated and gravely explained that if they didn't control the situation now, their righteous academy would be completely taken over by dark forces in the future. He looked at the rows of students below and noted that keeping them where they could be seen was the best plan. Duong sighed, admitting it seemed to be the only way. Wu Ling tried to stop Xiaoyu from barging in, but she angrily stomped up the stairs with her fist raised. She argued that there was nothing to fear since they were just claiming the reward they deserved. She kicked the door open and shouted for Old Man, demanding their prize for winning. Wu Ling stood behind her, looking terrified. Seeing only Duong there, Xiaoyu asked where the headmaster was. Duong pointed out that the headmaster was currently pinned under the door she had just kicked down. Wu Ling helped him up and asked if he was okay. Tianxing coughed and insisted that as a high-level cultivator, a door couldn't hurt him. Xiaoyu didn't care and told him to hand over the reward. Tianxing looked confused, so Xiaoyu reminded him that he had promised them the academy's gold medal if they won. His face went pale, but he claimed he hadn't forgotten. Wu Ling mentioned he had heard the medal could be traded for anything, and he hoped to get more cultivation resources. Tianxing worried that giving Wu Ling too many resources might cause his inner power to become unstable. He closed the door and explained that while he wanted to fulfill the request, the academy had just been attacked, and he couldn't give out any more spirit stones. Duong was suspicious, mentioning that he knew the academy had a hidden treasury. Tianxing used his magic to strike Duong in the face and laughed, wondering how an outsider would know such details. Xiaoyu was enraged, warning him not to try and silence them. Tianxing stroked his beard and mentioned that if they really wanted resources, a large spirit stone vein had recently been discovered. However, he showed them an image of a barren land and explained that the place was filled with dangerous beasts. He noted that the disciples who had gone there previously didn't survive. He suggested they give up and change their request. Instead of renegotiating, Wu Ling and Xiaoyu turned to leave, with Wu Ling determined to head to the mine. Tianxing called after them, grabbing Wu Ling's shoulder and warning him that the mine was full of creatures and that dark cultivators often use those beasts for their own ends. Baidi suddenly burst through the door, saying they didn't need to think about it. She argued that if they could lure the dark cultivators out, they could eliminate them. She spoke about how arrogant the dark forces had become and insisted they be pursued. Wu Ling and Xiaoyu agreed. Baidi then realized Tianxing wasn't answering her and found him pinned under the door again. Tianxing was furious that he had been stepped on for the second time that day. Wu Ling muttered that the headmaster was truly angry now. Baidi apologized, promising to compensate him once he calmed down. Xiaoyu accused the headmaster of being petty and not wanting Wu Ling to have resources. Duong woke up and whispered a plan to Tianxing, suggesting it was actually a good idea to let them go. He pointed out that since the dark cultivators were likely targeting Wu Ling and Baidi anyway, they could use the students as bait to lure out their leader, Sima Yue, and finish them all at once. Tianxing hesitated, feeling it was wrong to use children as bait, but Duong reminded him they had a new communication device that would allow them to send help instantly if there was danger. Xiaoyu yelled at them to stop whispering since they could hear everything. Tianxing gave in and handed over 3 communication devices, instructing the group to contact the school immediately if they ran into trouble. Wu Ling agreed, and an excited Baidi suggested they go hunting. Xiaoyu told Baidi to stay away from Wu Ling. As they left, Tianxing remained worried about sending only 3 young people, but Duong reassured him that he would be sending his own people to help as well. The scene shifted to a carriage heading toward the mountains. Inside, Tufang sat with his arms crossed next to Lingyu, while Baidi and Wu Ling sat opposite them. Xiaoyu complained about having to mine with the other team. Lingyu fired back, saying Tufang was strong and they should be glad for the help. Baidi was honest, admitting she didn't feel safe because working together made it easier for their enemies to control them. Xiaoyu sharply reminded her that she had been controlled before as well. Tufang told Lingyu to stop talking and bowed respectfully, explaining that he had been foolish before and blinded by a dark influence. He said his master wanted him to redeem himself on this mission. He then approached Wu Ling and offered a sincere apology for his past actions. his. Wu Ling stayed silent, which made Tu Fong sad, as he assumed he wouldn't be forgiven easily. Suddenly, Wu Ling covered his mouth and accidentally vomited on Tu Fong. Outside the carriage, Tu Fong shouted that even if Wu Ling didn't forgive him, he didn't have to throw up on him. Wu Ling weakly apologized, explaining that he suffers from motion sickness. He hurried out of the carriage to a nearby tree and continued to feel unwell. Xiao Yu stood by him, looking worried and asking if he was okay. Wu Ling wearily replied that he felt much better after getting it out of his system. When they returned to the group, Ling Yu watched them and asked how a cultivator could possibly get motion sickness. Wu Ling lowered his head awkwardly, saying he was a bit unique. He thought to himself that it wasn't exactly a side effect, but something that had happened since he arrived in this world. Baidi expressed concern and offered to ask her father to borrow an airship, but Wu Ling's face darkened as he admitted he would probably get sick on that, too. Xiao Yu pouted, muttering that he was just being picky and pretending. Ling Yu turned away in a huff, saying that if nothing worked, he just shouldn't go. Tu Fong tried to keep the peace by asking Ling Yu to be quiet. Wu Ling didn't argue because he knew she had a point, but Xiao Yu got defensive and asked what Ling Yu meant by that. To avoid further arguments, Wu Ling admitted it was his problem and suggested he could just run behind the carriage. Baidi worried that it wouldn't be right for them to be inside while he was running on the ground. A moment later, the carriage started moving. Wu Ling reassured them that he might actually be more comfortable following on foot. Inside, Ling Yu began mocking the people from Xuantian Academy, asking if they were embarrassed. Baidi remained unfazed, but Ling Yu continued to sneer, noting that the carriage was being pulled at a full gallop by a spirit horse. She looked at Baidi and mocked Wu Ling's spiritual roots, calling him a waste and suggesting he was just bragging about being able to keep up. Ling Yu looked out the window expecting to see Wu Ling struggling or left far behind. However, her expression changed to shock when she saw him running at an incredible speed right behind them. She blurted out that it was impossible for him to be that fast. Xiao Yu smiled smugly, telling her that she couldn't even imagine what Wu Ling's physique was capable of. Tu Fong watched with admiration, noting that Wu Ling was truly worthy of having defeated him fairly. Baidi was also surprised, wondering if Wu Ling's strength came from training like this all the time. Determined to improve, Baidi jumped out of the carriage to run alongside Wu Ling. Xiao Yu was startled, and Wu Ling was surprised to see her. She told him she wanted to use his method to cultivate. She believed that if she trained like him, she would eventually gain terrifying strength. However, it was harder than it looked, and a moment later she was gasping for breath. Wu Ling advised her to go back to the carriage, but she stubbornly refused, insisting she could keep going. From inside, Ling Yu noted that at their current pace, they wouldn't reach the mine for a month. Baidi was frustrated with herself, wondering why a genius like her couldn't keep up. Seeing her struggle, Wu Ling offered a new idea. He decided to lift the entire carriage so they could slow down slightly without losing time, allowing her to follow along without getting as tired. Ling Yu, however, wasn't happy about the carriage being hoisted into the air. Baidi was touched by Wu Ling's thoughtfulness, realizing he had come up with this just for her. He urged her to keep moving, and she realized the speed hadn't actually slowed down at all. She pushed herself to go faster, determined to become stronger. Wu Ling smiled and encouraged her, saying she had a real talent for physical training. By the time they reached Lushui town, it was dark. A desperate voice from inside called for them to stop. Stopped and apologized to Baidi, worried that his sudden speed had been too much. Baidi, looking exhausted, insisted she was fine. However, Ling Yu angrily pointed out that they had all been sick from the bumpy ride. Inside, everyone was lying in a mess, and even the horse looked unwell. Fong bowed and apologized repeatedly for his rough movements. He suggested they find an inn to rest for the night. Ling Yu admired Tu Fong's good nature, noting that his temperament was excellent. As they reached a bridge, Tu Fong guessed there was a town nearby. Ling Yu checked the map and agreed that they should be in Fuyun City, but she was startled to see they were actually in Lushui town. She asked if they had gone the wrong way, realized they must have taken a wrong turn at the last fork. Ling Yu was furious, but Tu Fong suggested they still find a place to rest. Her anger subsided slightly, and she decided to let it go for his sake. They entered an inn, and the innkeeper greeted them, asking if they were staying the night. Tu Fong requested 2 rooms. Wu Ling pointed to a room and said they would see each other tomorrow. However, the innkeeper stopped Tu Fong, confused as to why the men and women weren't staying separately. Calmly explained that the 3 of them always stayed together. This shocked both the innkeeper and Ling Yu. While they wondered about the nature of their relationship, Wu Ling pulled out some chicken legs in the room. He offered some to the girls, saying it was food prepared by a senior sister. Xiao Yu enjoyed hers, but Baidi declined. Wu Ling took a large bite and said he would continue training while they rested. Xiao Yu praised how handsome he looked while working out. Baidi watched him for a while before seriously asking if that kind of training was the only way to get stronger. Baidi looked earnestly at Wu Ling and admitted that she had tried his cultivation method, but it hadn't worked at all. At that moment, Wu Ling was lifting weights while eating. He suspected her lack of progress was due to her unique physique. She bowed her head respectfully and pleaded with him, stating that she would never give up an opportunity to get stronger and asking him to teach her. Feeling a bit embarrassed by her formal plea, Wu Ling told her not to worry and agreed to help. While he continued his meal, he began to teach her what were actually very simple exercises. He explained that while the movements weren't difficult to learn, the real challenge was staying consistent. She nodded with determination. He handed her a weight to start with, and she took it happily, but as soon as he let go, her expression shifted. The sheer weight pulled her toward the floor, and she asked in a panic if he always trained with such heavy equipment. Wu Ling laughed and scratched his head, saying that wasn't the case. Baidi felt a momentary sense of relief, thinking that if he actually trained with something that heavy, she would never be able to catch up. However, Wu Ling then smiled and easily lifted a different weight, mentioning that the ones he used were actually much heavier. Baidi was completely shocked. Seeing her reaction, Wu Ling grew concerned and suggested that if it was too much, she should probably forget about it, as she might not be able to train his way. Trembling but determined, she argued that she wouldn't know for sure unless she tried. She gripped the weight and lifted it to prove she wouldn't be left behind again. Though her body shook uncontrollably, she insisted there was nothing a genius like her couldn't learn. Both Wu Ling and Xiao Yu enthusiastically cheered her on. Wu Ling then reminded her that a full set consisted of 20 repetitions, and she still had 19 to go. Upon hearing this, she froze and and coughed up a bit of blood before collapsing from the shock. She wondered if she really couldn't get stronger any faster. Wu Ling placed a hand on her shoulder and asked why she was so insistent on gaining more power. After a moment of silence, her eyes filled with intensity as she revealed that her mother had been killed by a demonic cultivator, the same one who had appeared on the stage recently. Wu Ling was surprised by her history. He turned to Xiao Yu and whispered that he remembered the figure in the arena being Baidi's inner demon, rather than a real demonic cultivator. Xiao Yu agreed. Wu Ling then realized that just because the figure on stage was a manifestation, it didn't mean a real demonic cultivator hadn't killed her mother. He apologized for bringing up such a painful memory, but she brushed it off, saying it happened a long time ago. With fresh determination, she swore to use her sword to eliminate all demonic cultivators. She unsheathed her weapon, which crackled with energy, and explained that she once thought her talent was enough until his appearance proved there was always someone better. Wu Ling was surprised she was comparing herself to him. She explained that if she couldn't even surpass someone her own age, she stood no chance against the world's villains. Wu Ling modestly told her there was no need to compare him to those people. Gritting her teeth, she mentioned she had a feeling that a specific threat would return. Wu Ling watched her silently before heading off to sleep with Xiao Yu. Before leaving, he encouraged her to keep practicing and told her they were going to rest. Xiao Yu couldn't help but yawn, while Baidi vowed to finish her 19 repetitions that night. As she struggled to lift the weight, Xiao Yu whispered to Wu Ling that she thought Baidi was seeking revenge against the wrong person, as it was likely her own inner demons that caused her mother's death. Wu Ling whispered back, urging her to keep her voice down so Baidi wouldn't hear. He feared she would be devastated if she knew she was responsible. Baidi noticed them whispering and asked what they were talking about. Startled, Wu Ling avoided eye contact and claimed they were just discussing what to eat for breakfast. Xiao Yu quickly agreed. Suspecting something was up, Baidi looked at them doubtfully. Xiao Yu then asked why she had stopped and reminded her she had more training to do. Blushing with embarrassment, Baidi avoided their gaze and asked if there was anything lighter, admitting the weight was too much. Understanding the situation, Wu Ling smiled and offered to help. He took out another weight and used his power to make it glow before handing it back. She was amazed that he could modify it like that. He told her to continue her exercise so she could get up early the next morning. She took the weight and agreed, but it immediately pulled her to the floor again. She panicked, realizing it wasn't any lighter at all. Later that night, while the others slept, Baidi continued to train with everything she had. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared behind her. Wu Ling was fast asleep and snoring until a flicker of light woke Xiao Yu. She sat up abruptly and yelled for Wu Ling to wake up, warning him that a demonic presence was there. Drowsy and confused, he asked what was wrong before seeing the figure himself. He wondered if Sima Yue had arrived, but Xiao Yu guessed it was actually just Baidi's overwhelming obsession with power manifesting again. Xiao Yu wanted to jump out of bed and tell her the truth to free her from the obsession, but Wu Ling pulled her back. He asked if telling her the truth might be too cruel and decided to handle the situation himself. Xiao Yu watched him, noting that he still liked playing the bad guy role. The dark figure attacked as Wu Ling approached, but he nimbly dodged and leaped into the air. He used a powerful kick, driving the figure through the floor and creating a massive hole. Looking at the destruction, Wu Ling worried that he had used too much force and would have to pay for the repairs. Xiao Yu was more concerned about Baidi, who had been kicked through the floor as well. Wu Ling looked down and was surprised to see someone climbing back up. As the dust cleared, a pained Tu Feng appeared, holding Ling Yu and angrily demanding an explanation for what was happening. Meanwhile, downstairs, the innkeeper was trying to enjoy a cup of tea when the ceiling suddenly collapsed, destroying his inn. He wailed in despair as his last remaining table was smashed to pieces, crying out that everything was gone. Wu Ling quickly helped the man up, warning him that it was too dangerous to stay and that he needed to run immediately. The innkeeper stood up slowly but began to cry, lamenting that even his chair was now destroyed. Wu Ling was taken aback, wondering how he could worry about furniture at a time like this. While they were distracted, the figure attacked again, causing Xiao Yu to scream in fear and tell Wu Ling to be careful. Wu Ling was still a bit dazed when Tu Feng stepped in, casting a protective earth and wood spell. A massive wall rose from the ground, blocking the strike. Tu Feng told Wu Ling to consider himself lucky this time. Wu Ling thanked him, but Tu Feng remained puzzled, asking why a demonic entity was there in the first place. In the distance, Baidi was rushing toward them, completely out of control. Wu Ling looked at her, struggling to find the words to explain the complicated situation. The entity let out a roar and launched a barrage of flying swords. Tu Feng noted that it was getting to be a bit much and raised slabs of earth to block the weapons. Wu Ling dodged the debris and urged Tu Feng to use his strongest magic to protect everyone. Tu Feng agreed and clasped his hand, creating a giant golden pyramid seal that trapped both Wu Ling and the demonic figure inside. Tu Feng proudly claimed that even a high-level cultivator would have trouble breaking through his strongest seal. Ling Yu looked at him with admiration, but inside the pyramid, Wu Ling was less than thrilled. He realized Tu Feng was doing a good job of protecting the outside world, but he was annoyed that he had been locked in with the monster. The inner demon seemed to agree. Outside, Tu Feng realized he might have taken the instruction to protect everyone a bit too literally. Xiao Yu was furious. She lunged forward and punched Tu Feng, asking if he thought Wu Ling didn't need protection. A pained Tu Feng quickly apologized. Xiao Yu climbed the pyramid and shouted for Wu Ling to use his power to break the seal and come out. However, Wu Ling refused, explaining that if he broke the seal, the inner demon would have a chance to hurt more people. The entity then lunged at him with dark, gaseous tendrils. Wu Ling defended himself with his celestial techniques, grabbing the tendrils and using them to jump rope at high speed. He asked the demon if it still wanted to exercise with him. Ignoring its shrieks, he tied the entity up and lifted it, though it eventually broke free in counterattack. Wu Ling nimbly dodged, sighing in relief that he hadn't been hit. Suddenly, a large hole appeared in the pyramid. Wu Ling was horrified, questioning Tu Feng's claim that the seal was difficult to break. A sweating Tu Feng realized the entity's power was far beyond what he had expected. He told them not to worry, claiming that as his master's successor, he could fix it. He slammed his hand on the ground to replenish the seal, but in the process, he accidentally threw dirt in Wu Ling's face. Wu Ling was furious, telling him there was no need for that. The inner demon charged again, and Wu Ling managed to catch its strike with his bare hands before flinging it away. The entity began attacking the pyramid walls again. Wu Ling teased Tu Fong about how fragile the seal seemed, but Tu Fong snapped back, telling him to stop talking while he was exhausted from the effort. Tu Fong eventually collapsed, explaining to a worried Ling Yu that he had used up all his spiritual energy. Ling Yu screamed at Wu Ling to stop the monster from breaking out, but Tu Fong told her to stay quiet, insisting he could still hold on. Wu Ling knew he couldn't let the seal break, as the demon would harm innocents, but he was also worried about how this was affecting Baidi. Xiao Yu cheered from the outside, telling Wu Ling that since it was an inner demon, he would have a way to deal with it. She told him not to forget who he was. Wu Ling was confused at first, wondering if being a student of the academy was supposed to be a threat. Xiao Yu clarified, whispering that he was the young master of the demonic sect, and that he should use his bloodline to suppress the darkness. Wu Ling was worried since he had never practiced those arts, but Xiao Yu told him to trust his heritage. As the entity roared and attacked again, Wu Ling decided he had only one desperate option left. He unleashed his energy and charged forward, calling out a technique to slow down time. Outside, the pyramid cracked again, and Tu Fong coughed up blood as a large hole formed at the top. He collapsed, feeling helpless as his seal failed once more. Suddenly, Xiao Yu transformed into a fox and slipped inside. Once she returned to human form, she told Wu Ling she was there to help seal the monster. At that moment, the demon slammed into Wu Ling, sending him flying. Xiao Yu rushed to catch him, asking how he could let himself get hurt. Wu Ling laughed weakly, explaining that if he used his full power, he would end up hurting Baidi. Xiao Yu decided they should divide and conquer. She used her fox illusions to strike the demon, but it remained unharmed. She told Wu Ling to handle the demon's shield while she used her magic to bind Baidi. Wu Ling dashed forward confidently, using a powerful palm strike to create an opening. Xiao Yu signaled that it was time to work together. Wu Ling smiled and agreed, even as the demon's struggle caused him intense pain. While Xiao Yu worked to pull Baidi to safety, Wu Ling told her to protect the girl while he finished the fight. Now that he didn't have to worry about hurting Baidi, he unleashed his true power. He lifted the inner demon into the air, used his high-speed technique, and hurled it into the sky. Outside, Tu Fong finally finished reinforcing the pyramid. He noted that he hadn't used that much spiritual energy in a long time. Ling Yu, worried about his health, urged him to rest for a bit. However, they both froze as the pyramid began to crack once more. Wu Ling emerged from within, looking imposing. He realized that without Baidi as a shield, he could finally test his full strength against the dark presence. Xiao Yu cheered him on, giving him a surge of energy. Wu Ling prepared his celestial techniques and leaped into the air. The demonic entity roared and attacked, but he charged forward with a rising sword strike. Below, Xiao Yu warned him to be careful, explaining that he had to get close to seal the creature away. The noise finally woke Baidi. Wu Ling channeled all his power into his arm and struck with a massive force that shattered the pyramid. Tu Fong collapsed in shock, worried that he wouldn't be able to cultivate anymore, while a frightened Ling Yu tried to comfort him. As dawn approached, the pyramid lay in ruins. Xiao Yu reminded Wu Ling to seal the entity immediately. He followed her instructions, using a gathering technique to draw the dark energy into his hand before swallowing it. He noted that while the seal felt secure, it had a very strange taste. Suddenly, a sword was pressed against his throat. He turned to find Baidi looking at him with murderous intent. Xiao Yu was confused about how she had gotten there so fast. Baidi seriously accused Wu Ling of being a demonic cultivator. Wu Ling tried to play it off, sweating nervously and claiming he was just a student without a spirit root. He insisted he had nothing to do with dark magic. Baidi didn't believe him and told him not to lie. He panicked, telling her to stay calm, but she revealed that she had been conscious even while controlled. She explained that she had overheard his conversation and knew he was actually the young master of the demonic sect. He tried to claim she had misheard, but she asked if he really thought she was an idiot. Xiao Yu stood back silently, as Baidi realized the reason she couldn't match his cultivation was because of his hidden nature. Wu Ling nervously argued that everyone's physique is just different, but she sneered at him, asking if he was still trying to trick her. She held her sword to his chin, expressing her hatred for his kind, and asking if he found it amusing to play with her feelings. Wu Ling finally felt true fear and apologized, saying he didn't mean any harm. She mocked him, saying all demonic cultivators were the same, monsters who made others suffer. She declared that his life was hers and slashed at him. Wu Ling dodged and begged her to calm down and listen, but she refused to believe anything he said. She unleashed a powerful sword decree and attacked again. Panicking, Wu Ling looked for an escape route, but the space was too small. He tried to use a spinning arm technique to fly out through a broken section of the pyramid. However, the oblivious Tu Fong chose that exact moment to patch the hole with earth, causing Wu Ling to fall back down and hit the ground hard. Outside, Tu Fong felt proud of his handiwork, while Ling Yu praised his skill. Wu Ling fumed, wondering why Tu Fong was being so diligent. At the worst possible time, he dodged another attack and decided he had to take a risk since he couldn't explain himself. He caught her blade with his bare hands, but noticed his skin turning black. Baidi explained that her sword was formed from her inner despair, which transferred to anything it touched. Wu Ling was stunned, jokingly asking if she was a warrior who had also learned magic. His hands began to fail, so he used his strength to throw her upward, sending her crashing through the pyramid wall. Tu Fong was surprised to see her fly out. Inside, Wu Ling writhed in pain from the sword's effect. Suddenly, Baidi returned and plunged her sword into him, pinning him to the ground. He coughed up blood and lay still. Baidi looked at him coldly. Despite his past kindness, she felt she had to end him. Tears streamed down her face as she prepared a final strike, stating that all demonic cultivators had to die. Wu Ling watched the sword descend, feeling regret that he could no longer help his father. Suddenly, Xiao Yu intervened, using her magic to stop the blow. Baidi turned on her, calling her a fox demon for siding with a villain. Xiao Yu stepped forward and slapped Baidi, catching her off guard. She then wrapped her tail around Baidi's neck and angrily questioned her. She asked on what basis Baidi dared to harm him after he had spent so much time helping others. Baidi simply scoffed, finding the idea of a kind demonic cultivator to be preposterous. Baidi broke free from Xiao Yu's influence, shouting that if demonic cultivators were truly kind, her mother wouldn't have died. Xiao Yu was pushed back, and Baidi looked at Wu Ling with a cold, suspicious smile. She claimed she should have realized sooner that since his arrival, the demonic presence from her past had returned. She lunged forward, thrusting her sword at him and accusing him of being connected to her mother's loss. Wu Ling Ling stammered in confusion, but Xiao Yu couldn't stay silent any longer. She yelled for Baidi to stop, declaring that the truth was that Baidi had actually caused her mother's death herself. Baidi froze in shock and turned to Xiao Yu, demanding an explanation. Wu Ling grew worried and tried to stop Xiao Yu from revealing such a painful secret, but Xiao Yu continued. She coldly explained that it was an inner demon born during one of Baidi's breakthroughs that had caused the tragedy. Baidi refused to believe it, saying she had seen a demonic cultivator with her own eyes, and accused Xiao Yu of lying. Xiao Yu grew angry, insisting she was telling the truth. She explained that when talented cultivators push themselves too hard to break through realms, there is a high chance of creating an inner demon. She suggested that Baidi's childhood obsession with power had led to the appearance of the creature that hurt her mother. Baidi struggled with the memory, begging Xiao Yu to stop talking. Xiao Yu analyzed the situation further, explaining that the conflict between good and evil was really just about how one handles their inner demons. Demonic cultivators try to control them, while righteous ones try to destroy them. She noted that while the path of cultivation wasn't wrong, Baidi's personal journey had taken a dark turn. Wu Ling watched as Baidi went blank, worried about her state of mind. She burst into tears, clutching her head and admitting she didn't know who to believe. Feeling hopeless, she held her sword to her own throat, deciding she would rather end things herself than be defeated by a demonic cultivator. Xiao Yu rushed to stop her, but Baidi closed her eyes, apologizing to her mother for failing to get revenge. Suddenly, blood splattered. Baidi felt the wetness but no pain. She opened her eyes to see Wu Ling gripping the blade with his bare hand, his own blood dripping from the edge. She asked if he was going to toy with her even now, but he looked at her angrily and told her he was doing no such thing. He snapped the sword in two and reminded her that regardless of which path she followed, she only had one life. He told her that even when life isn't perfect, the meaning of existence is to keep striving to make it better. Xiao Yu added her own perspective, pointing out that Baidi had only lost control of her inner demon after Sima Yue appeared. She told Baidi to stop wallowing in self-blame and misery. Instead, she should focus on finding the person truly responsible for causing all this chaos and make them pay the price. Baidi lowered her head, gritting her teeth and asking how she could trust the words of demonic cultivators. Xiao Yu gestured toward Wu Ling as proof of their sincerity, asking if he looked like a scheming person. Baidi appraised him and admitted that he seemed rather foolish and unusual, noting that his plans often seemed to backfire. This comment annoyed Wu Ling, who asked if that was really how they saw him. Baidi thanked him, suggesting that perhaps his simple nature was the reason she couldn't bring herself to fully blame him. Wu Ling felt relieved that she had calmed down, but Baidi quickly accused him of being a bad person for locking her up in the first place. She then pointed to the sword he had snapped, complaining that it was an expensive gift from her father that he had ruined. A nervous Wu Ling apologized and immediately straightened the metal, handing the pristine sword back to her. She was astonished that he could fix such a weapon with his bare hands. She sheathed it, deciding to let it go so as not to ruin her father's gift, but then she realized the sword had actually become longer because he used too much force. Baidi sighed and asked Wu Ling if he wasn't afraid of being discovered, and finished off at the Xuan Tian Academy. Wu Ling admitted he was terrified, but explained that his family was sealed away, and he had to reach a very high level of cultivation to save them. Baidi's response was like a dagger to his heart. She reminded him that he lacked a spirit root, making it fundamentally impossible for him to reach that level, regardless of how many resources he gathered. Wu Ling looked deeply hurt as she explained that no one could reach that stage of power without a spirit root. Xiao Yu asked her to stop being so blunt, but Baidi insisted she was just stating the facts of birth and talent. Wu Ling hung his head, losing hope of saving his father. Seeing their disappointment, Xiao Yu came up with a solution. She suggested that since Wu Ling needed the power of a high-level cultivator and Baidi wanted to get stronger for revenge, they should work together. She proposed that Wu Ling provide the resources to help Baidi cultivate quickly, and once she reached the necessary power level, she could help him break his family's seal. Wu Ling looked at Xiao Yu with sparkling eyes, amazed by her idea, and asked if she was a genius. She laughed and told him there was no need for such high praise. Baidi watched the two of them talk in silence. Wu Ling eventually turned around, scratching his back in embarrassment, and asked what she thought of the idea. She shyly touched her chin and said that for this one time she would reluctantly trust him. Wu Ling laughed with excitement, but their celebration was cut short when they noticed the pyramid above them starting to collapse. Tu Feng approached the group, looking frightened and exhausted. He explained that he had used up too much of his spiritual power, and the seal could no longer hold together. Baidi was furious, asking why he couldn't have waited until they were actually out before letting it fall apart. Meanwhile, at the Xuantian library, Tianxing was calmly combing his hair while looking in a mirror. Yanli suddenly burst into the room in a total panic, shouting that something terrible had happened. When asked what the emergency was, Yanli explained that the spirit mineral vein had been compromised. Tianxing stayed calm at first, figuring that since Baidi and Wu Ling were there, it might be a good chance for them to burn off some energy. However, Yanli's fear was palpable as he revealed that demonic cultivators, led by Sima Yue, had occupied the mine. They had taken advantage of the library's lack of manpower to attack, and the disciples guarding the area had been eliminated. Hearing this, Tianxing panicked so hard his wig fell off. He scrambled to put it back on, worried that if anything happened to the daughter of the mad swordsman, that legendary fighter would definitely come looking for trouble. He stood up immediately, still having a comb stuck in his hair, and declared that they had to launch a counterattack. He summoned several elders through a magic circle. The other leaders were curious why he was contacting them. Tianxing told them he needed to use the large-scale teleportation formation. Some of the men protested, arguing that the technique was too expensive and still too new to safely transport high-level cultivators quickly. Tianxing stood his ground, warning that Sima Yu was already seizing assets and that if they hesitated, things would escalate into a disaster like the one 10,000 years ago. One of the elder members noted that Tianxing usually had a plan. Tianxing confirmed he did, proposing that they reduce their current resources for a while to send elite nascent soul disciples to stabilize the situation. He argued that even a few younger students could hold the line at the mine. When some questioned if a single mine was worth the risk, Tianxing mentioned that the mad swordsman's daughter was there. The protesters immediately changed their tune, shouting that they needed to send reinforcements right away to stop the world from being disrupted. Tianxing Xing then suggested that to show the library's commitment to fighting evil, he would send his own grandson, Wu Jiaxu, through the portal. Jiaxu, who was standing nearby, didn't seem impressed. He reached into his pocket and asked his grandfather what he wanted. Tianxing was offended by his casual attitude, but Jiaxu ignored the lecture, sat down, and put his feet up. He told his grandfather that since he was called there for something unpleasant, his attitude didn't really matter. Tianxing threatened to cut off his allowance, but Jiaxu wasn't scared, noting he could use his tokens for resources and that he didn't mind skipping training. Seeing that threats weren't working, Tianxing's mood shifted. He grabbed his grandson's hand with tears in his eyes and begged him to help, saying the future of the world was in his hands. Jiaxu pulled his hand away, asking if his grandfather really thought he was still a child who could be fooled by stories. He recalled how, as a young boy, he used to admire his grandfather's tales about maintaining peace and fighting demons. He remembered how hard he had trained as a child, hoping to help protect the world, but he also remembered that the price of that peace was his father's death. He recalled looking at his father's body while his grandfather tried to comfort him by saying his father died as a protector. At the time, a crying Jiaxu had asked why his father had to die if the world was supposedly peaceful. His grandfather had explained that peace isn't natural and requires the sacrifice of those in the righteous alliance. He told the boy that since their family enjoyed the alliance's benefits, they had to fulfill their duties. Back in the present, Jiaxu's face remained cold. He declared that he didn't want the benefits if it meant losing his father, and he had no interest in sacrificing himself for the world. Tianxing roared for him to stop as the room filled with blue sparks. He told his grandson that as long as he carried their family's blood, he had to accept the responsibility. In another part of the building, Xiao Huo was fuming about Wu Ling. He clutched a token, angry that Wu Ling was spending time with Beatty. In his head, he imagined himself as the hero with Beatty, while Wu Ling was left behind. He viewed her as the main lead in his own story, and wanted to use his rewards to ensure they ended up together. Suddenly, he saw Yanli peeking into the dean's office and asked what was going on. Yanli tried to stop him from entering, but Xiao Huo walked in and was stunned to see the room glowing with intense blue light. Tianxing performed a spell to teleport the stubborn Jiaxu, apologizing and stating that their family had to set an example for the righteous path. Xiao Huo watched the old man with suspicion. Tianxing ignored his grandson's objections and continued the chant, telling Jiaxu that he had to complete the mission and defeat the demonic cultivators to ensure Baidi's safety. The vortex from the spell accidentally pulled in Xiao Huo, who had just arrived and had no idea what was happening. Both of them were gradually transported away. Xiao Huo felt a sensation like an electric shock and cried out in surprise. Jiaxu felt the same way. As they vanished, Tianxing offered a heartfelt farewell, saying he hoped more than anyone that his grandson would return safely. Xiao Huo was bewildered to find himself being moved to an unknown location, wondering why he was being dragged along. They were both dropped at the Spirit Stone mine, where many demonic cultivators were already waiting. The two were thrown from the sky, and Xiao Huo complained loudly about the rough landing. Jiaxu remained calm and used his earth magic to create a platform for himself. While Jiaxu landed gracefully, Xiao Huo crashed headfirst into the ground. He emerged angrily, calling Jiaxu a name and asking why he hadn't helped him land safely. Jiaxu ignored the outburst and told him to prepare for a fight. Xiao Huo noticed the crowd of enemies and panicked, initially trying to sneak away by telling the demonic cultivators it was all a misunderstanding and that Jiaxu was the only one who wanted to fight. Jiaxu reminded him to stay and help, mentioning that Baidi was currently in the mine and might be in danger. Hearing her name, Xiao Huo's fighting spirit returned instantly. He decided he had to stay and be the hero who saved her, imagining that she would fall for him and join his harem. He launched a Heart Lotus flame attack that sent the enemies flying, shouting for Baidi to wait for her Prince Charming. At that moment, Baidi sneezed. Wu Ling, who was straining to hold up a massive boulder, asked if she was okay. She shyly replied that it was just a sneeze, while secretly wondering if Wu Ling's constant help meant he had feelings for her. Wu Ling, getting annoyed as he held the heavy rock, told her to hurry up and get out. They both made it outside, and he dropped the boulder with a loud thud, relieved to be safe. Baidi grumbled at his blunt attitude, calling him a clueless idiot in her head. As the sun rose after an exhausting night, Xiaoyu suggested they get moving. Tufeng wondered how the demonic presence had managed to infiltrate their group, complaining that they never let anyone rest. Ling Yu agreed, frustrated that the chaos was ruining her time with Tufeng. Baidi started to apologize, feeling responsible, but Wu Ling quickly covered her mouth to stop her from revealing the truth. He blamed everything on a masked demonic cultivator instead. Tufeng didn't question the story and praised Wu Ling's insight. Wu Ling whispered to Baidi that her inner demon was gone and that she should never mention it again. Baidi looked at him with a smile, thinking he was better than she had initially realized. Wu Ling suggested everyone rest in the carriage while they traveled, feeling hopeful that gathering resources for Baidi would help him save his family faster. However, the innkeeper stopped them, angrily demanding compensation for his destroyed building. Wu Ling realized his mistake. Later, under a clear blue sky, Wu Ling tried to fix the inn himself. He slung a hammer over his shoulder and claimed he was finished, but the innkeeper kicked him in the face, pointing out that the building was swaying dangerously. As they watched, the entire structure collapsed again. The innkeeper yelled at Wu Ling, asking what he had been fixing if it fell down so easily. Wu Ling bowed and apologized, admitting he didn't actually know how to build houses. Worried that the delay would keep him from his mission, Wu Ling asked Baidi and Xiaoyu for help. Baidi refused, saying she only knew how to cultivate, and Xiaoyu admitted she had never even lived in a house before. Tufeng stepped forward, coughing to get their attention, and confidently claimed he was the one for the job. After resting, he felt ready to handle it. Ling Yu cheered him on as he used his rabbit wood magic. Yellow lightning struck the rubble, and the wood began to rise. He used a special earth technique to transform the debris into a beautiful, magnificent building, even restoring the furniture with clay. The innkeeper was thrilled with the result. Tufeng asked if they could finally leave now that the house was better than before, and the innkeeper waved them off, inviting them to come back again soon. Wu Ling shyly thanked Tufeng, noting that they wouldn't have been able to leave without his help. Ling Yu added that her senior brother's power was beyond anyone's imagination. Tufeng urged everyone to stop talking and hurry up. As they departed, dark clouds gathered and a swirling wind signaled a coming downpour. Wu Ling shielded his eyes from the the rain and noted that something felt wrong about the weather, as if the rain itself carried a dark, wicked energy. Tu Fong told him not to just stand there and shouted for the horses to move faster. The carriage sped off through the blinding storm. Suddenly, the innkeeper and his men chased after them on horseback, yelling for them to stop. Wu Ling, confused, told them from inside the carriage that they didn't need to see the group off in such heavy rain. In response, the innkeeper threw his sword at Wu Ling, declaring he would send them to the afterlife. A barrage of swords followed, hitting the carriage. Fong looked out in alarm, asking why they were being attacked after he had built a better inn. The innkeeper furiously replied that the new inn had melted in the rain and almost crushed his next guests. Wu Ling remarked to Tu Fong that his workmanship was surprisingly poor, but Tu Fong just told him that was why they needed to hurry. He shouted back to the innkeeper that they were sorry and would compensate him once they had spirit stones, but the innkeeper refused to let them go. The innkeeper raged that they couldn't escape, boasting that he had bought a muscular two-legged horse that could run incredible distances. Wu Ling was shocked by the creature, noting how extraordinary the beings in the cultivation world were. Tu Fong was equally stunned, realizing their horses couldn't outrun such a muscular creature. Baidi's face darkened as she noted she had never been called lazy and suggested they might have to finish off everyone who knew about this. Xiao Yu was also angry, feeling like she was becoming more like a demonic cultivator herself. Wu Ling told them not to panic because he had a plan. He stepped onto the edge of the carriage and, calling it an immortal technique, lifted the entire vehicle and began to run. He shouted back to the stunned innkeeper that he was in overload mode and would return their horses later. The innkeeper and his men were left speechless, staring in silence. One of them wondered if those muscles belonged to a human or a monster in disguise. The scene shifted to the spirit stone mine where Xiao Huo and Jiaxu were exhausted from fighting countless demonic cultivators. Xiao Huo asked how many they had finished off, and Jiaxu replied that he had lost count. A demonic cultivator attacked, but Xiao Huo countered it with a slash, wondering if the battle would help his mentor Dan Lao wake up. A voice that sounded like Wu Ling's told him that Dan Lao was recovering and shouldn't be disturbed. Xiao Huo cried out that if he didn't rest soon, he would be the one who was finished. When another enemy charged, Xiao Huo reacted quickly. He then called out to Jiaxue, calling him a kid and asking why the headmaster's grandson hadn't requested reinforcements yet. Jiaxue calmly replied that his grandfather wouldn't care about him, just like what happened with his father. Xiao Huo felt frustrated, but declared that as a child of destiny, he couldn't die there. He charged forward to handle the smaller enemies, but Jiaxu watched in surprise as Xiao Huo raised his sword and promised to make sure Jiaxu was honored after he ascended. Jiaxu shouted in alarm that Xiao Huo was going the wrong way and heading deeper into the mine. As demonic cultivators surrounded Jiaxu, he felt fearful but remained calm. He realized his earth magic wasn't great for direct damage and wondered if he had to use an unpleasant method to save himself. Just then, golden lightning struck the sky as Jiaxu unleashed a massive thunder technique that shook the entire area. Ming Ling and Chong Chong appeared in the sky. Jiaxu asked who they were, and Ming Ling introduced himself as the successor of the Heavenly Talisman sect, alongside the ingenious Chong Chong. He noted that if they didn't act, Jiaxu would be finished. Jiaxu admitted he had never heard of them, which made Ming Ling angry. He descended to the ground, saying he would make him remember his name. Chong Chong teased him, saying it was rare for him to act without showing off. Ming Ling smiled confidently and launched a burning talisman into the sky. As the enemies watched, the talisman exploded like fireworks, activating a special dance technique. Ming Ling looked smug and radiant as he maintained the spell. He declared that this was the power he needed. Amidst the screams of the enemies, the landscape erupted with flying debris. Jiaxu was thoughtful, amazed that he could defeat so many demonic cultivators so quickly. Ming Ling smirked and asked if he had memorized his name yet. Jiaxu responded vaguely, struggling to recall it, which annoyed him. Chong Chong reminded Ming Ling not to forget their mission. Ming Ling regained his focus and explained they were there on orders from the Righteous Alliance because demonic cultivators were causing trouble and had kidnapped the swordsman's daughter. Jiaxu confirmed this and pointed toward a tunnel, telling them his companion had already gone inside and they could follow him if they wanted to help. Ming Ling frowned, realizing he had no intention of helping. He noted that it seemed he didn't want to participate in the mission at all. Jiaxu feigned a sad expression, explaining that he had been forced to come by his grandfather and that it wasn't a task he felt obligated to finish. He sneered, mentioning he had heard rumors that the grandson of the dean was a coward who couldn't handle his family's legacy, and meeting him today proved those rumors were true. Flustered, Jiaxu retorted that his choices were his own business. He turned away, stating that he just wanted to live a quiet life. As he walked off, he threw a parting shot, saying that with them there, everything should be fine. Though he intentionally struggled to remember Ming Ling's name, his face flushed with anger and he loudly corrected him that his name was Xuan Ming Ling. He scowled, wondering if he would ever actually remember it. Chong Chong interjected, telling him that now wasn't the time for that and pointing toward a swirling blue vortex where the others had already entered. Inside the cave, Xiao Huo was practicing his movement techniques. Suddenly, his mentor, Dan Lao, appeared. Xiao Huo was glad to see him awake, noting that the old man had slept for quite a while after their last energy-intensive encounter. The old man warned him not to overdo it again, as he only had a tiny bit of his spirit left. Xiao Huo chuckled, reassuring him that as a child of destiny, he valued his life too much to be reckless. Just then, something flickered, and Xiao Huo froze. Demonic cultivators appeared out of nowhere and swarmed the area. Xiao Huo's face went pale, while the old man calmly asked if he really cherished his life as much as he claimed. Terrified, Xiao Huo admitted he hadn't expected so many enemies in the cave. As they lunged at him, he nimbly dodged their claws. The old man crossed his arms and asked if Xiao Huo could actually handle such a large group. One enemy charged ferociously, and Xiao Huo told him not to underestimate a child of destiny. However, before he could fight back, the cultivator punched him in the face and began pummeling him. The old man sighed, asking if that was really all a child of destiny was capable of. Xiao Huo complained about the overwhelming numbers while the enemy continued to approach. The old man calculated that if this boy died, it would be hard to find another vessel, so he decided to help one last time by merging his energy with Xiao Huo. Xiao Huo grimaced, but then laughed with delight as he felt the power of a nascent soul level, calling it exhilarating. Dan Lao warned him not to get carried away, as he couldn't hold on much longer. Xiao Huo understood and promised to find a way to nourish the old man's soul once the fight was over. He grinned sinisterly, stating that everything would have to wait until the enemies were dealt with. Elsewhere, Jaksu was walking when he heard the sound of explosions. He sighed, figuring that if the others wanted to risk their lives against the demonic cultivators, he would let them. Suddenly, a carriage rushed toward him. Wu Ling yelled for him to move, but it was too late, and Jaksu was sent tumbling through the air. Wu Ling stopped and lifted the carriage, apologizing and explaining that he was in such a hurry he hadn't seen anyone on the road. Jaksu lay flat on the ground, unable to move. Baidi and Xiaoyu emerged from the carriage looking carsick. Baidi angrily vowed never to ride with Wu Ling again. Xiaoyu noticed the man on the ground was Jaksu. Wu Ling realized she was right, and wondered why he was lying there. Xiaoyu suggested he probably came to take over the mine, complaining that Headmaster Tianxing was trying to seize resources before them. Wu Ling defended the headmaster, saying they were only late because they took a wrong turn. He helped Jaksu up, saying they couldn't leave him there, and should take him to the mining area. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed from the mine. Wu Ling was stunned, but Baidi suggested it was likely just an explosive spell used for mining, like her father used to do. Wu Ling was surprised, but Xiaoyu found the method highly unusual. Ming Ling sighed when he saw the rescue team, noting he hadn't expected it to be them. They were met by Pan Hong and Huo Duo. After greetings were exchanged, Pan Hong pointed at the girl with her, identifying her as Chong Chong from the mechanism sect. He then asked who the arrogant guy next to them was. Ming Ling giggled and introduced himself as Xuan Ming Ling from the Heavenly Talisman sect, but Pan Hong and Huo Duo can't recognize him, and Ming Ling was annoyed, asking if they hadn't met before at the Righteous Path's elite gathering. Ming Ling scoffed and ignored the question, stating he was there to rescue Baidi and defeat the demonic cultivators. He boasted that, once he completed the mission, his name would be famous. Suddenly, the sound of more explosions filled the air. Xiao Huo crawled out from some rubble with a smile, thinking the enemies had finally learned their lesson. However, his jaw dropped when he saw them getting back up. He asked Dan Lao where the power he had been lent went. The old man explained that his essence was almost gone after saving him. As the enemy's eyes glowed red, the old man warned Xiao Huo to be careful. Xiao Huo panicked, realizing he had no strength left. Suddenly, a barrage of swords and talismans knocked the enemies down. Ming Ling walked over, promising that he wouldn't let a fellow righteous cultivator fall. Chong Chong praised his skill, but Xiao Huo joked that he hoped he wouldn't hit him with his attacks next time. He realized the newcomers were there to help, and decided to use their strength to his advantage. He asked if they were also there to deal with the demonic cultivators, and they all agreed. Xiao Huo claimed he knew the way, and imagined a scenario where he rescued the girls and they offered themselves to him in gratitude. He led the group down a cliff face. Meanwhile, Wu Ling's group was walking through the mine. Baidi noticed signs of a struggle, and Xiaoyu worried that something serious had happened in the mineral vein. Wu Ling looked around at the grim scene, noting that they needed to find whoever was in charge before jumping to conclusions. Corpses were scattered across the ground, creating a heavy atmosphere. Jaksu finally woke up, his eyes wide with terror as he questioned why he was back in such a place. Wu Ling breathed a sigh of relief and explained that he had accidentally knocked him unconscious and brought him there for treatment. Jaksu grimaced, stating he had no desire to be treated in a location that had clearly been overrun by demonic forces. He mentioned the rumors that even Baidi had been taken hostage. Baidi stood there, completely dumbfounded, wondering when exactly she had been kidnapped. Wu Ling pointed into the distance, noting that there didn't seem to be any demonic cultivators around at the moment. Xiaoyu whispered to Wu Ling to stop talking, urging him to hurry up and collect the abundant spirit stones scattered nearby. Jaksu looked around in a panic, confused as to why so many resources were still there if the area was occupied. He frowned, wondering if he was hallucinating. Wu Ling smiled faintly and asked if the dean had sent him to collect minerals. Jaksu stammered a denial, but Wu Ling lifted a piece of spirit mineral, noting the amount was beyond imagination. He then playfully threw a piece at Jaksu, saying they were just giving him his share. Jaksu flew into a rage, his face turning crimson as he asked if Wu Ling was trying to finish him off with a heavy stone. Wu Ling scratched his ear and apologized, admitting he thought the mineral was light. He wondered where the enemies had gone, speculating that the Righteous Alliance might have already dealt with them. Suddenly, smoke billowed around them. Ming Ling appeared, calling out to the shameless demonic cultivators, and identifying himself as the top prodigy of the Righteous Path. With resolute eyes, he offered them a quick defeat if they surrendered. Then Huo rode her beast toward the enemies, joining forces with Pan Hong to unleash a powerful dragon spear technique. Chong Chong rushed forward, with a mechanical slasher causing the enemies to collapse. Ming Ling was annoyed that the others had acted so fast, complaining that he didn't get a chance to look cool. Pan Hong smirked, asking who said anything about being slow. Ming Ling yelled that they were just jealous of his heroic image. Zhao Huo thought to himself that these people were incredibly powerful and hoped their protection would help him save Baidi. Ming Ling boasted that the enemies were nothing and that the elders back home were worrying for no reason. He suggested they finish up and head home, but Pan Hong remained thoughtful, warning her not to underestimate their opponents. Suddenly, he sensed a strange presence. A figure appeared, hovering in mid-air, and mocked the Righteous Alliance for sending small fry instead of someone powerful. Ming Ling glared at the arrogant demonic cultivator and launched a powerful talisman. However, a stream of purple spiritual energy easily blocked his attack. The figure remained unbothered, noting that while they were only at the golden core stage, their abilities exceeded his expectations. A panicked Ming Ling couldn't believe his talisman had been broken so easily. The figure gave a sinister smile and declared he would use them all as sacrifices, surrounding them with purple energy. Meanwhile, Wu Ling's group had nearly finished collecting the spirit minerals. He suggested they return to the library, but Jaksu trailed behind, wondering if things were really ending so smoothly. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. Jaksu asked in a panic if it was an earthquake, but soon realized it was a trap. The earth and rocks gave way, and they fell into the darkness. Fortunately, they landed safely. Wu Ling held Baidi in his arms, relieved that no one was hurt. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she thanked him for protecting them. He smiled and said it was his duty, but she shyly asked him to let go of her hand. Wu Ling realized the situation and apologized. Xiaoyu noticed the environment had changed. The mine now looked like the inside of a giant animal organ, covered in sticky fluid. Jaksu realized they had fallen into a trap, but declared they couldn't just sit there. He used his techniques to open a path, impressing Wu Ling with his ability to use earth magic even in such a strange place. Ling Yu cheered for her senior brother's skill. Wu Ling urged everyone to move quickly, noting the enemies were beyond their current level. As they ran, Jiaxu felt something block his path and became entangled in a fleshy wall. He felt his spiritual energy being drained and grew pale. Baidi tried to slash at the wall, but she was injured and couldn't break through. Wu Ling looked at her with concern, and she admitted that the wall seemed to absorb the energy of anyone who used it. The more power they exerted, the faster it drained them. Ling Yu rushed Xu's side as he struggled for breath. He slammed his fist into the ground, frustrated that his grandfather's mission had led them into this. Wu Ling realized the key was to avoid using spiritual energy. On the other side, Ming Ling's group was also trapped and losing power. Even their spirit beasts were being drained. He urged Chong Chong to use a mechanical device, but her control energy was also absorbed. Cultivators to fight them head-on. Xiao Huo told everyone to stop struggling to save their stamina. Ming Ling sarcastically asked if he had a plan, and he claimed that as a child of destiny, he would find a fortunate opportunity even in a dead end. Just then, fleshy tendrils tightened their grip. Wu Ling's group surged forward, trying to force a path open. He felt a sharp pain as he accidentally punched Xiao Huo while trying to break through. Ming Ling noticed the new arrivals and asked Wu Ling to save them. He was surprised to see so many people but agreed to help. Suddenly, Sima Yue appeared above, laughing triumphantly. He mocked Wu Ling, calling him young master and stating his trap wouldn't be undone so easily. Wu Ling froze, sweating as he realized the figure seemed to know his true identity and might be connected to his father. Sima Yue cruelly declared they would become food for his followers and manipulated the fleshy mountain to attack. Baidi swung her sword to rescue the group, and a cheered up Ming Ling praised her skills. They charged forward together, throwing talismans and launching a combined spirit fire attack that finally caused the demonic cultivator pain. Ming Ling smirked, assuming the enemy had finally learned what true geniuses from the righteous path were capable of. However, Chong Chong yelled a warning that the conflict was far from over. The demonic figure actually seemed to be growing. Sima Yue sneered, explaining that the Flesh Mountain's ability was to absorb spiritual energy. The more they attacked it with magic, the stronger it became. As it drained the surrounding power, the entity grew massive. Wu Ling leaped forward, relying on his physical immortal techniques rather than spiritual energy. He delivered a decisive series of punches and kicks that shattered the creature. Xiao Yu cheered, noting how easily Wu Ling seemed to handle the situation, but Sima Yue just chuckled at their naivety, asking if they really thought it was that simple. To their horror, the group watched as the demonic figure slowly regenerated. Sima Yue laughed, explaining that the Flesh Mountain would continue to reform as long as there was spiritual energy to absorb. The creature became even faster and lunged at a startled Wu Ling. Sima Yue cackled, telling them to just give up their energy and watch as righteous disciples were turned into demons. Ming Ling refused to believe it could recover forever and prepared to attack again. Wu Ling yelled for him to stop, but it was too late. Ming Ling threw 3 powerful thunder talismans, causing the creature to burst into flames. He laughed, thinking he had won, but Sima Yue remained smug. He reminded them that even if it was blown to bits, it would reform as long as a trace of energy remained. The creature reformed instantly and snatched Ming Ling out of the air. Chong Chong was worried, as Ming Ling realized his talismans were no longer working. The creature slammed him to the ground, leaving him pale with pain. Baidi warned everyone to stop using spiritual energy immediately, as it was only making the mountain stronger. Jiaxu frowned, asking how they were supposed to fight if they couldn't use their primary powers. He scowled, feeling like a pawn in a larger game. Xiao Yu urged them not to give up, explaining that the infinite regeneration was tied to a local formation. She suggested that if they could escape its range, they would be safe. Jiaxu asked how they were supposed to manage that given their current situation. Wu Ling stepped up, stating he had a plan to break through the wall of flesh, though it would be strenuous. He noted he couldn't open the path and defend himself at the same time, so he needed someone to buy him time. And his group stepped forward with determination, telling Wu Ling not to underestimate their physical strength. Wu Ling smiled and thanked them. He began a heavy assault on the wall, punching repeatedly to clear a path. Sima Yue watched with amusement and ordered his minions to keep the group from focusing. The minions attacked like a storm, but the team charged forward to help Wu Ling clear the way. Pan Hong yelled for Wu Ling to seize the opportunity while they held the line. The intense impacts sent sparks flying. Eventually, the force knocked Pan Hong and his companions down. He gasped that they could only help him this far. The creature lunged with lightning speed, but Baidi rushed in, swinging her sword. She bit her finger to let her blood drip onto the blade and used a blood slash technique, explaining that she could only manage 3 such strikes using her physical essence without spiritual energy. She told Wu Ling he had to open the path after those 3 hits. Baidi's sword struck true, making the creature roar, but it eventually overwhelmed her, causing her to cough up blood. She persevered through her final strike, and behind the demon, a strange light appeared as the rock and flesh crumbled. Wu Ling shouted with joy that the way was open. An exhausted Baidi collapsed, and Xiao Yu caught her just in time. Pan Hong urged everyone to run for the opening. Sima Yue sneered and directed the Flesh Mountain to block their exit. Wu Ling saw the wall closing and used all his strength to keep it open, telling the others to hurry. The demonic master frantically commanded the wall to shut, and the atmosphere became suffocating. Outside the tunnel, they debated going back in. Pan Hong argued it would be suicide and suggested they should instead inform the Righteous Alliance. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed through the area. Xiao Yue appeared with a sinister smile, remarking that humans always panic and turn on each other when things go wrong. He boasted about the demon race being naturally superior. Xiao Huo scoffed at him, asking who the pretentious person was. Jiaxi hurried to cover Xiao Huo's mouth, identifying the newcomer as Xiao Yue, the son of the demon lord and heir to the demon race. Jiaxu explained that because the demon race had recently allied with the righteous path, everyone treated them with a level of respect. Xiao Yue acted quite arrogant, and Xiao Yu was stunned by his presence. Ming Ling tried to greet him, mentioning they had met at a previous convention, but Xiao Yue claimed he had no memory of him. An annoyed Ming Ling shouted his name, but Chong Chong told him to calm down. Xiao Yue stated he was only there because the Righteous Alliance requested his presence, unlike the rabble around him. He observed the wall of flesh and took a deep breath, drawing his sword and unleashing a powerful silver wolf slash. As expected, Xiao Yue Yue's attack was a success. Ming Ling was completely astonished by the power he displayed, while Pan Hong felt a sense of inadequacy, noting that despite being the same age, their strength was worlds apart. Wu observed that the demon race clearly possessed unusual and formidable methods. Sitting atop her spirit beast, she mentioned how wonderful it would be if her own companion could reach that level of power. Those words inadvertently struck a nerve with Xiao Yue, who told her never to compare him to a common animal. He slung his sword over his shoulder after clearing a path. The demonic entity nearby tried to harm the group's spiritual foundation, but Wu Ling saw Xiao Yue's arrival as a good omen and a sign of rescue. Xiao Yue's sword strikes were as fast as lightning, preventing the inner demon from causing any further harm. Wu Ling expressed his gratitude for the timely rescue, but warned that the fleshy mass would eventually regenerate. Xiao Yue brushed off the concern and released his spirit beast to devour the scattered remains. Wu Ling mistakenly called the beasts dogs, which made Xiao Yue furious, as he clarified they were actually wolves. Fans of Xiao Yue boasted that human cultivators lacked courtesy, and that it was no wonder the current generation of human geniuses was no match for the demon race. Meanwhile, Sima Yue approached silently, finding the whole situation quite amusing. Baidi agreed that using a spirit beast to devour the flesh was a clever way to prevent regeneration and energy absorption. Wu Ling noticed that Xiao Yu didn't seem happy despite being saved, but she quickly denied any issues. Wu Ling then urged everyone to hurry out of the area while they had the chance. Xiao Yu felt a sense of relief that they had finally escaped the immediate trap. Wu Ling admitted he had truly feared for his life and thanked Xiao Yu again. Xiao Yu remained cold, stating he was simply completing a mission for the Righteous Alliance. Jiaxu advised that they should save the thank you until they reached a truly safe location. Xiao Huo was equally frustrated, asking Jiaxu if he was really that afraid of dying in a foreign land. Jiaxu admitted he wanted to leave the demonic cultivators to the experts. The group agreed and pushed forward. Though Wu Ling had calmed down, Xiao Yu remained visibly uncomfortable. Xiao Yu watched him suspiciously, contemplating the coincidence of their meeting. The group rushed forward, with Jiaxu leading the way in a desperate attempt to escape. Wu Ling struggled to keep pace. Eventually, a panting Ming Ling told everyone to stop, pointing out that despite running for so long, they were just going in circles. Jiaxu was bewildered, and Pan Hong realized that he was completely exhausted despite not having run very far. Xiao Yu confirmed that a demonic trap was never easy to escape. They found themselves surrounded by walls of pink flesh, and they looked at each other with concern as they realized their spiritual energy had been completely drained. Sima Yue flew down to taunt them, declaring that they were too weak to defy him, and that this was the perfect opportunity for him to strike. He lunged at the group, and Ming Ling, Pan Hong, and Huo screamed as they were caught. Tu Peng and Ling Yu met the same fate. Xiao Yu and Xiao Huo were also caught off guard. Wu Ling panicked at the sight of his friends in distress and demanded to know what Sima Yue had done to them. Sima Yue promised he would find out soon enough. Jiaxu regretted ever walking into the trap. Suddenly, Huo and Pan Hong seemed to lose their minds, attacking each other while shouting about demonic cultivation. Wu Ling realized that the inner demons were invading their minds and that he was the only one left who could save them. He turned to Xiao Yue, glad to see he wasn't affected, and suggested they face the enemy together. However, the arrogant Xiao Yue told him not to act so familiar. Wu Ling apologized, but still asked for his help. Suddenly, Xiao Yue leaped into the air and rushed toward Xiao Yu, grabbing her and jumping away in a single bound. He smugly called her his runaway bride, leaving Wu Ling in total shock. Wu Ling couldn't believe what he was hearing and asked what Xiao Yu was talking about. Xiao Yue told him to ask Xiao Yu herself. She felt hesitant, but decided it was time to tell the truth. She explained that before she was born, the family had made a marriage agreement with the Demon King, Xiao Tian. She had run away in the middle of the night to avoid the marriage, but her family and the Demon King's guards had chased her relentlessly. She admitted she had been terrified and was almost caught when Wu Ling appeared and defeated the guards. She had felt incredibly grateful, and his image had stayed with her ever since. She had decided then that she would only ever marry Wu Ling. She regretted that they seemed to have a connection but perhaps weren't destined to be together. Xiao Yue, however, would not hear of it. He scoffed, claiming that because he had captured her during a mission, their destinies were intertwined and they were meant to be together. Baidi couldn't help but interject, asking Xiao Yue if he wasn't afraid that the Righteous Alliance would pursue him for his actions. However, he only felt more self-important, dismissively calling her concern ridiculous. He explained that his engagement with the Dusong clan was a private matter within the Demon Clan, and even though they were currently cooperating with the Righteous Alliance, outsiders had no right to interfere. He wasn't someone to be trifled with and quickly followed up with a threat, telling them he didn't expect them to survive long enough to leave the mine anyway. The inner demon appeared once more, and Wu Ling was so furious his eyebrows nearly stood on end. He called Xiao Yue a beast and lunged forward without hesitation, using a high jump immortal technique while shouting that he would never let him take Xiao Yu away. Xiao Yue showed no mercy. He arrogantly called Wu Ling a fool and asked if he really thought a mortal body could stop him. Wu Ling, unaware of his own physical limits, punched wildly at the air and told him to get away, but this only earned him a burst of mocking laughter. Xiao Yue decided he had no more time to waste and simply carried Xiao Yu away, telling Wu Ling he wouldn't bother with him any longer. He completely disregarded the promises he had made to the Righteous Alliance before arriving, telling the group they could stay behind to have their spiritual energy drained until they died. Wu Ling could only watch in rage as Xiao Yue leaped out of the cave, but his anger didn't grant him any sudden surge of power. He was about to rush after them when the inner demon lashed out with its tail. Realizing he had to choose, Wu Ling decided to save Baidi first as she was slammed against the wall. He called out to Xiao Yu, promising that he would definitely come to save her. For some reason, the monster targeted Baidi next, but Wu Ling managed to carry her away just in time. A bit puzzled, Baidi admitted she thought he would have gone after Xiao Yu first. Wu Ling assessed the situation, noting that Xiao Yu wasn't in immediate mortal danger. He then wondered why Baidi was no longer affected by the inner demon's influence. She guessed that because she had broken free from its control once before, she might now be immune. They knew they had to find a way to deal with the creature for good. It attacked again, forcing them to separate, and tried to crush Baidi with its massive foot. It even taunted her by forming a ball of fire fire in its mouth, which terrified her. Wu Ling, refusing to let a demonic presence run rampant, struck the monster and made it bleed. His spirit root's power proved formidable. With a decisive move, he sent the creature's head flying. He followed up with a barrage of heavy blows until the body collapsed. Baidi warned that if they didn't finish it at the source, it would just become a recurring calamity. Wu Ling agreed, noting that they had to eradicate it completely to resolve the problem. Suddenly, Sima Yue flew back in, asking if they still expected to escape and telling them they should just give up like his father had. Wu Ling told him never to insult his father. Having observed the area, Wu Ling noticed a strange aura moving upward from below and realized what he had to do. Baidi was confused as he dashed off, but he explained he was going to find the root of the problem. He used an immortal technique he called grave digging, which surprised Sima Yue. Initially, Sima Yue stayed calm, thinking Wu Ling was digging in the wrong direction, but he soon realized Wu Ling was heading straight for his own hiding spot. Sima Yue hurriedly commanded the headless monster to stop him, reminding it that its head could regenerate infinitely. The creature roared and chased him, but Wu Ling kept running, telling himself he only needed a little more time. He dug with all his might until he finally succeeded. Thanks to his observations, he had found Sima Yue sitting calmly in the deepest part of the mine. Sima Yue huffed, telling Wu Ling not to think he had won just by finding him, and ordered his subordinates to finish him off. Another monster blocked the way, but Wu Ling's long-suppressed anger finally erupted. He shouted that Sima Yue had not only hurt his friends, but had also allowed Xiao Yu to be kidnapped. He unleashed his power, blowing the monster away with a single blow, and turning his fist towards Sima Yue, vowing never to forgive him. Instead of running, Sima Yue stayed put, and puffed out his chest defiantly. Wu Ling's charge was incredibly swift, and he felt a sense of relief as he landed the hit. However, as Sima Yue lay on the ground, he admitted that Wu Ling's strength exceeded his expectations but insisted he wouldn't give up. He explained that his plan had been in the works for a long time and wouldn't be stopped by a small surprise. Suddenly, purple smoke appeared beneath Wu Ling's feet. Sima Yue had used the distraction to escape. His voice echoed through the cave, gloating that since Wu Ling wouldn't join him, they would all drown in the mine instead. The cave began to tremble violently. Wu Ling felt the weight of protecting everyone on his shoulders and knew he couldn't stop. He ran as fast as he could to get them out as the pieces of the fleshy monster began to reconnect. Baidi called out his name in alarm and caught him just in time. Wu Ling told her not to worry about his condition, even though he was in pain. He warned her of a wall up ahead, and though they tried to avoid it, they still collided with a floating rock. Baidi was truly grateful, telling Wu Ling he had saved her life yet again. He lifted a large rock and told her that now wasn't the time for thanks. They had to find a way out. Chaos erupted above as the ceiling began to collapse. Wu Ling used all his remaining strength to hold up a falling boulder, urging Baidi to go because he couldn't hold it much longer. She felt helpless, explaining she couldn't take everyone out at once. Xiaohuo and Jiaxu managed to escape the immediate danger, but the rocks continued to fall. Baidi begged Wu Ling to get out of the way, but he panicked, realizing the entrance was blocked. He used his last bit of strength to hold the opening, coughing up blood as he yelled for everyone to move quickly while they still had a chance. Jiaxu called out to Wu Ling as the situation turned dire. Xiaohuo watched in silence, unable to speak, as Wu Ling gritted his teeth and endured the pain of holding back the debris for everyone. Having already been injured in the earlier explosion, Wu Ling admitted he couldn't hold on much longer. Baidi rushed toward him, intending to help support the massive rock. Fortunately, the boulder shattered into smaller fragments, leaving both Wu Ling and Baidi safe. Wu Ling didn't understand why she had pulled him back, noting that if they had stayed, neither of them would have escaped. Baidi immediately corrected him, reaching out her hand and calling him an idiot. She told him frankly that he shouldn't take his life so lightly. Wu Ling couldn't argue with her. He realized she had always worried about him, even when he didn't value himself. He finally saw her good intentions and apologized, admitting he had been acting self-righteously. Baidi feigned her usual arrogance, saying she didn't want his apology. However, Wu Ling still felt a heavy sense of failure. He leaned against the stone wall, feeling useless, as he noted that even though he was grateful to be alive, they were still trapped with no way out. He explained that with his current strength, he couldn't break through the rocks, and since everyone else was out of spiritual energy, they might actually die there. Xiaohuo suddenly had an idea and pointed out that someone still had energy left. Jiaxu was surprised, but Xiaohuo reminded him that he had been running the whole time and hadn't used any spiritual energy at all. Jiaxu didn't deny it, so Xiaohuo urged him to use his magic to open the exit. Jiaxu stammered, lacking confidence and claiming his earth magic was useless in this situation, since he didn't know the specific wood-earth techniques required to control that much rock. Tu Feng remained silent, unable to offer help. Mustering his courage, Jiaxu launched an earth pillar attack. While it looked powerful, it did very little against the boulders. Jiaxu noted that his magic was like an egg hitting a rock and that he hadn't wanted to embarrass himself. Ming Ling, knowing his background, asked if his family wasn't famous for fire magic, considering he was the nephew of the martial academy headmaster. Jiaxu hesitated. He wanted to succeed on his own merit rather than relying on his bloodline. As the cave began to show signs of collapse, Baidi urged him not to be stubborn, warning that they would all die if he didn't use his fire abilities. Jiaxu recalled Tianxing's warning about the Wu family's responsibilities to the Righteous Alliance and realized he couldn't escape his destiny. He decided to go all out and activated a technique called the Raging Flame Body. Even he was surprised by the sheer power as the flames instantly melted the rocks. Baidi noted that it was exactly what she expected from his bloodline. Jiaxu leaped into the air and launched several more attacks until the last of the rocks were cleared. He and Baidi were stunned by the success, and she celebrated their escape. Xiaohuo jokingly wondered if Jiaxu intended to burn down the entire mine, while Mingling praised his eye for detail. Suddenly, Wu Ling noticed something was wrong as flames completely engulfed his body. Pan Hong feared that falling from such a height while on fire would be fatal. Huo called for someone to save him. Wu Ling rushed forward, using an immortal technique to leap high and catch the unconscious flaming Jiaxu in his arms. He strained against the searing heat as they both fell toward the ground. Baidi tried to rush to them, but Pan Hong blocked her with his spear. He told her sternly that they couldn't touch them yet because the flames showed no sign of going out and would burn anyone who got close. Ming Ling explained that Jiaxu had awakened to the the Wu family's secret raging flame body physique, which was their strongest and most dangerous technique. He warned that if the flames weren't controlled, they could burn the user to ashes. Baidi asked anxiously if they were just supposed to watch them burn. Mingling pulled out some talismans, saying he could only use rain magic to slow the fire down. Suddenly, a voice told them there was no need to intervene. Headmasters Tianxing and Duwang arrived, much to everyone's relief. Mingling couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Tianxing's hair. Xing summoned a wave of sand to lift the unconscious Jiaxu away from the fire. Duwang instructed Tianxing to treat the injuries quickly, noting that he had used the sand to temporarily suppress the flames. Tianxing adjusted his shifted wig and began the treatment. Wuo and Panhong observed the process, wondering what miraculous technique the headmaster of Xuantian Academy would use. Tianxing then performed an unexpected move. He began to suck the flames into his own mouth. Mingling explained to the confused students that while it looked simple, Tianxing was actually absorbing and controlling the scorching heat that no one else could extinguish. They watched as he gathered the flames into a giant ball and released them toward a nearby mountain, shattering it upon impact. Once the smoke cleared, the group greeted him with honor. Tianxing humbly deflected the praise, though his lips were now quite swollen from the heat. He joked that it was just some basic breathing techniques. Wuo felt a wave of doubt, finding Tianxing to be quite unreliable. Panhong also turned pale with apprehension, wondering if all the elders in the alliance were this eccentric. He noted that their own team leader was just as stubborn. When Jiaxu finally woke up and started muttering, Tianxing rushed over and put an arm around him. Reassuming his role as a mentor, he told Jiaxu not to worry, explaining that the flames had been completely purged and that he would be fine after receiving more treatment back at the academy. Jiaxu felt a flicker of disappointment, realizing that in the end, everything had gone his grandfather's way and he was stuck bearing the family responsibility. Tianxing took Jiaxu's hand and spoke reproachfully, clarifying that it wasn't just about Jiaxu bearing a burden. The Wu family relied on his actions to survive. He turned Jiaxu toward the other students and told him to look at the friends he had saved. He described the rescued students as the future of the cultivation world that their family had always protected. The group expressed their gratitude in unison, thanking Jiaxu for saving their lives. A bit embarrassed, Jiaxu looked away. Tianxing stroked his beard and asked if Jiaxu now understood why their family was so persistent. Jiaxu thought about it for a moment and then smiled faintly, admitting that he did. Only then did Wu Ling manage to stand up, still breathing heavily. He ignored the others and started walking toward the crater. Baidi called out to him, asking what he was doing. Wu Ling rubbed his stiff neck and explained that now that everyone was safe, he was going to save Xiaoyu. She protested angrily, calling him crazy and telling him that going into demon territory in his current state was essentially suicide. Wu Ling frowned, stating he couldn't just abandon her. Tianxing interrupted, asking what had happened in the demon territory. Baidi explained that the young master of the demon race had kidnapped Wu Ling's servant girl and intended to marry her. Tianxing placed a hand on Wu Ling's shoulder and told him it was an internal matter of the demon territory and that they couldn't interfere. Wu Ling wouldn't listen, stating he only wanted Xiaoyu to be able to live happily. Tianxing worried that Wu Ling's intense obsession could lead to the development of a heart demon and decided he had to stop him immediately. He told Wu Ling he couldn't let him act rashly, but Wu Ling was determined and told him not to stop him. Wu Ling used a celestial technique to punch Tianxing with all his might, sending the headmaster crashing into a cliff. Everyone watched in stunned silence as Tianxing was plastered against the rock. Not wanting to lose face, Tianxing summoned a giant glowing hammer and slammed it down on Wu Ling, flattening him completely. Wu Ling struggled for a moment before fainting. The scene shifted to nighttime in the 10,000 Demons Forest, where fireflies filled the sky. Xiao Yue dragged a tied-up Xiao Yu into a prison cell and threw her inside, telling her she would stay there until their wedding. Xiao Yu remained defiant, telling him to forget it and that she would never marry him even if she died. Xiao Yue laughed and told her to look behind her. She turned and was shocked to see other members of the Doshan clan, including her own aunts and uncles. She asked them if they weren't supposed to have escaped, but no one answered. Xiao Yue explained that his father had cooperated with the Righteous Alliance specifically to find those who had betrayed the marriage agreement. He noted it was a pity they couldn't find her for so long while she was hiding with a sealed demonic cultivator. Xiao Yu snorted and declared that even if she was forced, her heart would always belong to Wu Ling. Xiao Yue scoffed at her, calling her a stupid woman, and clarifying that he wasn't some lovesick puppy. When Xiao Yu joked that he was a lovesick dog, he angrily snapped back that he was a wolf demon. He cleared his throat and explained that all he really needed was the Doshan bloodline. He calculated that their children would inherit all the power of the demon race, at which point her clan would lose all its value. Xiao Yu was too furious to speak. Xiao Yue squeezed her face and told her to enjoy her time in the cell before the wedding. Xiao Yu remained defiant, stating that Wu Ling would not spare him. Xiao Yue laughed, saying Wu Ling was likely dead in the mine, and even if he escaped, Sima Yu would have another chance to capture him. Xiao Yu was surprised to hear Sima Yue mentioned and asked if there was a connection between the demon race and the villain. Xiao Yu refused to answer, telling her it wasn't her concern before slamming the cell door shut. He then turned to Sima Yue and suggested they go see his father. As they walked away, Xiao Yue wondered what kind of conspiracy was brewing. In the demon race's cave, Xiao Yu respectfully introduced Sima Yue to his father, the clan leader. The majestic leader praised his son and then ordered him to leave so they could discuss matters privately. Once they were alone, the clan leader noted it had been a few thousand years since they last met. Sima Yue stood respectfully and expressed surprise that the demon race was cooperating with the Righteous Alliance. The clan leader dismissed the remark as a delaying tactic, noting that the conflict between righteousness and demons was just a battle of heart demons. He expressed surprise that so many in the alliance still clung to their old ways after their previous victory. The clan leader explained that for the sake of power, the demon race was willing to cooperate with Sima Yue. Sima Yue laughed and took out a secret manual, stating that if he was provided with a quiet place to study it, they would accomplish great things. The clan leader invited him to stay and even join his son's wedding celebration. Sima Yue politely accepted and left the cave. Once he was gone, the clan leader's smile vanished, and he asked his son for his honest opinion on Sima Yue. Xiao Yue crossed his arms and noted that Sima Yue was secretive and couldn't be fully trusted. The clan leader agreed, adding that if the demon race wanted to rise again, they needed a way to control Sima Yue's Yue's heart demon. However, he wondered if the villain would easily share that secret. After considering it, the leader decided that since Sima Yue was on their territory, there was no reason to fear him. Xiao Yue fully agreed, adding that once they controlled the heart demon, the entire cultivation world would belong to the demon race. Their triumphant laughter echoed through the cave. The next morning, Wu Ling startled awake in his bed, immediately shouting that he had to save Xiao Yu. Baidi crossed her arms and told him to calm down, reminding him that his health was still poor and he shouldn't move. Despite a headache from sitting up so fast, Wu Ling insisted on leaving, but Baidi asked how he planned to save anyone when he could barely walk. Just then, Murong arrived with a pot of chicken soup she had made specifically for the injured Wu Ling. Wu Ling focused entirely on the soup and began to pour the whole pot into his mouth. Murong was moved to tears by his enthusiasm, and Wu Ling gave a thumbs up, praising her cooking and saying his injuries felt healed already. Murong was mostly shocked that he had practically swallowed the pot. Baidi tried to reason with him again, noting that the demon territory was not an easy place to infiltrate. Wu Ling clenched his fists, vowing to bring Xiao Yu back even if it cost him his life, and started to run off. Baidi called out for the others who were arriving to stop him. Mingling blocked the path, asking where he was going in such a hurry. Wu Ling punched Mingling in the stomach and told him not to interfere. Pained Mingling clarified that they weren't there to stop him. Surprised, Wu Ling asked why they had come. Pan Hong explained that it was too dangerous for him to go alone, and Huo added that they wanted to repay him for saving their lives. They told him that as righteous cultivators, they wouldn't stand by while a comrade was captured. Wu Ling realized they were on his side and immediately apologized for being so agitated. Mingling joked that he wouldn't let a small attack bother him. Baidi asked how they had all reached an agreement so quickly, but when Wu Ling took a defensive stance toward her, she quickly surrendered. She clarified she wasn't going to stop him, and Wu Ling relaxed, noting he wouldn't have to knock her out then. Mingling scowled, jealous that Wu Ling hadn't held back with him. Baidi sighed and asked if any of them actually knew where Xiao Yu had been taken. When everyone stared back in silence, she put a hand to her forehead in exasperation, wondering how they could rush off without a destination. Wu Ling softly explained that he was just worried and didn't want to waste time, especially since the headmaster objected to him leaving. Baidi smiled slightly and told him not to worry, as Tianxing was too busy treating Jiaxu to manage him. Wu Ling rejoiced but admitted they still didn't know where Xiao Yu had taken her. Huo spoke up, mentioning he had heard of the 10,000 demon forest about 800 miles away. Described a place where unidentified fruits emit a blue light, making the inhabitants more intelligent and allowing some to transform into human-like demon folk. Wu Ling realized this meant nearly all demon beasts came from that forest. Huo confirmed that they would likely find clues there. Wu Ling immediately rushed for the door, but Mingling grabbed his shoulder. He asked Wu Ling if he really planned to run 800 miles. When Wu Ling asked what else he could do, Mingling explained that not even their group could keep up with that kind of pace. Wu Ling grew awkward, asking for a better plan. Mingling smiled mysteriously and led everyone outside into the clear day. He pulled out a yellow talisman, chanted an incantation, and tossed it into the air. The talisman transformed into a streak of light and exploded like a shooting star, radiating golden shards everywhere. As the light faded, a massive spirit ship appeared, hovering in the air. Wu Ling was awestruck by its size. Mingling waved his hand, and golden light wove together to form a staircase connecting the ground to the ship. He invited everyone to board, and they soon reached the deck. Wu Ling looked around in praise, wondering just how many spirit stones it took to power a vessel of that size. As the group began to explore, Mingling laughed and credited the Tung Hong dynasty for the ship's impressive speed. He explained that the spirit ship was operated by the Tung Hong Iron Army and could travel 100 miles on just a few thousand steamed buns. Wu Ling was floored, realizing the massive vessel was actually powered by hundreds of people rowing and working deep inside. The ship trembled slightly as the golden magic of the Tian Tenyu sect shot from the stern, propelling them forward like a meteor. Wu Ling stood at the railing watching the clouds, but his impatience quickly got the better of him. He grabbed Mingling by the collar and demanded they make the army row faster, worried that Xiao Yu was running out of time. A dizzy Mingling tried to steady himself while Huo interjected, claiming she had a way to boost their speed. She let out a sharp whistle, and suddenly thousands of spirit birds descended from the sky. Wu Ling and Mingling watched in awe as the birds circled the ship and swooped into the hull to assist the Iron Army. Baidi praised Huo's ability to control so many beasts. Inside the ship, the birds transformed into light, transferring their energy directly to the workers. Huo shrugged, telling them not to overthink the mechanics as long as they were moving faster. Wu Ling cheered as the ship surged forward. Meanwhile, deep in the dark forest, Xiao Yu was struggling behind iron bars. She exhausted her spiritual energy trying to break the barrier, but her uncle advised her to stop wasting her strength. He explained that the prison was made of a special material that reflected any attempt to break it, and their shackles were specifically designed to absorb their power, leaving them as weak as ordinary people. A hulking jailer walked over and mocked Xiao Yu, asking if she was excited to marry the young master the next day. He sneered that her entire clan would attend the wedding, where their accumulated spiritual energy would be seized as a gift for the servants to enjoy. This gave Xiao Yu a sudden spark of hope. She realized that for the energy transfer to happen, the locks would have to be opened. She lowered her head and smiled, telling her family that she finally had a plan. The next morning, the forest was filled with the sounds of horns and gongs. Xiao Yu, dressed in a vibrant red wedding gown, stood by her bridal palanquin as the demon followers cheered for the young master. He smirked triumphantly and ordered his servants to bring the bride and the rest of the Doshan clan to the ceremony. The prison doors were opened, and the shackles were removed. Xiao Yu gave her uncle a subtle signal before obediently following the guards. At the ceremony site, the officiant began the traditional rites. The young master bowed to heaven and earth and then to the elders, but Xiao Yu remained perfectly still. When the young master angrily asked why she wasn't bowing to him, she looked at him with ice-cold eyes and stated that she would only ever bow to Wu Ling and that the young master was not worthy of her respect. Enraged, he threatened to use force, but Xiao Yu just scoffed. She raised her hand as a pink light began to glow from her fingers, declaring that she was the one who would be taking action. A massive explosion tore through the area behind the young master, throwing demon soldiers back and sending the ceremony ceremony into total chaos. The young master stood frozen, shouting for his men to regain control, but the air was thick with smoke and pink light. In the distance, the clan leader watched the scene unfold. Xiao Yu laughed triumphantly amidst the smoke, standing tall and declaring that the Doshan clan would never be slaves. As the dust swirled, the clan leader stepped forward into the fray. At that moment, Xiao Yu's younger brother, his face twisted with rage, raised his chained hands and unleashed a powerful burst of energy. The force sent the nearby demons flying through the air, leaving them screaming in pain. Seeing the chaos, Xiao Yu was furious and demanded to know how a group with no spiritual power could manage such a feat. Xiao Yu faced her calmly, credited Xiao Yu's own past actions for their success. She held up a chain and explained with a smug smile that to prevent the Doshan clan from rebelling, Xiao Yu had created locks that wouldn't absorb their internal power, but instead gathered external spiritual energy for years. With a gleeful look, Xiao Yu tossed the chain aside, causing a massive explosion. She explained that even a tiny bit of external force could detonate all that stored power. Xiao Yu was stunned, calling the move suicidal since Xiao Yu supposedly had no energy left to protect herself. However, Xiao Yu smiled through the blood trickling from her mouth and told her she had overlooked the Doshan clan's secret soul link, which she was using to shield her family from the blast. As Xiao Yu stumbled to her knees, Xiao Yue lunged at her, seizing her throat in a murderous rage. He lifted her into the air, yelling that she would marry him and her entire clan would obey him. Just then, her younger brother rushed forward, desperate to save her. He unleashed a powerful attack that sent the surrounding guards flying in despair. Despite being choked, Xiao Yu gasped for Xiao Yue to stop. Another explosion threw them both back, and her brother rushed to her side, cradling her and asking if she was okay. She weakly joked that she would be better if people stopped blowing things up. As the dust settled, the demon king, Chu Tian, arrived and stood speechless at the scene. Sima Yue appeared shortly after, mockingly commenting on the demon king's inability to keep his prisoners in check. He told Chu Tian that they would talk later and vanished, saying he looked forward to the demon king's next performance. A humiliated Chu Tian roared at Xiao Yue to take the prisoners away. As her brother helped Xiao Yu up, Chu Tian's massive figure suddenly blocked their path. He looked ferocious as he asked if they had caused enough trouble. Her brother tried to comfort her, promising to protect her, while Xiao Yu instructed her family to use the remaining power in their locks. Chu Tian roared and swung his massive hand at them, but the group managed to erect a protective shield. The demon king unleashed a devastating blow that shattered their defense, sending everyone flying. Xiao Yu hit the ground hard, coughing up blood. Before she could recover, Chu Tian grabbed her in his massive hand and mocked them, calling them flies and asking if they really thought that meager amount of energy could stop him. Fearless as ever, Xiao Yu spat in his face and told him that even if she died, she would never do what he wanted. Infuriated, Chu Tian was about to tighten his grip when Xiao Yue suggested keeping her alive for her usefulness. Ignoring his son, Chu Tian raised her higher, threatening to cripple her since he couldn't kill her. Suddenly, a beam of light flashed from the sky, and a ship crashed directly into the demon king, sending him sprawling into a large crater. Xiao Yue and his subordinates cried out in horror for their king. Wu Ling and others emerged from the wreckage. Ming Ling complained about the rough landing, while Wu Ling argued about who was responsible for the crash. However, Wu Ling quickly shifted his focus, anxiously asking if he was too late to save Xiao Yu. He saw her lying injured under Chu Tian's hand. She struggled to speak, telling him she knew he would come for her. Wu Ling stood frozen for a moment, his heart breaking at the sight of her exhausted and hurt. Panic and worry took over as he ignored everything else and focused his energy. He launched himself forward with such force that he created a crater in the ground, rushing toward her. Xiao Yu tried to intervene, but Wu Ling shoved her aside so hard she went flying. He quickly lifted Xiao Yu out of Chu Tian's grasp and handed her to Baidi, asking her to take care of her. Baidi agreed and took charge. With a grim expression, Wu Ling walked toward the downed Chu Tian, cracking his knuckles. He asked if he was the one who had hurt Xiao Yu before grabbing the demon king by the neck and lifting him into the air. He roared for Chu Tian to apologize, preparing a powerful technique to finish the fight once and for all. Chu Tian was sent flying, crashing into the ground some distance away with a look of pure disbelief. Wu Ling calmly grabbed one of the king's arms and noted that physical strength was his specialty. From a distance, Chu Tian's subordinates watched in total shock, unable to believe that their king's full power attack had been blocked so easily. With a serious expression, Wu Ling prepared a celestial technique. While a bewildered Chu Tian stared him down, Wu Ling suddenly hurled him into the air. Debris and dust filled the area as Chu Tian's father was sent flying by a follow-up punch, crashing hard into the earth. As he groaned in pain, Wu Ling looked coldly at the crowd. The demon beasts of the clan murmured amongst themselves, terrified and wondering who this person was that could toss their king around like a toy. Xiao Yue's brow furrowed in anger at the sight of her subordinates standing idle. He scolded them for being useless and struggled to his feet, grabbing a large blade. He declared he would handle it himself, but as he raised his weapon, a bolt of lightning struck the ground in front of him. Ming Ling's cold voice warned him to look out as he readied a lightning talisman. Ming Ling shouted that he hadn't yet settled the score for being betrayed, and threw several talismans into the air, focusing his spiritual power into a 10,000 swords technique. Thousands of sword images rushed toward Xiao Yue, who struggled to parry the massive assault. Furious, Xiao Yu ordered his subordinates to help him, but they were too afraid. They stammered that it wasn't that they didn't want to help, but that their opponents were simply too strong. Xiao Yue turned to see what they meant and was stunned to see Pan Hong effortlessly finishing off 4 guards at once with his spear, while Baidi assisted with swirling sword energy. Seeing his subordinates fall one by one, Xiao Yue yelled at them, questioning why he even fed them if they were going to fail at such a critical moment. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed as Chu Tian stood up again. His voice was deep and low as he challenged the group, growling that he wouldn't be defeated by brats. He glared at Wu Ling, questioning if the boy really thought a simple level up was enough to win. He raised his claws toward Wu Ling and Xiao Yu, threatening to tear them to shreds. Wu Ling flew up and punched Chu Tian squarely in the jaw, telling him to shut up. The blow sent the demon king crashing back down. Wu Ling unyieldingly demanded that he apologize to Xiao Yu. Watching from his arms, Xiao Yu thought Wu Ling looked incredibly cool. Baidi, still fighting hiding in the distance, heard this and felt a bit disgruntled, muttering the same thing under her breath. Humiliated, the Demon King roared that he had had enough. His eyes were bloodshot with rage as he declared that even if they begged for forgiveness, he wouldn't show mercy. Wu Ling interrupted him mid-sentence with another fist, gritting his teeth as he repeated his demand for an apology. Xu Tian wouldn't let himself be hit so easily this time and raised his claws to block the strike. The impact made the ground tremble violently, causing the surrounding crowd to scatter in fear. Even Ming Ling flinched at the power of the collision, noting how strong their attacks were. Xiao Yue, however, felt a surge of joy, believing his father was finally getting serious. The king gained the upper hand and reached for Wu Ling and Xiao Yu with a smug look, daring them to see how many rounds they could last. While Xiao Yu worried, Wu Ling remained fearless, retorting that they would fight until an apology was given. The fierce battle truly began. Wu Ling threw continuous punches, while the king dodged and countered with his sharp claws. Frustrated by Wu Ling's agility, Xu Tian grumbled that the boy was difficult to deal with. Wu Ling then leaped into the air and landed a brutal Grand Azure fist directly on the king's face. The pain only fueled the king's fury. He vowed to kill Wu Ling and swung his claws wildly. The king jumped high and threw a punch that forced Wu Ling to block. When they landed, the earth shook so violently that Xiao Yu called out Wu Ling's name in fear. He reassured her he was okay, but admitted the king's strength was formidable. The king's eyes flashed with a cold glint as he swept his claws in a wide arc, shaking the ground so hard that Beatty was sent flying. Inadvertently injured by flying rocks, Beatty cried out, which distracted Wu Ling. The king took advantage of the moment, mocking Wu Ling for being distracted and launching a new attack. Wu Ling's face darkened with anger. He told the king it was unforgivable that he had not only refused to apologize but was also trying to hurt his friends. He crouched down, watching the attack approach with cold eyes. He spread his arms, caught the king's own energy, and chillingly told him he was returning it all. The king was stunned, unable to comprehend how his own technique could be turned against him. Before he could recover, Wu Ling leaped high and brought his hand down hard, sending Xu Tian sprawling. Hearing the king's cry for mercy, the crowd was terrified. Xiao Yue rushed forward in a panic, fearing they were completely finished. Meanwhile, on a nearby mountain, Sima Yue observed the chaos. He looked at a wisp of purple spiritual energy and dismissed the clan as useless. However, he decided it was a good opportunity to test his perfected heart demon method. He threw the energy forward, commanding it to go. Wu Ling had just landed when Xiao Yu rushed over, her face etched with worry. She asked if he was all right, and he gave her a gentle look, reassuring her that he was fine. He admitted it was a pity he couldn't force the Demon King to apologize to her, but Xiao Yu didn't seem to care about that anymore. She hugged his arm tightly and smiled, telling him that as long as he was by her side, an apology didn't matter. Not far away, Beatty watched them with a dark expression, muttering Xiao Yu's words back to herself in a huff. Ming Ling chuckled at the obvious display of jealousy, teasing Beatty for being so transparent. Suddenly, a purple streak of energy flew in from nowhere and entered the Demon King's body, catching everyone off guard. Beatty jumped, sensing something was wrong. The king's deep, angry voice rang out again, startling Wu Ling and Xiao Yu as he slowly stood up with eyes full of resentment. He growled that he hadn't lost yet. Xiao Yu panicked, wondering how he could still stand after taking the full force of Wu Ling's attack. Wu Ling's expression turned serious as he stepped in front of her, telling her to get back because something was very wrong. He watched as veins bulged on the king's face and the man began to let out uncontrolled growls. The king's entire body began to swell abnormally. In his agony, he roared a curse at Sima Yue for scheming against him. Beatty and Ming Ling watched in disbelief as a horrifying monster's shadow appeared behind the king. The creature leaned down and began to bit into his shoulder, gradually devouring his head until it ripped it off completely, sending blood everywhere. In the distance, Sima Yue laughed with satisfaction, eager to see the Demon King's inner demon. The gruesome sight horrified Wu Ling and Xiao Yu as the monster's head replaced the king's, and a new human-like body emerged from the beast's shell. Xiao Yu was horrified to see what had happened to his father, and cried out in anguish. Before he could react, Ming Ling used a golden chain to bind and immobilize him, warning him not to cause any more trouble given the dire situation. Xiao Yu roared for them to let him go, but the inner demon was already moving. It staggered unsteadily, its body shrinking as it fixed its gaze on Wu Ling and Xiao Yu. Wu Ling shielded Xiao Yu, warning her that the creature had noticed them. The demon charged instantly, hitting Wu Ling with a punch so powerful he spat out blood. Despite the pain, Wu Ling managed to grab the demon's arm, but it gave a sinister smile and vanished into thin air. In that moment of distraction, the arm regenerated and sent Wu Ling flying with another blow. Xiao Yu and Baidi rushed to his side, but Wu Ling could barely speak. Both girls stepped forward to shield him, with Xiao Yu stating they couldn't rely on him forever and Baidi telling him to rest while they handled the monster. Xiao Yu activated her spiritual power, enveloping herself in flames and attacking, but the demon leaped high to dodge. It curled into a ball and knocked her back when she wasn't looking. Baidi joined the fight from above, launching a whirlwind of thousands of sword images, but the demon created a barrier that deflected every single one. Before Baidi could react, the demon rushed him and sent him flying with a punch. Pan Hong watched his comrades get injured and immediately took action. He raised his spear, gathering a massive amount of spiritual power and commanding his heavenly army. He charged the demon, piercing its body with a blow so powerful it shattered the ground and left only a strange black liquid behind. Wo praised his skill, but Pan Hong warned her not to let her guard down. Chong Chong appeared, asking if the fight was over, but the black liquid on the ground began to shift. A large hand emerged from the earth, filling Sima Yue with excitement at the sight of the legendary inner demon. A tall figure emerged from the viscous liquid, leaving Wu Ling gritted his teeth in astonishment. Xiao Yu was heartbroken to see her father's new form and glared at everyone. Wu Ling was surprised to see the Demon King had transformed into a human. Xiao Yue cried out, asking why he had taken the form of a race he despised so much. Ming Ling explained that while most humans are weak, their natural talent is the highest of all beings, and he recalled that the Demon King had once been defeated by a human cultivator. Seething with rage, the entity admitted that the old battle had given rise to an inner demon in the form he hated most. He looked at himself in despair, unsure if he was still himself or just the demon. He turned his hatred toward the group, pointing at Pan Hong's subordinates before unleashing thousands of energy beams. The resulting explosions sent everyone flying in pain. Xiao Yue, seeing this, regained his confidence and sneered at Ming Ling, claiming his father's power was unmatched and they were all going to die. He asked his father to release him so he could help him finish them off, but his father fell silent for a moment and simply told him he was sorry. These words left Xiao Yue completely stunned, but before he could even process what was happening, a large hole was ripped through his chest. The Demon King stood over his son, crushed his heart in his hand, and looked down at him with a cold, grave expression. He told Xiao Yue that he couldn't allow him to live after witnessing his father in such a pathetic state. Xiao Yue collapsed at his feet, unable to say a word. This brutal scene made even Ming Ling turn pale, and Pan Hong was horrified by the king's ruthlessness. Noting that the demon race seemed to have no humanity left, the king turned his gaze toward the group and began to stride forward. He declared that, while a son could be reborn, his dignity could never be trampled upon. He raised his arm, which was now enveloped in a sinister purple aura, and suddenly a barrier encased the entire area. Wu Ling was shocked, but Beatty quickly identified it as a life-linked barrier. The king explained that the only way out was to kill him, or he would kill every witness present. Ming Ling grew tense, wishing he had stayed out of the mess and let the elders handle it. Pan Hong, however, remained undeterred and grabbed his weapon. He told everyone that now wasn't the time for complaints and commanded his raging legion to transform. A warhorse appeared with a resounding neigh, and he led his soldiers in a charge. The king coldly extended his hand, dismissing the crowd as mere ants. Pan Hong thrust his spear forward, but the king blocked it with his bare hand. Pan Hong scoffed, telling him not to be so sure, as the tip of his spear suddenly flashed with a blinding golden light. Xiao Yu noted that this was a combined attack technique, capable of defeating even the most powerful experts if enough people were involved. Wu Ling was amazed by its power, but the king simply snorted and decided to get serious. He leaped into the air, and when Pan Hong told him not to run, the king sneered at the idea of him fleeing. He used a demonic possession technique, and a colossal version of himself materialized behind him. He merged with the form and let out a roar, but then his figure vanished into thin air. Pan Hong was caught off guard, and before he could react, a massive hand swung down and sent the soldiers flying. The king reappeared in the middle of the legion, cracking the ground with the force of his blow. Baidi frowned, noting how terrifying the heart demon's control was. Pan Hong watched his troops being tossed around and wondered why the technique felt so familiar. Huo urged the others to join in, arguing that Pan Hong couldn't handle the king alone, and that their only chance was to attack together. Ming Ling and Chong Chong agreed, and all three charged forward. Chong Chong attacked with a massive mechanical fist, but the king shattered it with a single punch, calling the move laughable. Ming Ling quickly followed up with a soul-binding talisman that caused the king some discomfort. At that moment, Huo lunged forward with her spirit beast for a combined claw attack. These continuous strikes only seemed to irritate the king, who scoffed at their efforts. He flexed his muscle, turning the talismans into dust, and released a wave of crimson energy that blasted everyone away. Leaping high into the air, he conjured a massive blood-red skull and aimed it at the group, declaring he would end it all with one move. Baidi tried to charge forward with her shadow sword, but her attacks were repelled. Wu Ling rushed to the front, telling everyone to get back. The king, annoyed to see Wu Ling again, channeled even more power into the skull, causing it to radiate a deadly aura. He told them all to die. Wu Ling braced himself against the descending skull, straining against the increasing pressure. The immense power eventually erupted, shaking the ground and sending cracks everywhere as people screamed. Xiao Yu struggled to stay on her feet and called out to Wu Ling in worry. He told her to stay back, insisting the fight wasn't over. Glaring at the king with resentment, Wu Ling used a crushing force technique to shatter the skull into pieces. The clan leader was stunned by Wu Ling's power. While he was in shock, Wu Ling's hand suddenly appeared, ready to strike. The king reacted just in time to block, but he felt Wu Ling's incredible speed and strength. He told Wu Ling not to get cocky just because he had a little power. Wu Ling's gaze was resolute as he gave a chilling smirk, stating that having great power was exactly for doing whatever he wanted. His body seemed to ignite with an inner fire as he tightened his grip on the king's hand. Feeling the pressure, the king realized he had no choice but to unleash his full power. He let out a roar and activated his demonic enlightenment. Wu Ling watched in surprise as the king began to radiate arrogance and asked how it felt. Unafraid, Wu Ling remained confident, telling him that this was what he had forced him to do. Wu Ling activated his celestial technique, his eyes glowing red as his movements became a total blur. The clan leader was bewildered by the sudden change. Wu Ling lunged forward and, in a bizarre turn, bit down hard on the man's arm. Stunned, the leader asked if he was fighting a man or a dog. He unleashed an aura to force Wu Ling off him, eventually kicking him away. The leader then took a stance, his body radiating energy as a sharp, blade-like object formed on his right arm. Confident that it was time to end the fight, he lunged at the airborne Wu Ling and struck without hesitation. However, the leader soon noticed something unusual. Wu Ling had landed safely and seemed elated, laughing as he realized why the leader's moves felt so familiar. The leader was puzzled, but Wu Ling smiled with certainty, stating that the man's techniques would no longer work against him. The leader blustered, calling it a trick, and rushed forward to finish him, but even with his eyes closed, Wu Ling effortlessly dodged every strike. From a distance, Ming Ling was astonished, wondering if he was predicting the attacks by sound. Furious, the leader unleashed a demonic frenzy slash, but he couldn't land a single hit. Wu Ling remained perfectly calm, weaving through the barrage with ease. Becoming impatient, the leader flew into the air as the blade on his arm grew even larger. He roared a challenge and brought down a massive attack called Heaven's Judgment. Despite the power of the strike, Wu Ling showed no fear and didn't even open his eyes. As the dust settled from the magical impact, the leader assumed it was over, only to find Wu Ling right in front of him. Wu Ling unleashed a full-powered celestial punch, striking the leader squarely in the face and sending him crashing into the ground with a massive shockwave. Xiao Yu and Baidi watched in awe. As Wu Ling observed the dust cloud, the leader's hand emerged from a crack in the earth. He climbed out, battered and refused to accept defeat. He lunged at Wu Ling again, losing his composure and demanding to know how Wu Ling kept dodging. Wu Ling easily easily evaded him once more before opening his eyes and grabbing the leader's arm. He revealed that the moves weren't actually the leader's own. ID also realized the truth, noting how familiar the style was. Wu Ling explained that these moves were exactly what his father, Wu Di, had taught him. The leader muttered in shock at the mention of the name. On a nearby cliff, Sima Yue grew excited, concluding that the leader was actually the inner demon of the man who had once defeated Wu Di. The leader recoiled in terror, asking if Wu Ling was that person's son. Wu Ling didn't care for the specifics, but the revelation caused the leader to panic and attempt to flee. He didn't get far before Wu Ling tripped him, sending him face first into the ground. Wu Ling noted that even his escape was predictable. He raised his fist with a cold glint in his eyes, but stopped just before making contact. He declared that the leader had lost and demanded an immediate apology to Xiao Yu. Terrified, the former demon king scrambled over to Xiao Yu, knelt, and bowed his head to the ground, pleading for her forgiveness. Ming Ling chuckled at the sight of the once arrogant king acting so pathetic, while Pan Hong grew curious about the identity of Wu Ling's father. Xiao Yu coldly told the leader to get out and never show his face again. He scurried away, eager to escape, but his ordeal wasn't over. His body began to swell as if it were about to explode. Sima Yue's mocking voice then rang out, referring to Wu Ling as a young master of demonic cultivation. This left Ming Ling and Pan Hong bewildered, wondering if Wu Ling was actually a demonic cultivator. Wu Ling fell silent, sweating nervously, but Xiao Yu quickly intervened. She told them not to listen to Sima Yue's nonsense, claiming he was just spouting lies. Sima Yue let out a cruel laugh, asking if she was still trying to protect him. When Xiao Yu told him to shut up, he channeled magic and struck her in the chest to teach her a lesson. Wu Ling rushed to catch her falling body, but was shocked to see Xiao Yu's soul floating in midair. Both Wu Ling and Xiao Yu were confused by the two versions of her. Sima Yue laughed, announcing that he had mastered the complete heart demon cultivation, which allowed him to do more than just control the demons within others. As he finished his explanation, he released waves of energy that caused the souls of everyone present to leave their bodies. Ming Ling stared at his own body in total bewilderment, realizing that his soul had also been forced out. Chong Chong was equally disoriented, panicking because she couldn't return to her physical form. Sima Yue explained that since the heart demon is merely a part of the soul, he now had the power to control everything within a person's heart. He landed near Wu Ling, admitting he had always been puzzled by him, and wondered why Wu Di would choose to suppress such incredible power. He pulled out several talismans that radiated spiritual energy, silently celebrating that he had finally mastered all the secrets. Raising his hands to the sky, he confidently declared that with his new strength, he would become the new lord and rule the world. And with that, this video ends. Like and subscribe for the next one.